Hi everybody, I'm Phil Liggett. Well, they call this one the Queen of the Classics, but boy, she must have had a bad temper because this is the roughest one-day race in the world. All of the cobblestones, which we know as the Hell of the North, 6.5 hours in the saddle and a huge field of almost 200 riders. Yes, it's the 104th edition of Paris Roubaix. And down to my left here is my old mate Paul Sherwin. He's looking at the velodrome, fond and painful memories, I would think, Paul, from your days when you finished here.
Yeah, you know, this is a special place. We always talk about the Alpe d'Huez being the shrine for the climbers, but to me, this is a special place too. It's a place where all of the one-day classics riders want to win. This race, you either love it or you hate it. I used to love it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you need a wash when you finish here. In 1896, that was the last time a German cyclist won this event, Joseph Fischer, and it was in fact the first edition of Paris Roubaix. Now the big favourite, of course, is Tom Boonen, the reigning world champion, and he's bang on form. But before we talk about riders, let's talk about the route. The Forest of Arenberg, out last year, has been refurbished and is back in. I'm not too sure what they've done.
Well, there's 25 sections of cobblestones, but the one that the riders fear the most is the Forest of Arenberg. They took it out, they've repaired it, and in fact they only finished the repairs on the 15th of March, 2 weeks ago. A lot of riders saying to me that it's still as dangerous as it always was, but it's always going to be an important strategic point in Paris Roubaix.
Well, there's almost 33 miles of cobble roads, many of those roads exactly as they were when they were marched over by Napoleon's armies more than 100 years ago. The riders hate them, of course. The riders want to ride the race sometimes, but most of them don't. They all want to win it. Do you remember when Bernard Hinault came? He said he won it only so he could tell the organisers he'd never come back.
The Blaireau hated the cobbles. He didn't think they should be included, but you know, nowadays I think he looks back with a little bit of reminiscence about winning this race back in 1981 as the world champion.
Let's go back out with the magic of television now to the start in Compiègne, and Paul's talking to some of the riders.
Well, George, it's been a good week. Tour of Flanders was good, Gent-Wevelgem was good, but this is the race you really want.
Yeah, no, I feel good. Wednesday I wasn't quite recovered from a hard Tour of Flanders, so I was a bit tired there, but I was able to stay up in the front. That's a good sign. I took the day off on Thursday, and Friday I feel better than ever, even better than before Tour of Flanders, so I'm confident for tomorrow.
You've been and had a look at the Forest of Arenberg?
Yeah, it's not any better than I remember. It was pretty rough. In fact, my fingers still hurt from riding it yesterday, so I can imagine what they're going to feel like after tomorrow's race. But, you know, that's not something that we're scared of. We're going to go there and attack it.
Everybody says that to win this race you have to take responsibility and not wait for one of your teammates to attack, wait for Boonen to attack. Have you changed your approach since winning a stage in the Tour last year?
Yeah, I think I have a lot more confidence in my ability, and I know that without any bad luck that I will be there amongst the leaders, and I just need to take advantage of my experience and attack and go for the win. Second and third won't be good for me anymore.
Tom Boonen reckons that if he comes to the stadium with you, he's going to win because anybody else in this race is riding for second.
Yeah, that's good that he thinks like that, because maybe he'll make a mistake. Tom's obviously riding great, and he's the guy to beat. But in Paris-Roubaix, you need luck just to get to the stadium. And, you know, hopefully I'll have that and great legs, and I think that I can beat him. In fact, I'm going in knowing that I could beat him. But he's not the only guy to worry about. I'm sure there's going to be lots of other guys there tomorrow.
Your dad's been to Paris-Roubaix for a number of years. He comes here to see you win. Are you going to help him to do that and realize that dream?
Yeah, I owe my dad that, and Fred comes from New York. I owe so many people a win at Roubaix. So that's what I'm dreaming for, and I hope that comes tomorrow.
We want to see you win too.
Thanks, Paul. All right, thanks.
Good luck. Roger, this is a race that you love. It's an important race for Discovery Channel. George Hincapie's probably got the best form of his career, and you've pulled yourself back from injury to ride.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the one race I've been thinking about again since, you know, when I started training October, November last year. So I put a lot of work in, and if there's any possibility of riding, then for sure I want to be on the start line to give it my best. Initially last Sunday, I thought it wasn't going to happen at all, but you know, I think it's just because we're really fit at this time of the year. You know, we've trained hard, and our actual condition of our body is in really good condition. So. The knee's repaired much better than anyone had thought. So, I mean, there's absolutely no swelling, and the stitches are very clean. There's no inflammation at all. So, you know, it's not going to affect me at all unless there's a problem when I crash on it again in the race. That's the only thing I'm a little bit nervous of.
But the team wants you to be here. You want to be here because Hincapie's probably got one of the last chances of his career because he's in such great form.
Yeah, he's riding really well. I mean, but the thing with George is, name a year where he hasn't been good in his career at Paris Roubaix. He's been, you know, it's just a numbers game with George, really. It's just so good. But like you say, this year he seems to be a little bit just at maybe 0.5% better than other years. So yeah, I think, I mean, he really does stand a good chance of winning tomorrow. I mean, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet against him, that's for sure. And if you say that in any bike race, then you're pretty confident of your leader.
But they also say nobody can beat Tom Boonen, but Tom Boonen has respect for your team. He reckons, apart from his team, Discovery Channel is the best team for these kind of classics.
Yeah, well, I think it's nice that Tom recognises that with us. I mean, I think we've shown in all of the races this year that we've been omnipresent in every single race. So, and I think our advantage is we've got strength in numbers, and you know, we also have a super champion as a leader. So. You know, we're in a very similar position to Quick-Step, and I think that frightens him because he sees a lot of similarities between his own team and ours. And you know, if we can be there and have a few guys in the front like we did in Tour of Flanders, it didn't quite work out for us at Tour of Flanders, and Tom won. But you know, we certainly showed that we're a team definitely to be reckoned with, and there's not only one guy that can be up there in the final. Thanks. Cheers.
Dirk de Mol, you're the team manager of Discovery Channel, former winner of Paris Roubaix. You have a good team this year with George Hincapie looking straight into the win.
No, I can say I'm very happy with the strong of the team this year, and especially towards Roubaix. We've got a very good preparation. We did some stage races, with one thing in mind: Paris Roubaix. And the last couple of weeks, we had our win already in the Panne, 2 stage wins, the overall, and in Flanders we were very close, second, third, and yeah, I can say we have a very strong team.
Do you get more motivated for this race than any other races because you're a former winner?
Yeah, I can't hide that because Roubaix was already as a young rider my favorite race, and it stays my favorite race. And when you have a rider as George Hincapie in the team, it's just normal to have a big motivation, and that we worked hard towards this one.
Can George actually beat Tom Boonen?
I hope so. The thing will be, for me, it's hard to say, but he won again Flanders, and it's hard to believe that he can do again the double as last year, Flanders, Roubaix. It's so hard to do that once in your career, and if you do it twice in a row, it's almost a mission impossible. And he cannot win every race. And again, George was he got never better legs in Flanders, and that's always good for mentally. And I think I should say it's tomorrow or never for George.
What can you do to beat Tom Boonen? What tactic can you adopt? Isolate him?
Yeah, isolating him. So we have to see that we make the race hard. And if there are 5 favorites, we have 2 in those 5 with George and Leif. But on the side of that, we also have Hammond, we have De Volder, we have Gusev, all strong guys. And I think we have to send him an early break and try to blow up the team of Tom. But it's not going to be easy because one thing is sure, he has a very strong team around him. Thank you. Good.
Well, Robbie, a very good start for the season for you in the Tour of Qatar and races like that, but now this is when it really counts, races like Paris Roubaix.
Yeah, I think I've started off the season pretty good. Got sick after California actually, and the last 3 weeks I've been, coming better and better day by day. Flanders and Wevelgem, I was okay, nothing special. But I've used them more as preparation, and hopefully tomorrow I have a good day. Feeling pretty good, so.
Everybody's talking about Tom Boonen being the man to beat. Is he unbeatable?
No one's unbeatable. Tom's obviously in really good condition at the moment, but a race like tomorrow's, anything can happen. I mean, obviously he's got so much strength on his side at the moment, but like I said, I mean, anything can happen. If you punch, you crash. It's happened before. Van Bettegem's been the best. He's crashed and the race has been over. So anything's possible tomorrow.
What will your tactic be, a team man like you? Will you try and go for the early break, or will you think about concentrating on the end?
I'm actually going to concentrate on the end. I've been in the early breaks twice before. It's not a bad idea. It gets you close enough to the finish to ride a good result, but not good enough to unless you really got super form, you can get in the top 10. Otherwise, it's better to concentrate on the finish.
Weather's nice.
I hope so. It seems like it's okay, so it's better for me. Good. Thanks, Paul.
Peter, this is a very special race for you, but it's very difficult to beat Tom Boonen and his team.
I think he is the strongest man for this moment, and Paris Roubaix is a special race. You have to ride first, and then we see on the track how we're going to beat Bonen. We will see.
But it's also a race where you need an awful lot of motivation. And you, for some reason, seem to love these races, Tour of Flanders and Paris Roubaix.
I like them very much, so I'm really motivated also. So we go for tomorrow.
Do you think the only way to beat Tom Bonen is maybe to react with another rider like George Hincapie or somebody else to try and outwit Bonen?
As the most as possible with other riders from Discovery or other teams. When you're all alone with Bonen, it's not so easy. So it's better with 4 or 5 guys, and then we fight each other.
But in Paris-Roubaix, it's also a race where you need to have the experience, and you have the experience of the cobblestones.
After 15 years, I have a lot of experience. So.
And still the motivation?
For sure. Okay. Thank you.
Well, Stefan, these are the races normally you're a man to watch out for, but the last couple of days you've had a little bit of sickness.
Yeah, start in Milan-San Remo to take antibiotic, and then I was motivated. I trained the whole time without rest, and the sickness coming back. So now I take a couple of days off, but I'm still motivated for Paris-Roubaix. For that, I want to start maybe another race. I said no, it's too early after the sickness, but I'm always motivated for that race, and so hope it's coming good. And I'm 100%, but I don't know yet.
That's the important thing about Paris-Roubaix, isn't it? It's one of those crazy races you either hate or you love, but you love it.
Yes, that's true. I love it, and that's what I mean. If it's another race, I would say no. It's after 4 or 5 days training, back in training, don't make sense. But in Paris-Roubaix, everything is possible.
It's amazing to think when you look at the pedigree of Paris-Roubaix, only one German rider has ever won it, and that was an awful long time ago.
Yeah, but I don't care. I'm Swiss now.
Well, you could win it for Germany and Switzerland.
For a German team and for Swiss nationality.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, Bradley, Paris-Roubaix, special race for your team as well, because their headquarters is in the north of France.
Yeah, we're in Cofidis' back garden here, so it's obviously a very important race for them. We're highly motivated. The big boss is coming out tonight from Cofidis to give us a briefing before tomorrow. So, yeah, it's a big race, probably the biggest race on the calendar for the team.
Have you been and had a look at the new Forest of Arenberg? I heard it was just about as dangerous as it always was.
It is, but it's a lot better than it was. It's dry. It's not. It hasn't got that mossy film on it now, so it's safer in terms of it being not as slippery, barring it doesn't rain. But it's still as hard, and I think it'll still be the main part of the race where the selections are made. So.
Somebody was telling me now that there's no longer the grass problem, but the big problem now is the sand problem.
Yeah, the sand, and if it rains, then I don't know. It's going to be quite tough. But as ever, it's the crucial point of the race. You hit it at 60 km an hour plus. And it's always the biggest spectacle, as they say in France. So it's
crazy.
Yeah, it will be. Okay, cheers, Paul.
Hank, not a bad ride last week. Pretty good ride in Gent-Wevelgem, but this classic's so much more special than anything else in the calendar.
Oh, it's the one day a year I really try my arse off for, that's for sure. And I mean, you've got to have a little bit of luck in this race and a lot of horsepower to get into that velodrome in the first 10. And hopefully I've got that this year, but obviously I've got a strong man in Peter van Beetigem, so we will be guarding him most of the day, and hopefully he can do something.
What I remember is the story you told me a couple of years ago that you learned to love Paris-Roubaix by watching our videos.
Well, yeah, I learned to love the classics by watching cycling videos and the old Paris Roubaix tapes, and I mean now it's stock standard even reconnaissance watching the videos. I mean I watched them all this week just to fine tune, and then yesterday to train on them before the race.
It's a magic feeling coming onto the stadium at the end though, isn't it? Whether you're coming for the win or you're coming in 10th or 15th place, just to get to the end of a race like this is special.
Oh, it's magnificent to be there. If you're in a position 1st or 10th, even at 65th at 14 minutes down, you're a dead man to hear the applause of the crowd. The crowd coming in around that velodrome is just a special feeling, and just to be part of the race is great. To be part of a great team is even better, and part of a winning team on Sunday would be cherry on the top.
Peter's a very special guy, isn't he? He knows how to ride these cobblestones, and that helps for a lot towards the end of a race like this, just knowing exactly where you're going, how the road goes to the left, to the right, where the trees are, when you need to move forward.
Yeah, it's we did the last 15 sections, the last 10 sections yesterday, last 100 kilometres, and there's a lot of new sections. You really have to know how to ride, where to ride, in the middle of the road, on the side of the road. You need to know, what's coming up and when you need to use your horsepower. And, if that means 80k to go when they attack, and ride with them or sit back, but you've just got to stay in the front because there's so many crashes. And if it's wet, which it is, I've heard, we've just driven down today and it was raining where the finish was. So I think it's going to be a wet final, if not a wet Carrefour Lab.
Good legs?
Not bad. Much better than last year. We'll see. No worries. Okay, brother. See you later.
Tom, a very difficult day in Gent-Wevelgem, but it seems that you're very motivated for Paris Roubaix again.
Yeah, it was the same last year. After winning Flanders, it's not only physically very hard, but also in your mind. You get a little bit decompressed. And Wednesday I tried to the first climb on the camel, and then I felt I wasn't able to win. And I took it pretty much the easiest way possible in the last group. But now I'm recovered and very motivated like last year.
But this is a special team as well, because this team has had a love for Paris Roubaix over the years, and they seem to just get super motivated for this one day more than anything else.
Yeah, it's a special. It's all riders who can win this race in particular, and we got 2 or 3 guys who did it all before, who were able to do it this year, and together with some guys who are able to do a very good final or just before the final, it builds a very good team. And then the motivation, it was there since the first day I came to Quick Step.
Some riders are saying the only way to beat Tom Bone is if he has a puncture at the wrong time.
I hope not. I hope they prefer to beat me man on man, but we'll see tomorrow. If you're in good shape, normally you ride the final, and then hopefully have a lot of good luck, and it's all possible to win it again.
If you're in good shape, normally you have good luck.
Normally, yes.
Well, there's been a few little falls this morning, but none, as far as we know, have been serious. But one of the race favourites, George Hincapie, was an early faller. He got back up. He went down with one other rider soon after the start at around 31 kilometres in. The race distance is over 259 kilometres today. It may look a very nice early summer's day in Europe, but I can tell you it isn't. It is actually quite chilly, some 10 degrees.
Yeah, this is the feeding station. The riders were just going through there at the town of Solesmes as we head now into the next section of cobblestones. And this should be the section of cobblestones known as Vertin-Saint-Martin. It's the 23rd section to go, and it is a fairly rough section. But I think everybody very worried about the Forest of Arenberg here this afternoon. This is sector 23 to go. It's 1.9 kilometers in length. It's given 3 stars. The most difficult section stones are given a 5-star rating. As you look here, you can start to see the time gaps. We're looking at a leading group of 4 riders. There are 3 chasers at 2.5 minutes, and one man just behind them riding on his own, Frankie Hoy, and I'm not quite sure what he's doing there because he's been caught in no man's land. And the main field, Phil, are back at 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
I think it's a case of getting down to a little bit of work on this stretch of cobbles right now as these riders start to put the teammates up there of Tom Bonen. Quick Step, it's all for one as far as they're concerned, but they do have a second powerhouse in Filippo Pizzato, winner of Milan-San Remo, if things go a bit wrong for Tom. He is in the breakaway, and Nick Noyens, the friend of Tom Bonen, also on the team. Well, the biggest problem today, I think, is going to be the dust here as the riders start to try and find the edges of the gutters there. 135 kilometers, 2.5 minutes to a handful of chasers who've more or less got themselves together. Our cameras can't get to show them to you, but the peloton, it's going to be an interesting tactic this. They're allowing this breakaway a little bit of a lead as it slips out to almost 5 minutes.
Well, even up to 5 minutes is not that important at this stage of the game, because you'll see that get dramatically reduced once we get closer to the Forest of Arenberg. a breakaway can lose at least 2 minutes on that one section, as you get a glimpse to see there at the side of the road, one or two of the team cars. As a big organisation goes on behind the race, especially here at Paris Roubaix, because it is just so difficult for the riders to get themselves spare wheels, and you can be almost certain that somebody somewhere out on the course is going to have a bad luck story to tell this afternoon. But Quick-Step have already announced the colours very early, Phil. You can see the blue and white jerseys of Team Quick-Step right up at the very front, because they want to look after their man, the world champion Tom Boonen, who has got to be the #1 favourite to win this race. Won both of these one-day classics last year, the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, and nobody has ever done that twice in a row.
Well, there's an interesting move coming from the Skill Shimano team here now. They're becoming quite a force to be reckoned with on the circuit. They're not a Pro Tour team, but they've been getting wild cards into these races, and they've been making an impression, because in the Pinot Cerami event, which was on Friday, 2 days before this race is taking place, Sebastian Langerfeld, in only his second professional race, got a victory there, and that's made everybody sit up a bit, and as a result of that win, he's riding in the race today. So, and they're managed by an old wise owl in Rudy Kemner, who's only just retired from the sport with a string of victories, a former champion of Holland.
Yeah, very talented bike rider, and he's definitely motivated these guys to do great things here, because they have been aggressive in most of the races we've watched so far this season. A little move here, but it's a bit of a crazy move, especially when you know that there are two breakaway groups in front. Might get himself a little bit of publicity, but they've come off that section of cobblestones now, and they've got around about 8 kilometers to ride before they get to the next section, which is a long section. That is the cobblestone section of a Bust, and that is 22 sections to go.
Well, really, when you attack like this, it's a case of hope somebody joins you, because it's just trying to alter the tempo of the peloton. The gap is still a big one, nearly 4.5 minutes back to this group we're looking at here. And they're trying to organise a chase. There's a lot of teammates trying to sort of get in amongst the pacemakers here and slow them down, because they've got teammates in front. Quick-Step, they're the boys in blue and white, are just trying to keep the pace reasonable, because when the cobbles get really hard, and the big chase down will be coming into the forest of Arenberg. Once we enter the Arenberg forest, there's still 163 kilometres to go. Then that is when the race, so rather 163 kilometres gone at that stage. So there's still 100 kilometres to go, which means that that's when the riders, the big men who've got ambitions to be first into the stadium here in Roubaix, will start firing.
Gerald Steiner being very attentive at the front end of the main field as well. See them in the pale blue jerseys just over to the right hand side, but I do feel that the team that has prepared itself specifically for this event, and as they have done in different forms and different sponsors over the last few years, are Team Quick-Step, because they were originally the formation known as the Mappe team, Mappe Quick-Step, and they were the first team in history to get first, second and third in this event, and everybody thought that was an impossible thing to do and an impossible thing to repeat, but they actually did it on a number of occasions.
They've got themselves all back together here. The dark colours on the far right, by the way, they're the new colours of the Spanish setup now, the Case de Pan Illes Beliras team, and they have a man up front in a Frenchman, which is unusual for a Frenchman to be on the Spanish squad. Nicolas Portal has moved across to join them this year, and he's one of the early attackers. Quick-Step got control of the peloton. Just trying to see if I can see Tom Boonen. I think we've got Robbie Hunter peeping into the left of our picture, the South African in the race for Phonak, and he's looking to do a ride today. He'll try to stay near the sharp end of the race as we get down to the forest, and then it's a case of see how you traverse the forest. Now they've rebuilt the... Oh, there's been a fall right in the middle. What a bizarre crash that is, and what a terrible place to fall. And the peloton, amazingly, Paul, appear to have gone round him.
Well, that was a crazy move. I think he just touched the wheel in front of him, but he went down very rapidly indeed. In fact, he was the man who started that move. And that's just how attentive you have to be, because the danger here in Paris-Roubaix is not just have a look at it again. What happened? That was a real amateur mistake, I have to say there, Phil. What happened was he was looking back, and as he looked around, he just touched the wheel of the rider in front, and he went down pretty hard there.
Absolutely amazing that nobody in the peloton appears to have fallen here, and he's sitting there probably frightened to death of the way the riders are coming at him. They've all gone round him. Couldn't recognise who it was. He was certainly a member of the Landau Credit Rider team, so it was a Belgian cyclist, but I don't know which one it was who went down.
Went down very hard. You can see T-Mobile moving up to the front. I think for the moment everybody just wants to stay in the first 15 places to keep themselves away from accidents like that. I've just caught a glimpse of Eric Zabel over to the left-hand side. He's riding for Team Milram. He must be one of the leaders here, because normally the leader of Team Milram is Alessandro Patacchi, but he's not riding the Paris Roubaix Classic here this afternoon. He's decided to go back to Italy and get himself ready for the big Giro d'Italia, which is up and coming in the month of May.
Well, there's enough crashes in this race, I can tell you, with the cobblestones, but when you get a crash like that, no one would have expected that on a straight road, so it could have been a very serious fall, that. Anyway, it looks as though everybody's safe and sound as they continue on the way here.
Tell you what, a lot of the lads will give him a bit of stick for that one, because that was a real amateur crash. I remember actually Phil Anderson doing that a few years ago on my back wheel, and Anderson kept chasing down in a race we were in, and he kept looking over his shoulder to see if we'd got the gap, and then all of a sudden he touched my back wheel. I have to say he wasn't very happy with me, because he thought it was my fault.
Well, I wasn't there, so I'll stay neutral on that one. But looking over, Stefan Wessermann is the rider third from the right of our picture there. A T-Mobile rider. Now, he used to be a German. He's changed his nationality because he has a Swiss wife, so he's riding here for Switzerland. Well, the last Swiss winner of Paris-Roubaix was Henri Suter in 1923, so it'd be nice if he won for Switzerland today. Mind you, if he won for Germany, we haven't had a German winner of this race since the very first event in 1896, so either way he'd be on a winner.
He certainly would, and he was feeling reasonably confident. He's a rider who gets motivated for this event. He's one of those riders who really enjoys racing over the cobblestones. He's one of the biggest winners of a race called the Peace Race, which in the old days used to have an awful lot of cobblestones in it, but certainly if he could get the win this afternoon, I think it would be a bit of a surprise, because he's been on antibiotics for about 10 days since Milan-San Remo.
Well, we're just hearing that Nico Martin's had a flat tyre, the winner of last year's Ghent-Wevelgem. Shouldn't be too much of a problem at this stage, as the peloton itself packs together here, racing down a narrow stretch of cobblestones. Nobody attacking, just good tempo riding. It's having no real effect on the breakaway just now. There's the velodrome, that's where we're coming to. We obviously got a little bit of a problem with our pictures on the motorcycles out there just now, but the velodrome looking very, very splendid today. It's resurfaced in the last couple of years. The riders, when they come in from the right of our picture, they'll do a lap and a half and then finish the race. And the crowd, well, there aren't many people here yet, simply because they're out on the course, but they know all the shortcuts and they flood in here before the riders themselves arrive.
Huge crowds out here this afternoon. A lot of Flemish people come down. There were over 1 million people watched the Tour of Flanders just 1 week ago, and I think most of them will probably come down to the northern part of France here to see if Tom Boonen can make a historic double victory once again. It's very rare for riders to win Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in the same year. Tom Boonen did that last year, and he's looking to do it 2 years in a row.
Well, he's in an incredible situation. If he were to win today, then he would have done the double 2 years in succession, and no cyclist has ever done that, so that would be a nice claim to fame. Here we are back out with the race now on the narrow sector of Pavé.
The time gaps are starting to stabilise out a little bit, Phil, because we're getting a time check now of around about 3 minutes and 55 seconds between the leading group of 4 riders and the main field. This is the next section of cobblestones at Capelle-sur-Écaillon-le-Bois, and it's a 3-star section. As you can see, it's a little bit of grass down the middle, and everybody's trying to ride on that section of grass because that's actually the smoothest part of the road. These cobblestones, many of them go back over 100 years, and they're probably worse than they were then.
Well, this is taking us through 126 kilometres into the day of 259. And it's on the cobblestones where, of course, the strong men will push on to the fore if they can. Tom Boonen trying to get up there on the right too amongst his teammates now. The cobblestones will all be dry basically today. There's not been much rain this week here in France, in this region. It is quite cold. The dust can be a problem. But apart from that, there shouldn't be too much mud on the course.
I think everybody's been watching the weather forecast over the last week. The riders always worried about how the weather is going to develop. As we look down there on the whole of the main field now, charging through that section of cobblestones. Remarkable pictures here brought to us by French television as we can see these riders making their way through the old farmlands of France. Discovery Channel. There's Tom Bonenfield already riding right up near the front of the main field. There's the time gaps. The leading group of 4 chased at 3.5 minutes by a group of 3 riders, and the main field. They're actually starting to nail back that group that was caught in between the two.
Yes, that group of Rigetto, Stefan Berge, Frank Hoy and Ico Flores are about to be picked up by the peloton.
Well, it's a very big, long, straight line there, as you can see at the front. It's nice to see Tom Boonen there moving up there. He's actually there in 4th position. He wears the white jersey there with the rainbow bands around it. He won that title down towards the end of last season, and he is basically the #1 leader for the team. You've got 2 riders there, T-Mobile well up there as well. They'll be looking after, of course, their man Stefan Weissermann, but it hasn't done that much damage. I'm sure there's going to be a major move once we come to the Forest of Arenberg, and then riders will sit up and try and figure out what their tactics need to be. Nice left-hand turn there. There's the Flandrian flag, the Flandrian line there supporting Tom Boonen, and of course the team which has been built around him here this afternoon. Boonen is supported by Wilfred Kretschens of Belgium, Kevin Hulsman, Nick Noyens, who's also already been a very successful rider in the early part of this season, Kevin Van Impe, and of course the winner of the Milan-San Remo one-day classic, Filippo Pozzato. In fact, when it comes to the big one-day races, Team Quickstep just haven't been beaten this season.
Well, just looking at the listening to the race radio there, Paul, it sounds as though Thor Hushoff, the man who won Gent-Wevelgem, has had a flat tyre now. Now he'll be at the back of the race somewhere trying to repair matters. Now a puncture is going to be one of the commonest things over these stones. The riders do wear slightly heavier tyres to try and avoid the punctures. They just hope to get them out of the way before the real crunch period of the event, but it still calls on a big effort to rejoin the race. They did in fact cover 47 kilometres in the opening hour today, and the effects of that will be felt over the last hour of racing. Here we are now with the 4 leaders: Joost Postuma, Nicolas Portal, Stefan Schreck and Dmitry Konishev. They're riding pretty regularly, but they are losing ground a little bit now, and the others behind are almost all swept up. They're just 45 seconds ahead of the peloton. 4 minutes the spread.
Well, fairly normal tactics for this race, because nearly always in Paris-Roubaix you get this early morning breakaway which goes out and tries to get to the cobblestones first, and that's why the first hour of racing was run off at such a rapid average speed, 47 kilometers an hour. Once the breakaway forms, then the race stabilizes for a fraction, but it's always important to try and get a man into the leading breakaway, because that might, either the Rabobank rider there or the T-Mobile rider, once they get caught down towards the end, and I'm absolutely certain they will get caught towards the end, can actually help the team, because this race, very much different to other races, it's all about elimination from the rear once we get to these cobblestone sections.
Well, here's Joost Postuma, Nicolas Portal. They're riding, they know what's going on behind them. They're trying to get to the Forest of Arnhenberg ahead of the field, and if they can do that, then they have a chance of still being ahead of the field when they come out the other end, because the forest itself is always seen as the first big challenge of the day. Nicolas Portal speaking with the cameraman there. This is back in the bunch with the Unibet team setting the pace at the front. It could well be. I'm just looking at the riders at the front there from Unibet in the green and white colours. They're saying, in fact, Paul, the faller was Tom Steele's there, but I'm not so sure it was.
Well, there's Peter Van Pietegem in the Lotto jersey, just with the white stripe down his shorts that says Davitamon. One of the most experienced bike riders in the field, and just above him you can see the world champion in the white jersey with the rainbow bands around it, Tom Boonen, riding a little bit further back. The sensible thing and the clever thing to do with Paris-Roubaix is to try and recuperate on these smoother sections, and this is a fairly long smooth section of road. It's about 10 kilometers before the next section of cobblestones, but as soon as you know the cobblestones are about to approach, you have to move up very quickly, and that's not always an easy thing to do, but something that riders like Van Pietegem and Tom Boonen have learned how to do over the years.
Little bit of attack from the Unibet.com team here. Marco Serpellini trying to move clear of the field. He's a little bit fed up of being bumped around by the peloton on the cobble, so he's trying to get a little group clear, I would think. The peloton, when you see them in a big pack like that, there's no real anger, because if you've got the front of the peloton and you get your riders across the road, then there's nobody can make any progress, so you don't have to race to hold position. I must say the peloton down now. 194 officially started the race today, and it looks now as though that bunch is already down quite considerably. Marco Serpellini, not normally a rider for this sort of race. He may be a more valued teammate perhaps for somebody like his team captain, the Australian Baden Cook, who's in the race and wears number 1 today as the team leader.
Cook has had a very good start to the season. A bit of a risk, I think, to move away from a Pro Tour team, but I think he probably thought that Unibet were going to get accepted. And Unibet, I think themselves, felt that they were going to get into a lot of races, including the Tour de France on a wild card. Well, that hasn't happened. Jeremy Hunt, also the British rider in Unibet, has had a good start to the season. He's been so close to the win on a number of occasions, finishing second in 3 big races in Belgium. And he said to me just yesterday, he says, I've just got to get a win under the belt. Well, I don't think it'll be today. I think it might be just a little bit too difficult for Jeremy, and he probably will use the majority of today's race dedicating himself to help the team.
Well, we see. He's got good form. He knows the course very well. He had a 20th place finish, which was absolutely superb last year in Paris Roubaix. Britain's best ever finishers have been Barry Hoban and Roger Hammond. They've both finished 3rd in this event. And Hammond riding today with 14 stitches in a knee injury received exactly a week ago in the Tour de Flanders. Horrific cuts. In fact, he's got no feeling in the knee at all because he severed the nerves there, he said. But he says apart from that, it's feeling okay, and he was very anxious to ride this. He's based his whole season on a performance in this event. So he's determined to get on the start line, and he has done.
He basically said since he started training again towards the end of November, this is the only thing he's been thinking about. Finishing 3rd a couple of years ago has motivated him very much for this bike race. I think today, though, Phil, he'll be dedicated to looking after George Hincapie, because Hincapie's the number 1 man on Team Discovery Channel. They believe that he's got the best form in his career, especially at this part of the season. So I think Hincapie will be certainly looking to try and get the win. He said in the press this morning he's fed up with finishing 2nd and 3rd. He wants to win this race finally.
Well, he's shown us he's got the quality, that's for sure. Number 1, the world champion, riding right on the front now so he can see what's coming first. It takes a very strong man to hold those positions. But that's Tom Bonen, who is the world champion, became the first winner of the Tour de Flanders for more than 30 years as world champion. Eddie Merckx the previous one, and this time around, if he wins, he will take a record away since Bernardino in 1981, I think, was the last world champion to win.
That was right, 1981, and even Bernardino had a little bit of bad luck out on the road there because he crashed in one of the final sections of cobblestones when a dog ran out into the field. There's Henk Vogels over on the left. He too was looking forward to the race there. You recognise Vogels because he's got the gold and green stripe on his jersey, indicating he's a former national champion of Australia. His job today, though, I think very much to look after Peter van Petegem. He reckoned that Van Petegem has got the ability to win this race. He's certainly got the motivation. Maybe a little bit long in the tooth. Mind you, Johan Museeuw was fairly old when he won this race for the last time.
Robbie Hunter, rather. McEwen's not riding this race. Robbie Hunter over to the left of South Africa, just peeping into our picture in the gold and green. And also in the dead centre in the quick-step colours is Servaes Knaven, the last Dutchman to win this race back in 2001.
They're about 3 kilometres away from the next section of cobblestones. It's a very long section of cobblestones too. It's the section that goes between Verchin and Kernin. It's the zone 21 to go. It's around about 1.6 kilometres, fairly nasty cobbles. But in everybody's mind, Phil, I think the race really begins once we get to the Forest of Arenberg, because those cobblestones there, despite the fact that they've been relayed, and they were relayed only 15 days ago, the job would taken to finish them was about 3 months, and I have to say that most of the riders still believe it's the most dangerous section of cobblestones in the race.
Well, all the roads are narrow here, and the riders even getting the feel of things on the rough side of the pavement there. By the look of it, these are the 4 leaders, and they're coming down all of the time, but they've still got themselves a nice lead as we're in the narrow streets. This is the chase group here. Iker Flores is the rider in the orange jersey. Regato here from Leaky Gas. So they never got caught, but they can't be that far away. This is the first time we've seen them. Frank Hoy is, this is Stefan Burgess and Frank Hoy in the middle there. 4 riders quite getting down to business despite all that. We've got the gap, who's somewhere just under 4 minutes now to the peloton, and about half a minute or so to these 4 riders to the peloton. So it's going to be a fragmented leading group, I think, that gets onto the forest first. Next sector of Pavé, there's 27 in all. We're looking for sector number 21 next up.
Frank Hoy finished 10th in Paris Roubaix a couple of years ago. He's a Bit of a madman, but he's got a great sense of humour, and he will be thinking, Phil, of trying to get onto the cobblestones just in front of the main field, because what most of these breakaways hope for is that the main field actually breaks up once you get onto the cobblestone sections, and they get caught by a group which starts to form at the front. But the fact is that they're all grouped together there. They're trying to get themselves up to the next section of cobblestones, which is probably not much more now than 2 kilometres to go. And that's probably why we're looking down from a helicopter. They try and keep the motorbike as far away as possible. There's Bonin in the middle. Amazing the concentration this man has.
Looking at his face there, a little bit concerned, because he, when he rode and won Tour de Flanders the other week, he was such a dominant personality in the race. He tried to do the same midweek in Ghent-Wevelgem, another small classic race, not quite so far as this, just over 208 kilometres. And in fact, he said he was feeling pretty rough, and he didn't drop out, but he dropped right away from the action. And we won't know just yet just how well he's going. There's the banner on the road there. Next sector of cobbles is approaching. This is about as steep a hill as you will find in this region of France. Great Britain is over to the left by some considerable distance, and straight ahead is Belgium.
Well, Stefan Schreck will be very happy with the situation here. We're looking at 120 kilometres to go to the finish. They're on the next section of cobblestones, section number 21. They don't get very much respite because there are 2 sections very close together here, making a total of almost 4 kilometres of cobblestones, Phil, in the space of 5.5 kilometres. This first part is 1.6 kilometres long. It's a 3-star section of cobblestones, and the rider's going over them as quickly as possible. Now, the way to ride the cobblestones is actually, if you can, to try and be relaxed and make sure you don't grip the handlebars too much in the middle, and actually allow the front part of the bicycle to try and find the smoothest ride over the cobbles.
And the bottle has jumped off one of the bike riders at the back there. Always danger if you're in the big pack. Just take a look at the chain there. As you can see, they ride a big gear too, right round the big chain ring there, to try and use strength and speed at the same time, and also give the chain something to bite on, otherwise it tends to jump off the bike altogether. Well, they're riding well. 3 stars. It's the worst cobblestone stretches are 5 stars. All of those are still ahead. These 3 stars, one is just a bumpy old ride. The 5 stars, I think sometimes there's no cobbles there, just holes in the road.
Yeah, there can be some nasty ones, but at least today the weather is good. It's been good for the majority of the week. Your man there taking a few risks over to the right-hand side, and that's a pretty scary thing to do. That's Dmitry Konishev. Now, he's a very experienced bike rider. I think he was the first Russian rider ever to win a stage in the Tour de France. That was a long time ago now. That was in the streets of Po. He's actually losing contact here with this group. He's now riding for a very small group, the small professional team called Team LPR, which is a team which has signed up an Australian rider by the name of Gene Bates, and I didn't see him at the start this morning, but he definitely did start the race.
Yes, well, Konishev's in charge of that team, and at 40 years of age, he keeps on retiring and coming back, and he shows the boys he looks after on Team LPR that he is still a pretty good bike rider, to say the least. Shrewd, canny man. He was certainly the first Russian cyclist ever to win a world medal. It was a silver medal in the World Championships when they became professional cyclists. In the old days, of course, it was the Soviet Union and there was no professional cycling, but that's all changed.
Well, the gaps are changing, though, because that second group on the road is now just at 2 minutes and 50 seconds, and it's 3.5 minutes back to the main field, and that will continue to reduce because a lot of the big teams, Phil, are starting to take the chase a little bit more seriously as we get into this very repetitive nature of the cobblestones. So they're in the next part now as we look at these guys. As you can see, the main field still, I think, everybody nervous, everybody trying to be at the front, but the hammer has definitely not yet come down.
I must say that the 2 Russian cyclists who are 40 years of age, the other one is Vyacheslav Ekimov, who rides on the Discovery Channel team. It's quite remarkable to be able to compete at this level of professional sport at 40, when the best riders are between 25 and 30 years of age. Tremendous tribute to the riders and their preparation, how they've looked after themselves to do so well. Konishev, he's won 39 races in his career, but he's been a professional since 1989.
Amazing thing about Vyacheslav Ekimov, who rides for Team Discovery Channel, is he can still be dedicated to the sport at 40. But it's probably more interesting is the fact that he actually started racing when he was 13 years old and went through the Russian School of Sports. He was a world champion. He held more than 15 world records at one time in his career, and he's still wants to participate in the Tour de France.
Never loses enthusiasm at all, and he's a great ear for the youngsters who come through into the pro teams. Just looking down at the pack here, Peter van Petegem nosing his way in here now to third place. Another big man who's won this race before, and he's got himself in front of Tom Bonen here now as we battle our way down sector 21, shortly to join almost immediately sector 20. And the big guns starting to move to the front now, try and keep out of trouble. Where you ride in the peloton, just look at the big group there, is very, very important. You do need the strength, but you also need the canniness to know exactly where to place yourself. And as they get towards the Forest of Arnhem, they'll want to be near the front. And it looks as though the Lotto team here, dedicated to Peter van Petegem, third man in line at the moment.
Van Petegem, a very clever rider. You were talking about being clever and canny. Well, Van Petegem knows this course like the back of his hand. He knows where every tree is, he knows where every cobblestone is placed, and he knows even the buildings which indicate where the cobblestone sections are going to start. And that's an important thing when you come to a race like this, to have prior knowledge. A lot of the riders have said they like to watch the old videos and the replays of Paris Roubaix to get themselves back into the feeling of this race leading up to the week before, so they know where things are going to be. They get it back into their minds as we go a little bit further up the road now to the 4 leaders. They're now on section number 20 to go. It's 2.5 kilometers long, but they are good cobblestones, these. They're only bad really when we get the bad rainy weather, but look at the gaps now starting to come down. For the first time in a number of kilometers, it's come inside of the 3-minute mark.
Steady tempo riding, that's all that's caused the descent. They're not actually physically all out catching these boys. They're not worried yet. They've got plenty of time to reel them back in. And now you're getting some feel of the crowds here in northern France as they found their way out into these most remote roads. But even if they live in the area, I doubt they ever drive down these roads. That's the end of sector 21. Looking now for sector 20. This is for the peloton. The leaders should be already through the sector 20 now. There's still a big bunch of riders here. Van Petegem, by the way, he won the race in 2001, I think it was. And 2003, rather, beat Peter van Petegem. There he is, dead centre, behind these two leading riders. Leon
right
van
behind
Bon.
him, Tom Bonen. There's Stefan Weissermann over to the left-hand side. I asked him yesterday if he wanted to win this race for Germany. He said, no, not for Germany, because I'm Swiss now. He's actually changed his nationality. He participated in the World Championships last year for Switzerland, and the reason for that is because he got married to a lady from Switzerland. So he decided to change his nationality. I'm sure it was pretty good for his tax returns as well.
116 kilometres still left to ride here. There's 100 left when we get to the forest. So we're just 16 kilometres from entering the Forest of Arnhem. It was a very rickety old road, and it still is banned to all traffic except for the days of Paris Roubaix, because it's a quiet country road with barriers either end. It's a very pleasant place to go and have a picnic and enjoy the natural reserve there. But they open it up for the passage of Paris Roubaix. It was closed to it last year because they rebuilt the road, especially for this race. There's a huge club here, the Velo Club Roubaix, who actually are called the Friends of Paris Roubaix, and they get money together to preserve the roads in the region, and they get extra money from the local municipalities, and between them they're keeping these roads as they were when Paris Roubaix first traversed them in 1896.
And one of the reasons they're keeping them is to keep this race, to keep the race with at least 50 kilometres of cobblestones, because they believe this is part of the heritage of the north of France, and it certainly is. It's a real race. It's a man's race, and you've got to be completely motivated to come here. George Hincapie up at the front. Tom Bonen not too far away either. We're starting to get just a little bit more nervous in the main field now, as you can see the teams in the different coloured jerseys riding together. That's because teams want to look after their leaders as we go now to the start of section number 20.
Yes, well, the men who've got ambition have made sure they've got themselves up or near the front here now. This is the sector 20, 2.5 kilometres, 3 stars. And we enter it with 118 to go. The main field's got 100, the leaders are 116 or so from the finish now. T-Mobile have got the whole squad on the front here, so Stefan Weissermann must be feeling frisky today, the team leader.
There's Hincapie up into 4th position, Bonen in about 8th position. This is the situation that you have to adopt now, Phil. That's why this race is so very different to all the other races in the calendar, because you have to be at the front from now all the way to the finish. Not necessarily on the front, but at least in the first 5 or 10 places. And it's a very nervous thing to do. You're always fighting, you're always battling. Every time a section of cobblestones comes, and they come every 10 or 15 kilometres, it's almost like the finish of a race. Riders taking risks to get themselves right up there into good position to the start for the start of the cobblestones.
Looks like it's Marco Righetto here who's dropped from the leaders and heading back into the peloton. So he's the first of the breakaways to get swept up, as far as we know. This is a very difficult race for our television motorbikes to cover because they can get blocked on these narrow roads very easily. They do an incredibly good job. We do have the advantage of helicopters when required, but it is an incredibly difficult race to bring to your screens. Hats go off to the motorcycle cameramen who have to hold on to their seats there quite literally over these cobblestones and still swivel around carrying a camera. It's worth remembering too, when they look at an image, it's in black and white, so they've got to pick these guys out. Now this here is Frank Hoy. He's going to also come back into the fold. He was part of that chasing group as well.
Well, just in front of the main field there is Iker Flores, and I wonder what he's thinking at the moment. Phil, what am I doing here? He's a man who in the past has won the Tour de l'Avenir, which is a race for the hopefuls for the Tour de France, and he's actually finished 18th overall in the Vuelta a España, and he's a rider who many people feel can finish in the top 10 in the Tour de France.
Far from decisive moves today. The breakaway is not going to worry the peloton, who are still continuing their little in battles here. Been a little bit of an awakening up call for George Hincapie. He fell after only 30 kilometres with one other rider. He's back in the race. We haven't caught sight of him yet, but I'm pretty sure he's not in any difficulty. He's up near the front. Tom Bonen's there, Peter Van Petegem, Robbie Hunter. Robbie Hunter also stopped riding, I think, today with a little bit of confidence, a little bit of hope. And you also need a little bit of luck, especially on this route.
You certainly do. This is the kind of race that Robbie Hunter could do well in. He's got the strength and the ability to stay near the front end of the main field, and that special turn of speed that's required if you want to keep yourself at the front when we come through to the cobblestone sections. So the leading group of 4 riders going over this next section of cobblestones, and they can now see, Phil, or feel that the time gap is starting to come down, and they know that a little bit further up the road they're going to be going into the Forest of Arenberg. What they'll want to do is try and survive so that they can lead into the Forest of Arenberg, because once they get to that forest, it is absolute chaos.
Well, this is the head of the peloton here. Just catch 1 or 2 glimpses of riders trying to work out where they are. Some are just hanging on, hoping just to finish the race. That in alone will be the limit of their ambitions. Others have got a job to do to help their leaders keep in the right position at the head of the field. Watch them if they fall or break a bike. Be ready to help them quickly, even to the point of giving them your bicycle. And there's a case in point right now. 2 teammates changing wheels with each other on the Case d'Apern team. Well, that's real bad luck, because the way they were struggling there, I think they're both going to be behind the race.
Yeah, that's the big problem about the cobblestone sections, and normally what teams will try and do is make sure they've got a man up near the front. Now this looks like a bit of a problem here for Bert Roosum. He rode a very good Ghent-Wevelgem about 4 days ago. In fact, he only got caught just inside of the final kilometre. A great time trialist, but you see this is the chaos of the cobblestones, and we haven't really, Phil, started to put the hammer down full on.
This little stretch, though, by tradition, always catches people out. I don't know why, whether it's the high banks or whether there's a lot of dirt on the edges, but every year we enter those cobblestones, it always claims a victim or 2. Looks like there's been no exception today. This is Iker Flores. He's going back into the group now as we move up to section 19, I think it is now.
This is Matti Pronk over on the right-hand side, the rider from the Unipet squad. He's just leapt off the front end of the main field, and I don't think it'll be too long before we see the main field actually starting to close the gaps on these little breakaways forming on the cobblestone sections.
Well, still up front, Postuma, Nicolas Portal, Stefan Schreck and Dmitry Konishev. But Hoy and Flores are back now in the peloton, so there's nobody in between apart from what we're seeing on our screens. Now on sector 19, another 3-star stretch. And a little bit of a counter-attack here going from Unibet.com. Matti Pronk. There's the peloton. They don't seem to be too enamoured. They're just holding their positions. It's T-Mobile, the German squad, who are getting pretty desperate for a result at the moment, as Jan Ullrich, their superstar, doesn't seem to be in the mood to race just now. Thinking perhaps only of the Tour de France yet again, later in the year.
These are pretty decent cobblestones. Once we get down towards the end, there's some nasty cobblestone sections The most famous of all of them obviously is the Forest of Arenberg, but the one that I've always found very difficult, the Pavé de l'Arbre, right down towards the end. That's very often where the decisive move can come from. This is Flores. Another problem at the back here. You see, this is what Paris Roubaix is all about. It's bad luck for anybody taking part. This is Nicolas Portal.
He must have felt. He did fall. Oh, dear me. He was in the breakaway, and he overshot that bend. Now, there's a lot of dust on the road, too. Ripped his shorts there as he now gets back into the action. Is he going to push on, or is he just going to continue to ride ahead of the field?
Well, they're just in front of him. You can see the three riders. They might even wait for him, especially if he'd been one of the strong riders. Thumbs up. That's probably for the fans and family watching at home to say, I'm fine, no problem. And he's now up and riding safely again. But that's one of those little crashes that almost everybody will have in Paris-Roubaix sometime this afternoon.
Well, he's in the leading group. He's going to rejoin them, so he'll keep the firepower up there for a little bit longer, because we're getting closer and closer to the Forest of Arenberg now. Used to be a famous coal mining area here in northern France, not so much now. And Portal hasn't won he's only won one race in his career, in fact. It was a good win too in the Dauphiné Libre race in 2004, but he's been a pro since 2002. So he's not a big winner, but he is a big workhorse, and that's very often why you get your places on the team.
You can see he's just about to make the junction here. Well, he turned professional, as you said, Phil, a couple of years ago in 2002 and rode for that AG2R team. Then he moved across to Crédit Agricole, but he didn't seem to fit in there at all. And I think it's been a good move for him now to move across to this Spanish team, the Caisse d'Epargne Lille Baleares. These are the leading group now. They're still back up to 4 riders. Their advantage coming down, though, steadily to 2.5 minutes.
A little bit of a nod to Postuma there, because he was the rider that was impeded when Portal fell. But they seem okay now. Back together again, and 2:45 to the peloton. The poursuivants, the chasers in between, are new ones. Here they are, in fact, as we should switch back to them. They just left the peloton by 15 seconds. Konishev there was looking for a drink at the front as we switch back.
This is Frankie Hoyt, and you can see that was the same corner where we just had that incident a few moments ago. The main field seriously stretched out there because of that last section of cobblestones, and I have to say, Phil, you're right, T-Mobile today certainly looking, I think, for the win, and if they're going to get the win, it's going to fall onto the shoulders probably of Stefan Weissermann.
All the T-Mobile riders we're talking about are these boys in the pink jersey. There's the traditional horse race that we always seem to find at some stage during a bike race. Hopefully they stay in the fields. We did have a situation a few years ago in Ghent-Wevelgem where one ran out and promptly knocked off the star rider of the day, which was Eric Zabel. And there's been a massive fall on this corner. This is amazing. There must be something on there. It must only be dust. Right on the inside, you see. Ouch!
That was somebody actually too
tight.
Trying to take a shortcut, and he actually cut up through the inside of
Rabobank.
somebody. And I would think the air there will be rather red.
Rabobank and Cofidis, French and Dutch team riders have gone down there. And the Cofidis rider looks as though he requires a repair job.
I wonder if that's Duclos-Lassalle, the son. In fact, it's not. It's coming across as Sébastien Minard.
Sébastien Minard. Well, I'm wondering if it's more like Kevin Hulsman's, in fact. Well, anyway, no, it is Minard. Meanwhile, back at the front here, T-Mobile still setting the pace and doing a good job just now. So this is Stefan Schreck. He's in the breakaway with Portal. I wonder if he's been sent out there for a reason today. Maybe to be joined after the Forest by his team leader, Stefan Weissermann. There's another look at the shunt. It was, in fact, the rider from Cofidis who took out the rider there from Rabobank.
Yeah, it's a tough little corner, this as well, actually, because it changes halfway around. You can see just on Postuma's right arm as well that he's got himself bandaged up, and that's probably from an accident earlier in the week in the big race at Ghent-Wevelgem. This is Dmitry Konishev, one of the oldest riders in the race at 40 years of age, Stefan Schreck. And I think there is a move this afternoon by T-Mobile. They're looking for the big win. The big one-day classics so far have been dominated by one team. That's the team Quickstep from Belgium, the team of Tom Bonen. They won the first big race of the year, Milan-San Remo, and backed it up as well with a win in the Tour of Flanders.
Well, hopefully it will stay dry today. They started in sunshine. It wasn't particularly warm. This is the chasing group now. Matty Pronk got up to Frank Hoy, and Julian Verstrepen, Johan Verstrepen was the other rider who has joined the front rider there, Hoy. Hoy was in the original chase group. These boys are taking a little bit of a break here now, eating, resting, waiting for the next sector of pavé, which will come at Havluy, sector 18, and then the one after that will be in the forest.
And look at the.
Oh dear.
We got one of the riders from CSC there's decided, I want to go to the front now, any which way that I can, and the police are trying to do the same.
Police use special motorbikes to escort this race, the motocross machinery, because they spend a lot of time in the fields, and it was pretty useful there. But the rider from Telecom almost took out that rider from CSC as he came onto the same stretch of grassland. But you see now Thor Hushovd, who's on terrific form after his win in Gent-Wevelgem midweek, first Norwegian ever to win that, needs to get off the back of that group and quickly, because once they go into the Forest of Arenberg, there'll be fallers, and in fact he could well be blocked at the back and the front end can split away, so he needs to get up to the front.
Well, we've got 15 kilometres to go to the Forest of Arenberg, but 5 kilometres to go to the next section of cobblestones, which is at Wallez, and that is a long section at 2.5 kilometres in length. So these guys now getting themselves nice and sorted out. They're going to hope to survive, Phil, but the gap is starting to come down to 2.5 minutes. And you can see the chaos that that last section of cobblestones created, because there's a lot of riders actually starting to ride back up into the main field.
Yes, some are taking the chance to go back to those cars. As we come under this disused railway track here now in this part of France, formerly servicing the coal mines here. The leaky gas team is showing interest now, and they're missing their big winner really in Magnus Bagstedt, who won this race a couple of years ago, the first ever Swedish man to win, and sadly out with an injury and not here, and he's really upset about that, because this is his race.
Just look at the movement at the front end of the main field. Everybody getting nervous, everybody trying to find that place at the front, but not wanting to put in all of the energy to stay right on the front, because there's still an awful long way to go in this bike race. Actually, just before the start, I went across to the Velo Club Roubaix offices just on the opposite side of the finishing line here, and there was a great advertisement for the year that Magnus Bagstedt won the race, Magnus Maximus, without Magnus crossing the line, and that was a great win on that occasion.
This rider here who's just coming up here, Matthew Pronk, looks as though he's got a bit of blood on his elbow, so he's been on the floor as well today. May have been the rush of adrenaline that got him away from the field. But these are chasing at the moment at around about 2 minutes plus. And it's only Hoy and Pronk now, so they've got rid of Streppen. He must have gone back into the peloton. There's the gap. In fact, they're making quite an interesting gap over the peloton just now.
They certainly are. Frankie Hoy is a very dedicated rider to these kind of races. Matty Pronk has actually had a fairly good start to the season. He won one of the big early season races in Belgium at Wanzele. Those giants, by the way, that you can see at the side of the road, giant dummies, is something which is very typical to the north of France. They're known as the Géants du Nord, and every little town has its own giant dummies which they take out to all the big festivals.
There's a couple in the stadium here too. So the Quick Step team to the left and the T-Mobile team to the right. This is the return to the peloton of Iker Flores, who was in the early move, and he's now giving best to the pace as he comes back in.
Been a big
he's more
experience.
at home going uphill, I think, rather than over the cobbles.
He certainly is, but he's got a big experience now to take back to Spain with him, because he's been at the front of this bike race. This is a legendary bike race, the Paris Roubaix Classics, known as the Queen of the Classics, because everybody really wants to win this bike race. And we're just going through the same point that leading group of 4 riders passed a few moments ago, so it's all starting to come very much back together.
And it's almost the calm before the storm here. The rides have come back together. The roads have got rather good. We're bound for the next sector of cobblestones, which will be 155 kilometres covered. Quick Step riding well at the front. Serpellini is the rider in the green strip there.
Matty Heyman in the middle. He'll be looking after Juan Antonio Fletcher. I would think Fletcher would like to go better than his 3rd place last year. The man in the middle there in the pink jersey is Stefan Besemann, the now Swiss rider on the German T-Mobile squad. There's Leif Hoster for Team Discovery Channel riding up at the front, 2nd in the Tour of Flanders. Not very much negotiation went on between Hincapie and Hoster in the Tour of Flanders, and I think George was a little bit upset because he was thinking about attacking at the same time. So we might see George take the race by the horns this afternoon and try and go out on a long attack.
Well, I think just at the moment we'd like to see George, because I don't see him. Hoster is certainly there. Just watching the stars, keeping an eye on the men that will surely be in the finale, all things being normal.
Well, this is the Arrière de la Course, the back end of the race. They're coming into the small town now of Denain. And Denain will indicate that they've got about 2 kilometers to go to the next section of cobblestones known as Wallers, before they then ride for 10 kilometers to go and find the forest of Arenberg.
Well, there's another one of the giants of the north. Best seat in the house, that one.
It certainly is. You can see the little bit of chaos at the back. There's Iker Flores has gone from the front to the back. Vogels in second position there, looking very concentrated. He loves these races. Henk Vogels once finished second in the Ghent-Wevelgem Classic, but he really enjoys these kind of races, Tour of Flanders and Paris Roubaix.
He's a hard man of Dutch descendancy, lives in Perth, born and bred. Back up with the leader now, Nicolas Portal, who's been on the floor once, but he's back up, riding well. This is Joost Postuma of the Rabobank team. He's carrying his injuries from a previous race. There's the latest gaps. After 105 kilometres to go, 5 kilometres to the forest, a minute 55 they've got over the first group on the road. They've been away now, in fact, they broke away at around about 70 kilometres in today.
Well, they should still survive to get to the forest in the first 4 places. There's Jeremy Hunt in the light green and white jersey there in about 3rd or 4th position. Good to see Jeremy riding up there the front end of the main field. There's Fabian Cancellara just a little bit further back as well, a man who would certainly like to ride well in this race.
Well, I must say, Jeremy Hunt there is doing very well. He's well known in Australia. He used to ride in the former bank race there, the Commonwealth Bank Classic. He was a race leader and rode extremely well in that event. Been a pro a while now, but he's still enjoying a great year as a professional cyclist. He just needs the nudge that will give him the big win, because he's there all the time. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and this race would be the big win, that's for sure.
But Tom Bonen just moved to the front. You could see the chaos there. These guys don't have to worry too much about that chaos. They're now heading up to section number 18. And that will be the little section of cobblestones coming out of the town here of Haveluy, and it's called the Wallers. So Postuma, second on a very difficult stage of Paris-Nice this year, followed by Schreck. Just getting on the back there, Dmitry Konishev. It's amazing to see him riding at the front of a bike race like this, and the other man in the group, Nicolas Portal. So there's the Caisse d'Epargne Lille Baleares rider who went down. There's the main field. I can feel the nervousness rising now in the main field as they get slowly but surely closer to the section of cobblestones that really has given this race its nickname as the Hell of the North. As riders all know it. You can see right at the front, the white jersey there in second position. That's Tom Bonen. It's been a long time, Phil, since we've seen a world champion ride so confidently as this young man. There's Robbie Hunter over to the left. Nice to see Hunter put in a good ride here this afternoon. But I'm still looking to see if I can spot George Hincapie up at the front end of the main field.
So the peloton making the way towards the forest now. We nip round the tortuous streets here. The giants of the area enjoying the best view in the house, and all the villagers out here watching. Goodness knows how many of these events they will have seen. This is a traditional route now as we head towards the forest of Arenberg. This is the second, this is the penultimate stretch of cobblestones before we go into the forest itself. And these are the 4 early pacemakers today, and they're doing pretty well. They're hanging on. 103 kilometres to go, 3 kilometres in the forest. Sector number 18 here. 4 stars, little bit harder than we've seen for a while.
Hard to believe there's still 103 kilometres to go to the finish. That's 65 miles of racing. There's a lot of cobblestones as well before the riders get to the finishing velodrome here in Roubaix. The gaps are starting to come down. Now 1 minute 55 back to the 2 chasers, 2:25 back to the main field. But the main field, I think, Phil, not really worried about these 4 men here. What they're thinking about is their approach to the forest of Arenberg. The dust is a major problem here this afternoon. Paris-Roubaix has different conditions every year. Some years it's the mud which makes these roads almost impassable. Other days it's the dust that comes up into the riders' faces. These are the two riders who were caught in no man's land. They're just about to get picked up by the main field, who'll come around that corner any moment now.
And there they are. So Frankie Hoy is going to go back into the pack. They're going to fight for the holding their places now. This is becoming the crucial sector. First big decision time of Paris Roubaix today, and the leaders of the pack are going to race hard to stop anybody moving up and spoiling their fun. These two riders get swept up here now as we head out to Havluy, and they've got to watch those nasty splits in the centre of the road, you see, because those directional islands, as they call them here, have sent half the field the long way around. And they've lost all the... And there's a crash there. The cameras haven't spotted it, but there's quite a few riders gone down. There's two down at the back. Well, that is a shame there, because the rider from Phonak who's gone down is Uras Merm, one of their sprinters. But I know that the South Africans will be pleased. It's not Robbie Hunter here. The other rider is Sebastian Siedler of the Gerolsteiner team. So, and he looks a little bit hurt there. Nasty fall right on the corner.
Well, those guys were trying to take risks to get up to the front. This is actually Sebastian Siedler of Team Milram, and he really does look pretty hurt. There's Gerard Porte, the race doctor. Gerard has been the doctor at the Tour de France for many, many years, and he's picked up many a good bike rider at the side of the road and encouraged them and helped them to get back into the race. But now you can see the difference in the speed, Phil, because we're getting ourselves organised on the front end of the main field, because these are real sections of cobblestones. And I would have to say, I have a feeling that Hincapie is right up there.
We are now looking across the fields of northern France here. We're on to sector 18 of the 27 sectors. We count downwards to 1, and this sector of Havluy is heading towards the forest now. This is a 4-star sector, which makes it one of the most difficult. 5 stars is the most difficult. There are 4 riders setting the pace up front: Joost Postuma, Nicolas Portal, Stefan Schreck and Dmitry Konishev. But they've got about 2 minutes and no more, and at one stage it was a bit more than that. And the leaders now are beginning to split up, because this is Konishev, and on this sector of Pavé he looks as though he may have cracked. Well, at 40 years of age he certainly should.
Well, that's not a big surprise to see Dmitry Konishev in difficulties, you say, Phil. 40 years of age, a very experienced bike rider, but these younger men are feeling just that little bit more frisky as they go onto this section of cobblestones. But the main field behind is really now starting to pick up speed and take a lot more interest in the race, because very shortly after this section of cobblestones, they have got the horrendous section known as the Forest of Arenberg. It really is a difficult section of cobblestones, 2.5 kilometers in length, and that's why you can see the main field is really starting to stretch out.
Well, this is the main field. They're on the same sector of Pavé at the moment, but quite a lot further back, and it looks to me as though we've got riders now. Tom Bonen is not far away from the front, as he has been. He's had his quick-step riders setting the pace. We've seen Leif Hoster up there. We haven't seen too much yet of the other favourite, George Hincapie, but we're assured he's still there. He's had a fall. He fell off at around about 30 kilometres, 20 miles or so, but it wasn't serious, and he got back into the field. But it looks as though the breakaway is beginning to splinter. This is the chaos near the back of the field here too, as they came onto the surface. We had a fall just before they entered this stretch of cobblestones. 2 riders going down, and Sebastian Siedler, the way he was holding his wrist, may have broken his wrist, but let's hope not.
You get a chance here just to see how fast these riders go over the cobblestones. Once there's a slight gap, it takes an awful long time for the motorbike cameraman to get up to the back end of the main field. Quick step on the front, very much in control, and that is because they're trying to get this race sorted out for their man Tom Boonen. Boonen is the overall #1 favourite for this bike race. He won the event last year. Team Discovery Channel are right up there as well. There's Hincapie moving up into 4th position. There you can see T-Mobile. They're already taking a very clear interest. There's Bonen in around about 8th position, so he's already, Phil, starting to be very attentive.
Tricky little section, this one. It's the preamble to take us into the Forest of Arenberg. It's where you've got to now hold position and do your best to keep where you want to be, which is at the front right now. We're looking here at Eric Bertou of the Case d'Apan Spanish team. He himself being a French rider, of course, but 1 or 2 of those rides had a rough old ride today. We saw 2 changing wheels earlier on as well. Some of the teams have put mechanics along the route in the hope they've chosen the right spot to keep their riders in the hunt at the front of the race, because every man is for himself here now in Paris Roubaix, because the cobblestones come thick and fast, and the big stretch of the new approach to Arenberg isn't very, very far away. Now, we're hearing all sorts of conflicting comments about the Arenberg Forest. Some say it's as bad as it ever was. Some say the wheels are sticking in the freshly laid sand. Now there's action at the front here. Looks like Matt White.
Matty White, he's a strong bike rider from Australia. He's come back onto the Discovery Channel team. He used to ride for the team when it was known as US Postal Service, but he today is ripping up the pace at the front end of the main field because he knows that George Hincapie has probably got the form of his life.
Well, off that right-hand bend then, there's still a little bit of reorganisation. Konishev has got himself back up to the 4 leaders as ahead lies the Forest. And these are going to see it first now, just inside the 100 kilometres from the finish. The gap over the peloton, very manageable now at 1:26. It was almost 5.
Well, these guys now have got to get themselves composed. They'll be looking for the big mine head gear, which is the start of the Forest of Arenberg. You can see it from miles around here, and everybody knows about that. The man just sitting on the back here, Dmitry Konishev, actually managed to use his experience there to reintegrate this leading group of 4 riders. But I tell you what he's doing now, Phil, is he's wondering whether or not they're going to survive to Arenberg, because that gap has come down from 4 minutes to 1.5.
A nice smile from Dmitry. He knows he's done it all before. At 40 years of age, a professional since 1989, and he's now bound for the Forest on the leading train again. He'll want a nice peaceful passage through the Forest, I think. It's gently uphill, by the way. It's not completely flat. And the cobblestones themselves have got a lot of sand between the gaps today.
Well, Konishev is probably hoping to get into that section of cobblestones at Arenberg. He really would like to, because it really is remarkable for a man at 40 years of age to be at the front of a bike race like this. It's amazing how those old Russians, Konishev and of course Vyacheslav Ekimov, are doing a great job in the sport today.
Matty White on the front for Team Discovery now. Leif Host isn't far away from the wheel. Still looking for the location of Georgie Hincapie as they now make a little split on the roundabout there. All come back together again. Tom Bonan, the white jersey of world champion, just off to the right of our picture.
There's Leif Hoster just over to the left-hand side. There's Jeremy Hunt in the lime green and white jersey from Team Unibet, right at the front end of the main field. Doing a good job, Jeremy, a former British national champion. While the Tête de la Course, the 4 leaders, are still surviving, Phil, and they're getting slowly but surely closer to this incredible race known as the race through the Forest of Arenberg. For me, this has always been the most important part of Paris Roubaix. To me, it's the start of the race reel.
And don't think they don't know that right now as they go into the Forest. We'll see it very shortly. There's the old mine, and in fact the mine pits and the shafts themselves slide underneath the road in the Forest of Arenberg. I think it's John Slabinski, former world champion, who once said he's probably the only man who's worked underneath and on top, because he was also a coal miner before he was a professional bike rider.
Yeah, tough coal miner of Polish descent, and he certainly was a very good professional bike rider as well. You can see now the place you don't want to be, Phil, is at the back now as we get that little bit closer to the Forest of Arenberg. Here you can see Matty White strangling his bike at the front. There's Eric Zabel in 3rd position. Zabel could be a good man for the win here this afternoon because he's a very experienced rider. George Hincapie is there in about 5th or 6th place.
And Eric Zabel is there in 3rd place too. He's never had a really great Paris-Roubaix, but he's always threatened to have one. He's getting a good look at the front of the race. The men with the experience and of course the talent know that they've got to be at the front when they enter the Forest, because any mistakes and the whole field will be blocked. These are the leaders, and they've been the leaders now since about the 60th kilometre or so today. At one stage enjoying nearly 5 minutes, but now falling away to just on 1.5. And the gap, latest time check, we've got 1:25 as they approach the Forest. Konishev, he knows it's only a matter of time, but I think he'd dearly like to be out the other end of the Forest before they come up.
Certainly would. It'd be nice to go in after all of the effort these riders have put on in what is known as l'échappée matinale, the early morning breakaway, which is nearly always doomed for failure, but it does lay its mark on the race. They raced the first hour of racing here in Paris-Roubaix at 47 kilometers an hour. They're starting to slow down a little bit now because of the cobblestones, but in the main field they will be doing around about 50 kilometers an hour now as they set themselves up for this big well-known Forest.
Here's the sharp left-hand turn. There's the arrowhead of the peloton. And those stringing out at the back are going to be in difficulty very soon now, because this race will split in the Forest of Arenberg, and we're not far from the entry now.
Everybody's getting nervous. This is a nervous time. Now look at that. 4 minutes they had about 25 kilometers ago. It's down to 1 minute advantage over the majority of the main field. One or two riders have been left behind because of incidents of crashes and flat tires out on the course. We saw Thor Hushoff at the back of the main field a few moments ago. He must be wondering whether or not he's going to have any bad luck in this section of cobblestones coming up now. Wallers, Arenberg, this is a very famous place.
And it's a beautiful area too, once you get into the forest. Very quiet, very peaceful, except on Paris Roubaix day. Long straight approach now. That bridge in the distance is actually over the entry of the forest and the cobblestones. And these four guys are going to make it first. It was touch and go at one stage, but Postuma, Portal, Schreck and Konishev at the back are going to enter the forest with a lead of less than a minute, and at one stage they had just under 5 minutes, so they might well get caught in the forest.
I think they will get caught in the forest, but you can see now that the impetus has gone out of their chase. They've done what they wanted to do. They've survived the early part of today's race, but in the same streets now of the town of Wallers is the main peloton. There you can see over on the left-hand side, Peter van Petegem is at the front with his men, but they're about to start the charge, Phil, now into the forest.
A huge crowd awaits here in the Forest of Arenberg as they go under the banner which will say Sector 17. The Arenberg Forest. The four leaders here of Paris-Roubaix, they are now entering the 5-star section of the Forest of Arenberg with a lead of 53 seconds over the whole main pack of riders here. George Hincapie has moved up to the front, so too Leif Hoster, Tom Bonen. This is going to be a real battle of the stars now over this new stretch of cobblestones. We'll see how they manage to ride it now.
Well, it might be a new section of cobblestones, but you look at the way those bikes are bouncing around all over the place. They've managed to keep the barriers and the crowd away to make it as safe as possible for these bike riders. But just look how difficult this section is. 2.4 kilometers long. They go slightly downhill, and look how fast the main field is going, and Tom Bonen is on the front.
It's Tom Bonen driving, Hincapie right behind him. The big two men are firing on the cobbles in the forest here. All of the white that's coming off is in fact the silver sand they used to hold the cobbles together. The riders were complaining that the wheels were sticking in it. Well, now we're going to find out just by how much, because they're going to have to ride down the breakaway. Hincapie and Bonen one-on-one.
One-on-one. Tom Bonen is one of the biggest specialists in the world now, Phil, at the Cobblestone Classics. He's looking to win this again. Look at the way he's picking his way over the cobblestones, but right on his wheel is Hincapie. Stefan Weissermann is not too far away either, and I don't believe that Van Petegem is far away from them either.
Well, they know just the importance of being on the front here, because they know riders will be falling behind them on these cobblestones, and they're going to have to drive. Stefan Schreck is setting the pace for T-Mobile, but these are the leading four riders now in the gunning sights of the pack. The pack is being led by Tom Bonen. Hincapie's read it perfectly. Suddenly he appears to take the wheel of the world champion.
Well, this is a very difficult section of cobblestones. The leading group of four now down to 3, but there is the main field. Nobody's down yet. Everybody is still riding nice and safely at the front end of the main field, but it looks as if somebody else has taken over the pacemaking, because this looks like Cancellara.
Well, he's also a man tipped. He was ranked amongst the second favourites to win this race, the Swiss rider Fabien Cancellara. He's riding well as he's got over the front. Bonen looks across there at George Hincapie. Hincapie's got everything under control, leading the race just behind the CSC rider here. But cast your eyes to the back of the race, because that's where it is really not the place to be. Riders dodging and diving in every direction.
Well, you see the big riders are riding right down the cobblestone section in the middle. That's actually, believe it or not, the safest part of the race to be. Hincapie has taken the responsibility there of chasing down Cancellara, and he's put, in fact, Tom Bonen into second place. These are the three leaders. They will go off the cobblestones probably in first, second and third place, but not by very much at all.
And the only man they will have left behind is the grand old 40-year-old Dmitry Konishev, the oldest man in this race. As he continues to go back into the peloton, the other three push on to exit the Forest of Arenberg. And they're in a very good position now to join the head of the peloton, because this will be a reshape here.
Well, this is a big reshape. It's the most important part of Paris-Roubaix for me, because this is where you can have serious bad luck. And if you had bad luck here or a flat tyre, you can come out of the Forest of Arenberg 2.5 minutes behind everybody else in the race. Peter van Petegem riding very well right up to the front end of the main field, but George Hincapie, Phil, today demonstrating that he wants to win this race.
Well, he's made it known he's fed up of finishing in the placings. Now he wants to finish and get the cobblestone for the sideboard at home for himself. That's what the winner gets, along with about €30,000. As we're now looking here at the leaders of the race.
Well, they're catching Postuma. There he is over to the right-hand side. Look at Boonen. He's just looking so relaxed in the cobblestones. He's the man there in the white jersey. Looks great as the world champion. Moving round at the outside as well, you can see the rider there from the Française des Jeux. There's 2 riders in there from Team Discovery Channel, but this is really the first forming of the decanting of the stars. There's Van Petegem going through there, and Hincapie will be very happy. There's got 2 teammates in that group.
17 riders have gone off the cobbles in that group together. The rest are trying to repair the damage here. Look at the face of Baden Cook, third in line. He's not that far behind as he grimaces to come off these cobbles with the second group on the road. As we switch now to what is life at the back of the peloton on Paris-Roubaix.
Well, this is just a section of 2.4 kilometers, just inside of 2 miles of racing, and look at the damage. It seems like an awful long time since we saw George Hincapie and his group go off the back. I just caught a quick glimpse there of Hervé Duclos-Lassalle. His dad won this race on 2 occasions.
But that was Hervé right on the back and learning the hard way, as indeed his dad did in the old days too.
Bradley Wiggins just going through there as well. He's at the back end of the bike race. This is a very excruciating part of the sport, trying to ride over these cobblestones. And you see, once you lose your speed, you bump into every single stone on this road.
That's poor old Kenny Van Hundel there of the Skill Shimano team. Lost a little bit of control at the back. The peloton now has split up here quite dramatically. These riders already, I think, are out of the hunt. There were 17 riders went off the end of the pavé in pursuit of the handful of leaders. I think there were 3 went off the front end first. We'll catch up with them as soon as we can. These are static cameras here at the exit of the Forest of Arenberg. Now we move up on the mobile ones. The world champion, #1, Tom Boonen, taking stock now as to who is with him. Well, I think he hasn't lost any of the main worries of the race. Stefan Westerman is here, George Hincapie is here, and so too is Peter van Petegem.
111 there, Frédéric Guédon, a former winner of Paris-Roubaix himself. We've got all of the big leaders here. That's Florent Bras there, number 101. A little bit further up as we get a chance to see just exactly who's made the move. Stefan Schreck has survived there. He was in that breakaway this morning of 4 riders. Now he's managed to get into this leading group of 17. But all of the big names, Phil, have managed to make the junction. I don't really think anybody's missing.
But there's a lot of the peloton missing, and that, of course, is why they go so fast. The men with the talent will out at the front, providing they put themselves in the right position, because meanwhile, life at the exit of the Forest of Arenberg, it's over 1.5 minutes now back to these riders, maybe even a bit more.
You get a chance now just to see why this Forest of Arenberg is so important in this race, because you go in at the same time as everybody else and you go out of it 2 minutes in arrears.
There's George Hincapie, third in line here. Now, when the picture goes still like that, it means the camera's correcting with the shake, so you don't lose the image, but it'll come right in the end. There is a very select front group. Shades, perhaps, of last week's Tour of Flanders, Paul, when Boonen attacked. Got 15 men clear of the field, the rest never saw them again.
And all of them big names on that occasion, big names on this occasion too, because right at the front I caught the glimpse of the best placed Spanish rider in this race last year, Juan Antonio Fletcher, the Arrow man himself.
As the helicopter camera pulls back, that is a huge gap already. A select little group here contains, among others, the Australian Baden Cook. They're going to have to organise a chase if they can here, as they get themselves reorganised. Next stretch of cobblestones is quite a long one. It runs 3.7 kilometres.
It's a nasty section of cobblestones too. It's a section of cobblestones which makes part of the Grand Prix of Denain, a very famous race in the northern part of France here. And these riders know that. They want to make sure that the main field that they've dropped now doesn't start to reintegrate before the start of that cobblestone section. That's Peter van Petegem up there in third position. A lot of big names in this group, Phil.
There's Van Petegem. He's moved up into second position now, and this has worked well so far for him. It's good to see that the riders who have been rather crushed by the amazing publicity that Tom Bonan has been given this last few weeks, and well deserved, I might add, that they are not losing any confidence and still prepared to take him on.
Well, Tom Bonan in the group with a lot of teammates, but it's good to see Française de Jeux up there as well. They've always been able to motivate themselves for this event, and that's because their team manager Marc Madiot was a French winner of this event.
17 riders then. They've picked up the 3 leaders, are now going forward at 90 kilometres from the finish.
So Hincapie's name is crackling over race radio now, just to let us know that he's definitely in the group. Now they want to get themselves organised. The next section of cobblestones is around about a kilometre from here, and that will be the section of Wallers as well, but it's from Wallers to Elem. It's a section of 1.6 kilometres in length, and there's a nasty little bend in the middle as they go in between a railway bridge which is known as the Pont Gibus, nicknamed after Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, the Frenchman who won this race on 2 occasions.
On to the next. We're on the next stretch of cobblestones now. This is sector number 16 as we say goodbye to the forest and we race around Wallers. 17 riders are clear now, and I'm not so sure anybody else will be seen today. Just on 90 kilometres, about 56 miles to race, and the nasty stretch of the cobblestones. The Arenberg isn't the worst by any means, still lie ahead. It's the Arenberg which often proves decisive. It's the first phase of Paris Roubaix, and that appears to be what's happened, Paul, because Bonan and Hincapie with their attack, they've swept up the breakaways. We've got 17 riders together now and going clear.
But it's interesting this year to know that it's all of the big riders seem to have made the group. The man who may well have missed out, and I haven't seen any green jerseys in this group for the moment, is Thor Hushoff, the recent winner of Gent-Wevelgem. He was looking to ride well here, but I think he might have had just a little bit too much bad luck this afternoon.
I agree, because I think the problem was he was off the back with a teammate just before they came into the town on the outskirts and got back, but I don't think he had the legs to get up front before the split happened.
It could have been a badly timed bit of bad luck for this man there. You can see Discovery Channel are actually dictating the pace at the front end of the main field. But of course, this is going to be very tactical now down towards the end. The important thing is to make sure you've got as many teammates around you as possible, because that's maybe got to be the deciding factor of Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon.
Well, we're still waiting to ascertain exactly who is in the break. There are 17 of them. Leif Hoster, George Hincapie. Here's the man we talked about, number 91, Thor Hushoff. And he is at, oh, and another flat tyre. Well, when you look, he's out, it's out. This is the man who won so convincingly Gent-Wevelgem in the week. And I think this is his second puncture in about 5 kilometres.
Well, this can very often happen. You know, Thor Hushoff is a very big rider, rides a lot heavier over the cobblestones than anybody else, and he had a flat tyre the other day in training over the Forest of Arenberg, but that flat tyre at that moment, I think, is going to be very difficult for him to come back into the race.
Well, we're still charging over sector 16 of 27. We count down to sector 1. And we're looking now at Leif Hoster setting the pace here and looking very, very good. He's got tremendous form for Discovery Channel. Lars Mikkelsen is there in the 3rd place. We know Hincapie is here. And this is, and Ballan is here too.
Yeah,
now
Ballan,
that's an interesting one.
Well, Ballan is a rider that many people felt would be an interesting outsider. There's Hincapie just sitting at the back of the group. He's keeping his eye very closely on Tom Bonan. Bonan riding halfway down the line, but there's Roger Hammond as well, so that's nice to see that he's recovered from that injury.
Well, hats off to Roger Hammond. He rides this race with 14 stitches in his knee, and he's showing us that he is riding extremely well. I think they've also got Vladimir Gusev. There could be 4 men here from Discovery.
Well, let's have a chance to have a look here. Gusev, in fact, was the rider. I think I misidentified there. It wasn't Roger Hammond. He's a tough bike rider, but let's have a look at the rest. Postuma still survives. Lundqvist is up there for CSC with Lars Mikkelsen as well.
Well, just looking down at the field, they're starting to slow down. Not a good sign. The return of the others, if they do that, slowly being reorganised. So we have 17 riders clear now. The first phase of Paris-Roubaix has been played, and George Hincapie and Leif Hoster, Tom Bonan and Van Petegem are all in the move. The gap is now 35 seconds to the second group on the road. Henk Vogel's looking at each other. He won't chase now because his teammate is up front, Van Petegem.
Well, you know what? I'm just having a quick look at the overall makeup, Phil, of that leading group of 17 riders. Tom Boonen is actually on his own. Now, that could be decisive in the latter part of this race. They'd said the only way to beat Tom Boonen was to isolate him, and they've done that in the section of cobblestones known as the Forest of Arenberg. This is Servais Carnarvon. He's in the second group. Now, they want to try and pull it all back together. But now, as we look at the race developing, we are seeing Team Quickstep on the defensive.
Well, that's Lars Mikkelsen, I think, checking in. No, it's not. It's his teammate there, just trying to work out what is happening. This is the second bunch we're looking at. Servais Carnarvon, mouth wide open. He could do with getting up there because his team leader might need a little bit of help. Tom Bonen's made it with a teammate, and he hasn't got a lot of firepower up there. Not quite the plan he had, I don't think, because that's a very strong group of favourites around him, and he's going to have to keep the eyes in the back of his head if he's going to manage every one of them.
Going to be a big chase. Look, there's a lot of discussion going on right now. Team Quickstep have really been caught out. There's 4 riders in this group. I think the tactic, Phil, will have to be let's chase it down, because Tom Boonen is completely and utterly on his own. I
think the tactic failed, frankly. Tom was too strong for his own boys in the Forest of Arenberg. They couldn't go with the move. And that is interesting, because it's in favour now, of course, of the riders from Discovery Channel who are also up there. This is Aurélien Clerc, the leader of Phonak here, looking a little bit quizzical, but look how Quickstep, the teammates of Tom Boonen, have all come to the front here, and they don't seem to be worried about who they're towing back up to that leading group. They've got to bring it back.
They don't worry at all. This is their race. They prepare for this race, and look at what a drilled squad they are. They're not worried about all the passengers chasing. They've got to the front, got themselves organised, and said, we've got to get back up to Tom, because for the moment he's on his own with 3 riders from Discovery Channel. That is not good tactically, but they are trying to make amends here.
Well, Van Petegem and Steegmans of De Vitamin are up there. Hincapie and Host of Discovery along with Gusev. They're also up there. They've got 3 riders, and that will favour them. Tom Boonen is outnumbered. I think he's the only one from Quickstep who's made the break.
He's the only one who's made the break. There are 2 riders up there from Rabobank, Juan Antonio Fletcher and Postuma. Cancellara is up there for Team CSC with Lars Mikkelsen. Peter Van Petegem has made the junction as well, which is very important. And the other rider to get into that group, Phil, from Française des Jeux was Bernard Eisel.
And Eisel packs a very good sprint finish. That'll be a real turn-up for him if he can do a win, because Eisel is an Austrian, and no Austrians ever finished in the first 3 in Paris Roubaix.
Well, these guys really are dedicated to pulling this back. They're 40 seconds down on the leading group of 17 riders. I think they will pull them back, because this is the top squad in the world at the moment, alongside Discovery Channel. Everybody had said Team Discovery Channel had got the power to look after George Hincapie in this race, and certainly they've done that, Phil, by putting 3 men into the leading group.
Well, hats off to Discovery Channel, paying attention, which is not the case of the riders from Quickstep, but I think they will come back. But we'll wait and see. It's a very workmanlike group, but don't expect to see the world champion Tom Boonen wearing number 1 on the white jersey doing any work here. There's all the names for you. Some great guys have made it. George Hincapie at the front now knows what he's got. This is Eisel coming through now.
Well, Hincapie's going to be very happy.
There he is at the back.
He has to play tactically defensively now, because he knows he's completely and utterly on his own. If he is to have a mechanical incident now, it's going to be very difficult, and I think I can almost see a little bit of worry on the face of Tom Boonen there. He knows he needs to have this group come back, because this is the group that contains nearly all of his team.
He's got to let this group come back. He won't do any work in that breakaway. He'll sit at the back and watch the moves, keep an eye on certain names. But this is the group he wants to see, his faithful soldiers back up alongside him to lead him out across the cobblestones. Well, this is unusual, because the big names of Quickstep didn't have the power to go with him in the move.
Well, he was too powerful himself when he went over the Forest of Arenberg. Then he was relayed by George Hincapie. That's what caused the damage. We've got a chance here to see the leading group of 17 riders. The gap is still hovering. It's 36 seconds. They're having a very hard time actually putting it back, because there's so many big names in this group.
36 seconds, yes, and if they get to the cobblestones, then that gap may start to open. We're only 85 kilometers from the finish, and we still have 15 sectors of cobblestones to go. Boonen has gone through in the line here. He's gone to the front, but he's not exactly lifting the pace. He's just trying to disrupt it a little bit, slow it down. He's desperate for some firepower to join him.
It's coming back, Phil. It's 21 seconds to that second group behind now, but they've got another section of cobblestones reeling up in around about 3 kilometers time.
Nicolas Portal was number 107 there. He's had a great ride so far. Goodness knows how long he can survive with this lead group now. He's got to be feeling a bit tired. Stegmans also up in that group. Posthumus still here from Rabobank.
Well, that group behind, Phil, you know, they really do have to nail back this group because they're coming to a very long section of cobblestones up next. It's going to be 3.7 kilometers, 2¼ miles of racing, and that's coming up to them in around about 2 miles time. And that's why the leading group here is really insisting, because they don't want Tom Boonen's teammates to come back. But I think they may well just do it as they enter the cobbles.
Well, there's still around about half a minute onto that right-hander there. It's a big bunch too, if it all gets back. That is a rather large bunch to have survived together through the forest. I think it must be because the big guns all got away off the front, and there's more or less a pack of just regular kind of guys there. Except these boys here are trying to correct the mistake they made. They let the captain get in the group without him.
This is no regular group of guys. This is Team Quickstep. They are an unbelievable squad, especially when it comes to races like this. A little bit of disarray there, a little bit of discussion. Nick Noyen's talking to the lads saying, come on, let's get ourselves organised. We've got a team here of Wilfred Kretchen, Stefan de Jong, Kevin Hulsman, Servais Knaven, Nick Noyens we just mentioned, Filippo Pozzato. Those are big, serious riders. Many of them could win this race themselves. Pozzato already this year has won Milan-San Remo. There's the leading group of 17. It's actually stretched out again a little bit, 28 seconds. They will come, I think, to the next section of cobblestones in front of that group.
And here comes the cavalry here now. The leaders, if they get to the cobblestones, this race, I think, behind is going to start to crack under severe pressure to reach that front group. And they won't waste any time. They've got to finish it now, because once the elastic stretches, things can go horribly wrong. Riders will fall again soon on the cobblestones. Riders will get flat tyres, and these boys want to finish it off now. Here we are onto the next sector of cobblestones now.
Long section of cobblestones this. It's known as the section of Ornain. It's 3.7 kilometers in length, and it is a very hard section of cobblestones. Really made difficult because of the length. It's two sections sort of brought together. If Team Quickstep have got anything under the bonnet at the moment, what they need to do, Phil, is try and rip the place apart on this section, and then they might just be able to catch up with the team leader.
Well, the worst scenario now would be a problem for Tom Bonen. He's got nobody to help him here. I wouldn't recommend riding amongst those cinders on the left either. These tyres can blow very quickly. A lot of the riders have changed bicycles or wheels off camera, but they've had mechanics there with reduced pressure to try and stop the blowouts on the cobblestones. But they're making pace down the cobblestones. It switches around a little bit. Huge crowd enjoying a chilly day, to say the least. It's only about 10 or 11 degrees Celsius, and in Fahrenheit that's about 55 degrees.
A little bit of chaos. This is the second group now. Team Quickstep trying to rip it all to pieces. We've got to get back up to Tom. That's what they're thinking. Our leader is on his own, but he's going to need us at least sometime during the afternoon, because there's still 50 miles of racing, 80 kilometers to go to the finishing line. There you can see the acceleration, 27 seconds now between the leading group of 17 and the chasers behind. And the leading group of 17, Phil, are actually starting to lose themselves one or two men.
Well, don't forget the breakaway is here. The man that's dangling now is host Postuma. Not surprisingly, here comes Stefan Schreck. These are the men who've been in the lead all day. The other one is Nicolas Portal. I think he might just be playing last man. So we can expect those two to go back. But the rest are going forward and turning the screw a little bit tighter. There's Portal, still living dangerously in amongst the grass between the cobblestones. And this is the sort of speed they're riding over the stones. Around about 43 kilometers an hour, they're bouncing their way to Roubaix.
You have to ride the cobblestones with power, with a big gear. Keep it rolling over. There you can see just about to go pop off the back of the group. There is Portal. That's not a surprise, really. He was in that early morning breakaway. He did a great job opening up the roads of Paris Roubaix this afternoon. But now he can see that he's with the big guns, and they're going over these cobblestones at a completely different speed.
Well, he's just trying to hang on in there. It makes you want to lean over and give him a push. He's had such a great day of racing, Nicolas Portal. Coming down now too is the Lampre rider here, but it's not Balan, it's his teammate who's being unhitched off the back just now. This is Fonacciari, I think it is.
It's Enrico Fronzai.
Oh,
he will go out to the back, yep. and he's having a very difficult time. And there you can just see hanging on there for grim death as well was Vladimir Gusev. He wants to stay in contact as long as possible. He's the Russian rider on Discovery Channel, and he is up there for George Hincapie this afternoon.
They say he's a real star of the future as well. He's a hard man, and they say he's a pretty good disco dancer too. Well, he's going to do a bit of disco dancing on these cobblestones, that's for sure, as he tries to hang on to the back for that little bit longer. Hincapie will need him later if he can survive. And Lars Mikkelsen, who's setting the pace right now, his teammate is also here, Fabian Cancellara. They are very strong riders in this breakaway, and they want to keep this big bunch from catching them up.
Well, you know, I spoke to Lars Mikkelsen the other day, Phil, just before the start of Gent-Wevelgem, and he said to me, I just am a little bit too old for these races these days, but he seems to be riding fairly well this afternoon. It's amazing how a man can raise his game when he needs to look after a teammate.
We're looking down on the leaders now. There were 17, they're down to about 15. The 3 breakaways originally, 2 are certainly gone in the shape of Postuma. He's dropped back. But I'll tell you what, the fact that Tom Bonan has made this break without any teammates, they are driving the chase group, and they've made little impression at the moment because they're desperate to get up alongside. And the reason being, Discovery Channel have 3 men here, and they're getting a lot of help from the other riders too. There's Postuma, he's now back with the group here. Steven Streck is back with the group, so these 2 riders have gone, leaving now only 15 men up front.
This race really is all about elimination, but it's not elimination from the front, it's from the rear of these groups. Every time they come to a cobblestone section, 1 or 2 riders will get dropped. They will never get back to this race. Over to the left-hand side, a quick glimpse there of Baden Cook. He's riding a great race here this afternoon, but he's actually in the 2nd group on the road.
Section 15 we are on, of 27 sections of cobblestones, and these are the leaders a bit further up the road. But no, these are the back of the group, so these aren't the leaders at the moment. But in that leading group, still Peter van Petegem, Lars Mikkelsen, Fabian Cancellara, George Hincapie, Leif Hoster, the big names who are taking on Tom Bonan. And Bonan now, well, he's got to have a little bit more than just the average ability, because they're all going to attack him.
Roger Hammond was in that 2nd group. I just caught a sign of him. He's the man who was riding along with the bandage on his knee after a nasty accident. The pressure is on here. This looks like Stefan Weissermann now is trying to put a little bit of time between himself and Tom Boonen. Boonen, the only way they could beat him, they reckon, was to isolate him. They've done that, Phil, today with 80 kilometres to go to the finish.
And the irony was it's Boonen who did it, because he was the one that ripped the field apart and none of his teammates could go with him. There is Boonen.
Well, we've got 7 kilometres now before we come to the next section of cobblestones. And this may well give the riders in that 2nd group a chance to reintegrate, but that depends on whether or not these men here have decided to work together. In fact, the gap has gone out to 45 seconds. That was Juan Antonio Fletcher. And this looks like Portal trying to get back on.
Yes, come on, suffer that little bit more now. We're off the cobbles for a section or 2. Try and get onto the tail of the breakaway. He's been a star all day, Nicolas Portal. He's a Frenchman who used to ride on Crédit Agricole. He's now riding for the Spanish team. He's just rejoined. Now he wants another drink. So we've now got 15 riders in this leading breakaway. They have prized open a gap to 45 seconds from just a few seconds. And Tom Bonan looking over his shoulders there. He is, as some people often say, in a spot of bother. 50 seconds now, Paul. 78 kilometres to go.
Well, you know what? It's rather interesting to see that this group, despite the fact it's got a large number of big names in it, they've all decided to come to the front. I think today, Phil, they've got the advantage of having isolated Tom Bonan so far from the finish. Quick-Step are on the back foot.
They've realised they've got Bonan on his own. They have just got to get rid of the team, and this is their best chance, and they've got to work together to do it.
Henk Vogels. Now you see, this is rather interesting because Quick-Step now, Phil, have actually turned off. I think they've decided, forget it, we're not going to get any help from anyone in this group. We might as well bury them as well. If anybody wants to chase, come up to the front and do it now. The next time check we get is going to be closer to 1.5 minutes.
Well, this is an amazing turn of things in the Tour, in the Paris Roubaix rather, because here we have a team that's got the leader in the breakaway, but on his own, and all of the strong men can't help him now. It's down to the man with the ultra talent, Tom Bonan, to see what he can do here, because I don't think the main field's going to come back. What an amazing turn of events, and the irony is it was Bonen's own attack that left his own team in the slipstream. 50 seconds it says, but I think it's more than that now, because these boys have turned off. And there's some, well, most of the huge names of the Paris Roubaix are down there in that group of 15 riders. We're heading now to what will be Sector 14, the next stretch of cobblestones at a length of 2.4 kilometres. There was a desperate chase to try and get them before the last long stretch of cobblestones. They failed, and the gap instead opened up a little bit, and there it is. It's out to a minute now at 77.3 kilometres to the finish. Tom Bonen's going to have to start rethinking his plans here. This looks like it might be a move by Baden Cook as he tries to get the field to start to chase again. But I'm not sure that there's a lot of firepower here, because there's a lot of teammates who don't want this race to regroup now. Number 5 here is Servaes Knaven, who's the last Dutchman to have won this race, but he was in the service of Tom Bonen. You can see by his face that he's really struggling. Number 8 wants a bit of advice. That's Kevin Van Impe, another man on the quick-step team. They desperately want to see this race get itself going again, but I'm not so sure that they've not missed the boat as far as they are concerned. And they're going to be pretty annoyed about that now. We're out to a minute and 5 seconds. And they're trying to reorganize themselves. 76 kilometers to go. There's the boys who may have Paris Roubaix in their eyesights here. 1 of 15. They could be the boys to go to Paris, go to the finish all together.
Well, it really is a remarkable sight, and that's all because of the Forest of Arenberg. George Hincapie now must be feeling rather confident, because he's got 2 teammates in this group alongside him, and that could be the important thing at the end of today's stage, because that time gap, a minute and 5 seconds, is now starting to look very solid for these 15 leaders.
Rabobank have got their best man in there as well, Juan Antonio Fletcher. They're one of the most unusual Spanish riders, because he can race the single-day classics with distinction, and he's made the split. I'll just give you a quick rundown on the names. Van Petegem and Steegmans of De Vitaman, Hincapie, Gusev and Hoster Discovery, Cancellara, Michelson of CSC, Boonen Quickstep, Vesseman T-Mobile, Guédon and Eisel of Française des Jeux, Fletcher, Rabobank, Ballon of Lamprey. And sitting at the back here, also part of that, is Nicolas Portal.
Well, he's done a great job, Phil, because his legs must be whistling for him to stop at the moment. He's been in that early morning breakaway. He's the last survivor of that early morning breakaway. And now they're on to another very long section of cobblestones here at Brion. These cobblestones are around about 2.4 kilometers in length, and they are unbelievably horrendous. We're starting to get really now into the difficult part of Paris-Roubaix. They've been in the saddle, you know, since 11 o'clock this morning. That's around about 4.5 hours, and they've still got more than 2 hours to race.
Sector 14 of 27. 3 stars only, this one. It feel like a luxury after the 5-star session so far. But the breakaway will be very tense now. They want to make progress over that big bunch, and then they'll start to work out how are they going to deal with Tom Bonen. Well, so far it's all against one, and that's why they're doing all of the pacemaking here, and Bonen is taking no part in it. Nicolas Portal has brought himself a special piece of elastic today, and he's hanging in.
Well, just keep pushing that rider, number 107, on the back to try and stay in contact here, because he deserves to be in this group. Their number 41 is Fabien Cancellara. He's a Swiss rider, and they do reckon that he's got a very good chance of riding well here in Paris-Roubaix this afternoon. But the team that's done the best operation over the Forest of Arenberg is Team Discovery Channel. They've got 3 riders in this group.
Well, let's hope Cancellara doesn't like statistics, because the last Swiss rider to win this race was in 1923. Time for a change, perhaps.
Well, Leif Hoster on the front now, setting out the tempo. Followed there by Bernard Eisel, followed there by Frédéric Guédon, who must be thinking, this is my chance to be a 2-time winner of Paris-Roubaix as he moves up there. He won the last time as a little bit of a surprise, but it's actually rather good to see him riding here. And over the last week or so, he's been riding rather well for the Française des Jeux.
We're looking at the second group here now. We're on sector 15 of the cobblestones. They are getting in desperate mood, because the breakaway, which is 15 riders strong, is slipping away from them. Tom Bonen is there, isolated on his own. None of the quick-step riders are with him, and Discovery have Hoster, Gusev and George Hincapie. And not surprisingly, they're getting a lot of strange help here. The two riders on the front from Française de Chaux are Isel and a former winner, the last Frenchman indeed, in Frédéric Guédon. There's some big names up front, and Quick-Step are slipping away, leaving only Boonen to deal with them all.
Well, the last time check is now approaching 1.5 minutes to that group back behind on the road. You know, Quick-Step have really missed out here this afternoon. They've lost it out. They've lost the tactical superiority that they've always had in this race over previous occasions. They've always had 5 or 6 riders to the front of the race. On this occasion, they've found themselves with 6 riders in the second group on the road. Tom Boonen will have to ride very sensibly now. If I was him, I'd just keep a very close eye on George Hincapie, because he is the man probably as the #1 favourite to take the win from this. But there's so many big names and so much can happen in 2 hours of racing.
Well, the clouds are coming in, but surely there'll be no rain now. They've just got, as you say, just on 2 hours of cobblestones to go, sitting now at the back in the Hossies Gert Stegmans of De Vietem and Lotto. There was some good team blocking going on back in that main group by particularly people like Henk Vogels, because Stegmans and Van Petegem in this breakaway are the 2 on-form riders for De Vietem and Lotto. Hanging on the back, Nicolas Portal, the sole survivor of the breakaway. He's still up here as we head up towards sector 14 now. This is a mere 3 stars, and driving at the front here now is Frédéric Guédon. Isel is third in line. This is the leading group. And I did a quick count, and I only counted 14, so we may well have lost one already.
Well, somebody may well have gone off the back. That's what it is, but it's not. Our young man, Nicolas Portal, there he is, number 107. He's looking pretty good. That's Stegmans there, just a little bit further forward. Now, he is a rider who this year has ridden very well in the early part of the season in the Tour of the Algarve. Neutral cars there from some of the teams at the back. We're usually waiting at the end of the cobblestones because they know it's very important to have the team car there. If you have a flat tyre, very often you'll ride on the rim until you get to the exit of the cobblestones, because at least you know you'll get a wheel from your own team car there.
Well, from the tiles of the roof down to the cobbles of Paris Roubaix, they claim every seat in the house here, because this is a battle and you never know when your luck turns a corner, because it can happen at any moment. There is Tom Boonen now. He's on his own, and he's riding behind George Hincapie. The irony was it was Bonen's attack who actually went away and dropped his teammates. George Hincapie was right on the ball. He saw it was happening, straight with him. There's the lineup of the breakaway for you now, and I do believe that from this leading group, and I think it's 14, the winner of Paris Roubaix will come, and Hincapie has got the perfect position at the moment.
Well, Nicolas Portal still surviving. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher on the front. He is a great rider. He's a strange rider from the southern part of Europe. He's from Spain, and normally those riders don't like these kind of classics. But I think here this afternoon, he may be thinking of getting the victory for Spain. This is the second group on the road. It looks very much like the former Australian national champion, I should say, and that's Matty Wilson, I think, because you can see the bands on his shoulders there. He is riding on the front of this group for Baden Cook, but they are losing serious chunks of time. They're 1.5 minutes down as we return to the leading group of riders. It's the dark blue jerseys of Team Discovery Channel putting a little bit of pressure on. This is sector number 13 to go of cobblestones. 2.4 kilometers in length. This is at Tilloy, Assat et Rosier. When the riders come out of this section, they've got around about 10 kilometers of fairly smooth road to recuperate a certain amount, but then they start to go again into the cobblestones of Orchy. But this section is very difficult.
We're looking to the dust here at Paris Roubaix now. 13 sectors of cobblestones. This is sector 13. The breakaway of 14 riders is making progress. Discovery Channel have 3 riders in the group. Also here are 2 from the CSC team, including Lars Mikkelsen. The other one is Fabien Cancellara. Frédéric Guédon is here. This is a very select group. So many good riders, so many teams. Look at Leif Hoster. He's being walked by Tom Boonen. We could be looking at last weekend's Tour de Flanders here, because these were the 2 men who went to the finish together. Except when we pull back with the cameras, there are a lot more than 2 men. There are, in fact, 14.
all big names as well. Leif Hoster, I think, this afternoon is dedicating himself to George Hincapie. The team have told us, Phil, over the last week, whenever we've gone to see them, that Hincapie has got the best form of his career. He has the form to win Paris-Roubaix. He has the dedication to win Paris-Roubaix. And I think since he won a stage in the Tour de France up to the summit of the Plat d'Adet, it's changed his mentality a little bit. It's reminded him that he is a winner.
Well, he's got to be feeling now as though this is going to be his best opportunity to win this race. If he is ever to win Paris-Roubaix, surely it has got to be today. And Leif Hoster might well be doing what you say, Paul, and keeping the pace high. They don't want that group to come back. They don't want the teammates of Boonen to get up here. And where this man is finding the strength from to hang on to the back, hats off to Nicolas Portal, who's been away since about the 60th kilometre, and we're just about 70 from the finish.
Well, he's taking a few risks there to stay in contact, but I'll tell you, Nicolas, from experience here, if you can get off this section of cobblestones, you've got about 10 kilometres, so you can have a good ride at the back of the group and try and recuperate a fraction. There's a different name on the front now going round the corner there. It looks like Lars Mikkelsen. He will be trying to set this race up for Fabian Cancellara, his teammate. And I have to say, Team CSC, Phil, could be doing with a little bit of luck in the one-day classics, because they haven't had an awful lot of success this year, although their man Ivan Basso seems to be on course to be the #1 favourite for the Tour de France, with a win in the Criterium International and just recently in the time trial of the Circuit of the South.
Well, CSC have also had lots of sickness in the team and injury, just like Discovery Channel, but Discovery Channel aren't letting it affect their performances. They have been coming through big time. Remember, they lost Hammond and also Michael Barry in crashes in the Tour de Flanders. Hammond has made sure he was here. He insisted all week he would ride this event, and the team was sort of saying, oh, yeah. But in fact, he did ride the event. He's in the second group at the moment.
He'll be riding defensively for George Hincapie. Hincapie's in this group. He's just on the wheel there, you can see, of Tom Boonen. He's going to keep a very close eye on Boonen. Mikkelsen is the man on the front for CSC, followed there by Juan Antonio Fletcher, followed by the world champion Tom Boonen, the winner last week of the Tour of Flanders, trying to win back-to-back Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix for the second time. But here, tactically, he's in a very precarious situation, because in this group, he's completely and utterly on his own.
He's got to think very carefully his tactics today, and if he does win from a group like this, then he is a man above men, because it's going to be very difficult for Tom Boonen to control the attacks from so many different directions. Lars Mikkelsen, for example, yes, he's 37 years of age now, but he loves Paris-Roubaix. He's won Gent-Wevelgem in the past, but more importantly, he's twice finished 5th in this event, and the last time was last year.
This race is all about experience, all about tradition, all about being tough, and about not having any luck at all. There you can see they're onto the smoothest section of road now, Phil. They've got about 10 kilometres to rest and recuperate, if you can, in a bike race before the next section comes up.
As Tom Boonen gets to the front, he's on the radio saying, where's all my mates? Well, the answer is nearly 2 minutes behind. Chance for a rest on the smoother roads of Paris-Roubaix.
Peter van Petegem looking across as if he's looking at the time gap there, and it's 1 minute and 50 seconds back to the front end of the main field. This is a serious move, a long way from the finish of Paris-Roubaix, just like it was a week ago in the Ronde van Vlaanderen in Belgium, not too far away from here. That's Guédon on the front. He must be thinking this is a great chance. It was a surprise win for him in Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago. Now he's riding like a very experienced professional. Leif Hoster at the front. He's a great bike rider to have as a teammate. In fact, he was the man who just recently won the 3 days of Le Panne for his team, and that was after a very good win in the individual time trial. He today, I think, is trying to pay George Hincapie back for his second place in the Tour of Flanders last year. It's good to see that Team Discovery Channel this time are in superiority in numbers. Number 11, that's Hincapie. 61, Van Petegem. Number 1, Tom Boonen. 121 just in front of him, Stefan Weserman. He told me this morning he didn't think he had the form to ride well in Paris-Roubaix. He'd been on antibiotics after a slight illness. But I tell you what, when you love this race, you can find a little bit of extra motivation. There's Boonen, keeping himself topped up with energy.
Wow.
Doesn't look like a man under pressure. He looks like a man who's relaxed and enjoying his bike race here this afternoon, because he is still, even though he's isolated from the rest of his team, man, he's still the man to beat.
Well, 2003 winner there just went through, having his lunch too on the 2005 winner. That was Van Petegem passing Tom Boonen. The breakaway, though, is full of so many stars representing so many teams. It's getting a little bit unthinkable that anybody can actually close this gap, but they are holding it, Paul, at 1:50.
Well, they won't give up behind. You see, initially it was Team Quickstep who tried to nail it back, but afterwards there are still a number of teams that aren't represented in this leading group, so what they have to do is chase from behind. And one team that seemed to be taking a fair amount of responsibility, in fact, was the Unibet team, who were trying to pull it all back together for Baden Cook.
67 kilometres remains of the 2006 Paris Roubaix. It's been a great race so far. All it's done, though, is project all of the race favourites into one group, and they're going to have to think, how are they going to outwit the other now that there's only 14 of them together here. We're making our way slowly but surely, well, not so slowly actually, towards Orchy, which is a feared section of cobblestone, sector number 12.
Tom Bonen looking calm and collected now. He knows he's in a little bit of difficulty, but he needs to ride sensibly. There is the former German rider Stefan Wesemann, who's now switched his nationality across to become a Swiss rider. This is Stegmans. He will be an ally for Peter van Petegem down towards the end. It's amazing that there's so many teams have got multiple riders in this group, and the team that we've regarded as being the #1 team in the world, Team Quickstep, have been really caught out here this afternoon.
I can't really understand how they got caught out quite so badly as they did. I would have expected Filippo Pozzato at least to have moved across. He must have known that Bonen would have attacked there, but clearly he didn't read it right, and he's back in the group. But Italians often don't like riding on this road. The Italians have won this race on 11 occasions out of a possible 104.
Well, the country that's dominated, we have to say, as in the Tour of Flanders, although this is a French race, this has been dominated by Belgian riders over the years. It was been won 51 times by the Belgians. They really do love this race. They get super motivated. After all, this part of France is known as the Flandre Artois. It's the French part of Flanders.
Yes, and they're racing towards Belgium, so a lot of the spectators will be speaking Flemish here. This is Fletcher taking a drink now, and no shortage of firepower to come through. Gusev moves through, looks over. Young man of just over 21 years of age, big future ahead of him.
He's a national time trial champion in his own country. He's a very talented bike rider, being brought on board this team by Johan Brunel to develop for the future. That's Lars Mikkelsen. Nicolas Portal, I tell you what a great ride by this young man. He's been in the breakaway since this morning. He's recuperated, and now he wants to go to the front to show these guys that I'm still here. I'm not going to sit on. I want to stay with you.
Never seen him ride so well. He's not a newcomer to the sport, but he's not a big winner. He's only won one race, but he's riding superbly today. Stefan Wesemann, nearest camera here, used to be a German. Now he's a Swiss man. And he's in the breakaway, and that was the T-Mobile's performance early on today, was to get him up there. That worked at least.
Peter van Petegem, experience. He's a really good cobble rider. This is good to see. George Hincapie looking good here. He must be thinking that all of his numbers have come up in the lottery, because he's got a very good chance of winning from this group, but he's got to beat some canny, clever bike riders like Van Petegem, like Stefan Wesemann, like Cancellara, like Ballan. Big names in this group.
It's a great group, and they're going to have to start thinking, what are they going to do next now? Because Alessandro Ballan has been getting a lot of good places here. But the feed now, the second feeder there, Bouvry-la-Forêt. 12.
Tom Bonen looking calm and collected now. He knows he's in a little bit of difficulty, but he needs to ride sensibly. There is the former German rider Stefan Wesemann, who's now switched his nationality across to become a Swiss rider. This is Stegmans. He will be an ally for Peter van Petegem down towards the end. It's amazing that there's so many teams have got multiple riders in this group, and the team that we've regarded as being the #1 team in the world, Team Quickstep, have been really caught out here this afternoon.
I can't really understand how they got caught out quite so badly as they did. I would have expected Filippo Pozzato at least to have moved across. He must have known that Bonen would have attacked there, but clearly he didn't read it right, and he's back in the group. But Italians often don't like riding on this road. The Italians have won this race on 11 occasions out of a possible 104.
Well, Well, the country that's dominated, we have to say, as in the Tour of Flanders, although this is a French race, this has been dominated by Belgian riders over the years. It was been won 51 times by the Belgians. They really do love this race. They get super motivated. After all, this part of France is known as the Flandre Artois. It's the French part of Flanders.
Yes, and they're racing towards Belgium, so a lot of the spectators will be speaking Flemish here. This is Fletcher taking a drink now, and no shortage of firepower to come through. Gusev moves through, looks over. Young man of just over 21 years of age, big future ahead of him.
He's a national time trial champion in his own country. He's a very talented bike rider, being brought on board this team by Johan Brunel to develop for the future. That's Lars Mikkelsen. Nicolas Portal, I tell you what a great ride by this young man. He's been in the breakaway since this morning. He's recuperated, and now he wants to go to the front to show these guys that I'm still here. I'm not going to sit on. I want to stay with you.
Never seen him ride so well. He's not a newcomer to the sport, but he's not a big winner. He's only won one race, but he's riding superbly today. Stefan Wessermann, nearest camera here, used to be a German. Now he's a Swiss man. And he's in the breakaway, and that was the T-Mobile's performance early on today, was to get him up there. That worked at least.
Peter van Petegem, experience. He's a really good cobble rider. This is good to see. George Hincapie looking good here. He must be thinking that all of his numbers have come up in the lottery, because he's got a very good chance of winning from this group, but he's got to beat some canny, clever bike riders like Van Petegem, like Stefan Wessermann, like Cancellara, like Ballan. Big names in this group.
It's a great group, and they're going to have to start thinking, what are they going to do next now? Because Alessandro Ballan has been getting a lot of good places here. But the feed now, the second feeder there, Bouvry-la-Forêt.
Puts the riders around about 4 kilometers away from the start of the cobblestones at Orchy. In fact, the cobblestones of Orchy is known as the Chemin des Prières. And it's going to be the road of the prayers, I think, for George Hincapie this afternoon, because this is an ideal situation for him. Tom Boonen is on his own, but you know, even still, Tom Boonen's got a very good chance of winning this bike race, because he is the man on form this year.
And he's the man of the Grand Class, but this will be a particularly big race for him if he wins it now from no protection from his team. A little bit of a problem here, it looks like. This is Frédéric Guédon, last French winner of this race. And that was a while ago now, back in 1997.
Quite interesting. If you just have a look at his brakes here, he's actually got cyclocross brakes on, cantilever brakes. Makes the bike a little bit more maneuverable, especially if you have a muddy Paris Roubaix. And a lot of riders have completely different bikes for Paris Roubaix, and that's why if you get a glimpse there at the brakes on Frédéric Guédon's machine, he's done that and taken the risk here this afternoon.
A few bottles coming in after that little problem. And the professional adjustment of the rear brakes, I suspect, as he comes closer to the group he was with.
This is a serious problem here. In fact, you can see that they're not taking advantage of pulling him up through the convoy here, because the team manager is riding alongside his position in the line of riders. They're trying to fix that on the move. This is a very important moment for Frédéric Guédon, getting himself stripped down for the latter part of this race, as we take a look now at the front end of the group. Still, Team Discovery Channel have got the tactical advantage of having 3 riders, and look how everybody now on the smooth sections of Paris-Roubaix, it's the important moment to try and remember to eat, because otherwise you hit the wall towards the end and go into glucose exhaustion.
And George has heard those wise words from Paul Sherwin there. He's taking his lunch in, so too is Gusev. Then comes the world champion Tom Boonen. Just behind him is Bernard Eisel. Stegmans, this is Cancellara off to the left of our picture, and comes Geert Stegmans. These boys doing very much the hard work, through and off as they call it, to keep the pace nice and high. Here comes Guédon now, back into the fold. Meanwhile, Nicolas Portal doing the ride of his life, sat at the back at the moment, but deserves to be in that position, I think. He's riding superbly today, needs a rest.
Well, we're right now in the streets of Orchy, and if you take a right-hand turn here and travel to the north for about 6 kilometers, you'll be right inside of the Belgian border. This is at the back, Leif Hoster. Very strong bike rider, very convincing winner of the 3 days of Le Panne, but in the group as well, just in front of him, Frédéric Guédon. He'll be thinking about becoming a 2-time winner. Stefan Wessermann at the front, looking over his shoulder, looking for some support for the rest of the guys in this group. Bernard Eisel. He's had a good season so far, the German on the front here in the white jersey. He's won 3 races, and one of those was in the Tour of Qatar, where he happened to beat Tom Boonen in the sprint.
This big moment in this race certainly came in 2002 when he finished second in the event. He desperately wanted the win. Had he won, he would have been the first German since 1896. And now if he wins today, he'll be the first Swiss rider since 1923. I'm sure he's not thinking of things like that. But back in 2002, he was beaten by the then very much on form Johan Museeuw.
So Discovery Channel moving to the front. We're in the outskirts of Orchy. Very strange, if you ride in this part of the world as well, you will notice that there's an interesting smell comes through the air, and it's because in the area they actually make chicory, and for miles and miles around you can actually smell chicory in the air. A couple more kilometers to go before they get to the cobblestone section. Stegmans will be thinking about his man. There's 2 very difficult sections of cobblestones coming up now, and they're very close together. It's the Chemin des Prières and the Chemin des Abattoirs. It makes a total distance of 1.7 kilometers of cobblestones. But once the riders come off there, they'll look at about 60 kilometers to go to the finish. Leif Hoster, Stefan Wesemann, Fabienne Cancellara looking nice and collected here. It's going to be a big aggression, I would say, now once they get to the next section of cobblestones, because what they'll try and do as they get closer to the finish is reduce the numbers in this leading group. So there we go, down to 14 men. I've had a recent time check, but I would expect it's still up around about the 2-minute mark. Race referee moving around there in the red car, and it is just inside of 2 minutes, 1 minute and 58 seconds. Lars Mikkelsen, former winner of Gent-Wevelgem. Juan Antonio Fletcher in the orange jersey there, the Spanish rider, had said he wanted to ride well in this race. As we look at the composition of the group, Tom Boonen, for once this year, completely and utterly isolated from the rest of his team. Peter van Petegem, he loves this bike race. You know, this man, Phil, over the last couple of years, has made his career out of a week of racing.
That's right. He comes from Brakel in Belgium at the end of this sort of spring classic period. He tends to slip back a little bit into the bunches, and we don't see anything of him. He doesn't ride the big races like the Tour de France too often. But right now, we're looking at the main pack here of chasers. They're still reorganised. It's still a very big bunch. That is not a good sign when it's such a big bunch, frankly, because the team Milram, who've placed nobody in that front group, they're now heading up the chase because nobody else is helping them. And it's almost 2 minutes. So I don't think these boys are going to contact now the 14 leaders of Paris Roubaix.
Well, there are too many riders in that leading group of 14, too dedicated to the success of that breakaway for the moment. I think what will happen in the next couple of cobblestone sections is that group will actually split into 2, and we get a much better working group. So these guys are actually riding on the front now for, of course, Eric Zabel. Zabel surprisingly missed out over the Forest of Arenberg, and that's why this chase has been on ever since then.
Well, there's the little banner. So we're approaching Orchy now, and here comes the leading group. This is the next big challenge.
Getting themselves organised. This is the right-hand bend.
Here we are now. This will be sector number 12 here, the dreaded Chemin des Prières, with a passage of prayers here, because this is Orchy. The breakaway still very much on here. 14 riders and almost 2 minutes ahead of anybody else. 60 kilometers remain now as Juan Antonio Fletcher, a Spanish rider, can you believe? No Spanish riders ever won this race, drives at the front.
Well, Juan Antonio Fletcher here this afternoon is a man motivated, a man on a mission as he lifts up the pace here on the Chemin des Prières just outside of Orchy. But if he looks over his shoulder there, he won't see not only Lars Mikkelsen, but he'll see the world champion, Phil, Tom Boonen, who is riding very sensibly. He's on his own, but every time he comes to the cobbles, he moves to the front 3 or 4 places.
It makes sense. He knows now he's got to control 13 other riders here, and he's got to do it himself, because there's no one else to help him. His team didn't make the gap, and Bonen's attack itself has split them away. Nicolas Portal, the only survivor of the original breakaway, keeps yo-yoing, but the gap this time, Nicolas, is getting a bit far. Try and close it down.
Starting to stretch out a fraction. That's because of the big acceleration, and sadly for Nicolas Portal, once they get to the end of this little cobblestone section here, they turn left. There's about 50 meters of nice smooth road, and you're onto another section of cobblestones known as the Chemin des Abattoirs.
No shortage of workhorses here now. Lars Mikkelsen drives for Denmark, 5th in this race last year. He's finished 5th on 2 occasions, 10th on another. He loves this race as well. And another former winner in this breakaway is Frederick Guédon of Française de Jeu. Another former winner is Peter van Petegem. Boy, this is a select break.
This is a race that's all about tradition. This is a race that riders really get motivated for. There's two kind of riders in the sport of professional cycling. As we look down at Miss Piggy there, there's guys who love this race and there's guys who hate it. Every man in this leading group of 14 riders loves this race. It's a crazy race, it's a mad race, but it's something very special that motivates certain riders.
And this little stretch of cobblestones here at Orchies is in the annals of one of the romantic sectors of the race, as we've seen it covered in mud, in bad weather, in sunshine, in dust, and now we've got the Danish rider Lars Mikkelsen here stamping out his rhythm on the front. He'll be happy enough to be there. He'll know what his legs are feeling like. He wants to keep out of trouble. The world champion sits on his back wheel. Bonen will have to have eyes in the back of his head for the last 20 kilometres of today.
Well, don't worry, he will have that, because Tom Bonen is a man on fire. He's been almost unbeaten this season. He's won himself an awful lot of races. Look at that, he's not worried. He looks over his shoulder, wants to see what kind of damage has happened.
Stefan Vesserman takes a drink. He's come close with a second place in the past. George Hincapie's done that, and I'm just wondering now, when will they make a move?
Stefan Vesserman looks over his shoulder. They're trying to ascertain who has been dropped off in this situation. They're all dropping to the back of the line. They can see that everybody's still dedicated to work. The gap to the group behind has reduced a fraction to 1 minute and 45 seconds. It's coming down slowly, but you know, the heat is really on at the front end of this race. Team Discovery Channel still looking pretty nice there, Phil, with 3 men in the group.
And the group is now down to 13 riders here at Orchy on this sector of cobble. So I think Portal must have dropped off the back. There he is. That's a sad sight, actually. He deserves better. He's ridden wonderfully today. He's
back.
He's back again. Well, all those things I said just cancel, Nicolas. You're going fantastic. Well done.
Well, it's good to see. You know, this man is going through probably one of the most emotional moments of his career, because for a Frenchman to be at the front of Paris Roubaix like this, Sunday afternoon, prime time television viewing for him, he will pull himself inside out to stay with this group. He will get dropped on almost every section of cobblestones now, but if he keeps fighting his way back, he's going to fight his way into the hearts of France.
Stefan Vesserman, almost a smile on his face there as they get onto smoother road again. The peloton has come back by 5 or 6 seconds there, 1:41 now, so it's not over yet, but 57 kilometres only to go. Well, Portal sits at the back there now, thinking, I can't believe it, but I'm still here.
Well, he's got 7 kilometres to recuperate on a fairly smooth piece of road, because once they've gone across this motorway bridge, they'll head up now towards the very difficult section of cobblestones at Bercé. Another long section, 2.6 kilometres in length, as we look here at Vladimir Gusev over the motorway. And this is probably the only place in the world where you can turn a motorway into a parking lot on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes, the car's stopping to see the passage of Paris Roubaix, and what they're seeing is a bunch of 14 real hot riders at the front here. All of the big stars have made it at 1:45 ahead of a huge pack of riders, and they won't want to see that pack again today. That's Lars Mikkelsen now at the front. Eisel just behind him. Now comes Fletcher of Spain.
A lot of riders in this group, Phil, are absolutely dedicating themselves to their teammates, sacrificing themselves for the cause, and that's what Lars Mikkelsen's doing. On the other hand, I have to say that I'm very impressed with the performance of Juan Antonio Fletcher, who is not shirking any work at the front. He also is isolated in this group. No teammates for him, but it looks as if the cobblestones of Orchy have created a little bit of a gap at the front end of the main field.
Well, that's the only sure way to get across now, is to get a working light group off the front. The big pack, I can't believe, will make it. But there looks to me to be a few De Vitamin riders in this group. They're not going to push home too much an advantage here.
I think they were just covering the move there to make sure that if anything did seem nasty, they would go across. But they're quite happy with the situation. They've got 2 riders in this leading group. Kurt Stegemans, who's a very strong bike rider. You know, he really nearly did pull off the winning Wevelgem 4 days ago.
He did. And he's going to take great faith in the fact that Van Petegem, his team captain, is here too. because Van Petegem knows the way home. He's won here before. Portal sitting on the back, something about good chips though on the banner. I wasn't too sure what it said.
It was Boone and good chips. Yeah, Tom Boone, he really has endeared himself to the crowd in Belgium. He's definitely not the normal Flemish type of person. He's very open, very aggressive, and they're saying and comparing him to some of the great champions of before. Eddie Merckx really appreciates the way this guy rides. And Belgium, after a couple of years in the doldrums, really does need a star like this man.
Well, he goes out and he attacks. Unfortunately, I think today he was too strong for his own team. He got too excited there, and he stripped them of their chance to help him later. So now it's down to him. And as I said earlier, if he does win this race, it'll be a very special win now, because the odds, frankly, are against him. He's going to have to go with every move, and these boys won't take him to the stadium without testing him.
They won't do that at all. They will wait until the last possible moment and then try and dislodge him. There will be a lot of attacks coming down towards the end, and probably the best way for Tom Boonen to win this race is to actually go out on the attack himself.
Perhaps the only thing in his favour is there are so many top names in this breakaway that they won't want to put the first move in. They'll want others to do it, and that might work in the favour of Boonen.
It's the second group on the road, and this is not really a well-organised chase. Obviously, Team Milram are trying to whip up the pace a little bit at the front there, and that's for their man Eric Zabel, but they're still losing a fair chunk of time, Phil, because it's still actually stretching back out to the 2-minute mark.
Well, Nicolas Portal making a big name for himself today. One win only in his career. And this is the best we've ever seen him ride, as he sits at the back. Everybody else in that early morning breakaway is back in the field, or even worse right now, might be back in the cars, because very often you get a lot of riders give up at the second feed. We've been through that. 1 minute 53 seconds. Well, the gap is growing again now, so this is looking good for the breakaway. George Hincapie setting the pace now, enjoying life at the front. Now it's Leif Hoster here, comes through. Things look under control just now for these riders. Nobody giving anything away when you look at their face.
Nobody's giving anything away. They're just trying to figure out, what are we going to do with Tom Boonen? How can we get rid of Tom Boonen? Well, they need to wait till a couple of the sections of cobblestones down towards the end. But there is a section of cobblestones that I'm sure George Hincapie is going to remember, and that's the cobblestones right down towards the end of the race at Confins-en-Pévèle, and that's where a couple of years ago he was with his teammate Tom Boonen at the time, and Hincapie ended up in the gutter, and he ended up having to chase and try and get himself back into the event, while Tom Boonen, at 22 years of age, climbed onto the podium in third place.
And that was when we knew he was good, but sadly he didn't want to stay with US Postal, and he moved across to Quick Step, and that's where he rests at present. As we now get on to sector number 11 of the cobblestones now.
It's the cobblestone section at Auchy-les-Orchies at Bercé. It's a long section of cobblestones too. It's 2.7 kilometers in length. They're pretty nasty cobblestones here as well, and the way to ride them is just the way Gert Stegemans is doing it. Try and ride in the middle. Try and relax the front part of your body if you can, allowing the bike to find at least a slightly smoother road over these cobblestone sections.
Long straight, only 3 stars this one, as poor old Nicolas sits at the back there. Hincapie drops back. There's a nice image of Big George, who's fell in love with this event years ago. He's had 2 fourths, 2 sixth places last year, the ultimate second. Now he wants one better.
Hincapie looking relaxed there. He's obviously quite confident to go to the back on a section of cobblestones like this, Phil, and be prepared to take the risk of somebody having an incident in front. Just look at the damage that these cobblestones do to roads like this. That's Tom Boonen, number 1. Probably, I have to say, he's probably been the best world champion we've had in recent years.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And with his dozen wins this year, that is an incredible tally. Takes us back to the days of great Irish rider Sean Kelly, who once came to this race with 15 wins already in the year before he took part and won this event.
Kelly was a beast of a man. He used to ride the Tour of Flanders, catch the plane on a Sunday night to go down to the Tour of the Pays Basque, which was from Monday to Friday, catch the Friday night plane back, and then come out and win Paris Roubaix on the Sunday. What a beast.
Absolutely. His biggest regret, I think, of his career was he never did win Flanders. He got second a few times, but he never actually got the win. Won the few races which eluded him.
And of course the World Championships, which he got very close to in 1987, but he had to take a back seat there to his own teammate Stephen Roach, who was actually riding the race completely wrong, trying to set it up for Sean Kelly, and he came up with the win.
Had to win it for himself, yeah. He did get a medal, but not the what he wanted. This was the rainbow jersey worn today by Tom Bonen, this magical Belgian rider. 54 kilometres to go. Well, it's not very far, is it? 54 kilometres to these guys, but it's the roads they're a bit worried about. And this 2.6 kilometre sector number 11 here at Auchy, 3 stars. Over for the leaders at least as they come off the cobblestones.
Difficult race this in the north of France, because once you get up to this section, because there are not so many cobbled sections around, the race actually zigzags left and right, north and south, east and west. One moment you could be riding into a headwind, the next moment you've got a tailwind, and the moment after that you've got yourself a crosswind. Now this is a bit of an acceleration here coming from Stefan Weissermann. He wants to hurt a few legs here, and he's hurting a few legs at the back, and again it's poor old Nicolas Portal.
Yo-yoing on and off, but he hangs on, he grits his teeth, he wants to go as far as he can with this leading group. I mean, to say that you finished 14th in Paris Roubaix, which is what he would say right now if he was at the back, that's a great performance, especially the way he would have obtained it. And the reason he's yo-yoing, it is Juan Antonio Fletcher who's decided to go for gold here at 52 to go. First big question for Tom Bonen to answer.
Well, he's going to have to react to this one, because this man finished 3rd in Paris-Roubaix last year, and this is a very good move. It's a long way from the finish, but maybe that's the moment when you have to take the risk. Bonen has reacted, though. He's seen the danger and said, right, guys, no messing about for me.
What a powerhouse he is, the way he's ripped off from the front of that breakaway. Tom Bonen looks over his shoulder and just tries to reach Juan Antonio Fletcher. Now this is the best answer, is to go away with one guy and then the others have got to rethink. But there's the reaction, and it looks as though it's going to come back.
Well, it looks as if it's going to come back, but that was a very good move. But did you see how easy Tom Bonen was there when he accelerated, came straight away across that gap? He hasn't quite got to the wheel yet, and Juan Antonio Fletcher is not going to give up.
Portal, despite the accelerations, still seems to be hanging on at the back of that group. I don't know how he's doing it. Here's Juan Antonio Fletcher.
But one man who was badly placed a few moments ago was George Hincapie, who was sitting just in front of Portal. That wasn't the place to be when this acceleration was happening.
You can't afford to drop away from the leaderboard when you're on the cobblestones. You never know when they might get up and bite you. Now we're looking at Fletcher, now we're looking at Bonen, just tagging on the back there. I think it's Lars Mikkelsen who's come across.
Big Cancellara, but they've got themselves a gap there. Now this is a scary moment for George Hincapie. You can see the blue jerseys, that's Gusev on the front. He's decided to lift up the pace and try and nail them all back together for Hincapie.
Well, this is fine pacemaking here as they try to stamp the message on the cobblestones. Portal still yo-yos at the back, but Stefan Weissermann's also in trouble. I thought it was the mauve jersey of T-Mobile unhooked at the back here, and the rest are going across, so that could be the first shakeout taking place now.
Frédéric Guédon also in difficulty there from the Française des Jeux. This is a bit strange, Phil, because a few moments ago Stefan Weissermann is the man who actually lifted the pace at the front of that group to put the pressure on everybody. But let's not forget, Stefan Weissermann came into this race a little bit under weather, because he in fact has been on antibiotics for about 10 days after Milan-San Remo, and that can really make a mess of the body.
Gert Stegman's here now setting the pace, getting it back into a little bit of a reorganised breakaway. We'll see what happens when they come off the cobbles and see if they can push home the advantage. Bonen checking out who's survived the chase. Cancellara off to the right of our picture. Bonen finding all these boys still willing to work with him. And despite the way he answered that attack, this is Van Petegem here, also caught at the back end.
Well, you've got to react, you've got to get yourself straight back. This is Stegman's number 64 about to make the junction as well.
Oh, I thought it was Van Petegem. Must be Van Petegem who's made the split then up at the front there. That was an incredible chase there by Bonen, and he's called, well, at least the boys know now just how strong he's feeling today.
Well, that was the only way really for him to react in a group like this, so wait and see how dangerous it was. Still 3 riders from Discovery Channel. Hincapie, I thought, a little bit too far back, although he may well be feeling very confident in a situation like this. Covering the move. There you can see Stefan Weissermann just recuperating. There was Lars Mikkelsen coming back into the group.
Well, they'll all get back together again with the exception of Portal. There's only 13 guys once more at the front here now. Fletcher, the man that caused the problem, at the end of the day, he's found, he's highlighted 1 or 2 lacking, but other than that, they've got themselves back into the game. And the only one missing at the moment, 107, Nicolas Portal.
Well, coming off that section of cobblestones, they're going to line themselves up in about 4 kilometres time for the next section of cobblestones at Mont-Saint-Pével. That's a long section of cobblestones as well. It's 3 kilometers in length.
50 kilometers left to race now, as the riders again are put under pressure once more. Now there's going to be a series of these now.
Frédéric Guédon decided to go. Chasing him down is Juan Antonio Fletcher, and somebody's trying to get across the gap there as well. It's one of the riders from Team Discovery Channel.
Frédéric Guédon, the last French rider to win this race. The French will be out of control if he wins today. They're desperate for a French winner of Paris Roubaix, and the last Frenchman was in 1997, and I have to say at the time that was a big surprise.
But once you've won a race like this, you get motivated every time it comes around. Every year you think about it. And Marc Madiot, the team manager of Française des Jeux, he won this race twice. And I'm sure his excitement for Paris-Roubaix goes right the way through to the foundations of his team.
Well, 13 men have regrouped. Nicolas Portal is the one that's left behind. The Norwegian flag is flying there, but sadly Thor Hushovd, a couple of punctures that we know of and maybe other problems, has left him out of the hunt today.
So Gusev, as they turn onto the road now, they're heading up towards the town of Mont-Saint-Pével, and that's where they'll find another very long section of cobblestones. 2:09 is the gap back down to the main field, and you can see that the group reforming on these smooth sections now. They take a chance now to get themselves organized, just have a look at the faces of the other riders and just see exactly if they can read any signs of weakness. We haven't seen any signs of weakness yet on the face of Tom Bonen.
Well, we're looking here at the front end of the group. Tom Bonen, who's answered one attack from Juan Antonio Fletcher. The only damage done was the loss of Nicolas Portal. 13 boys here now, and if they slow down like this, Nicolas might well pedal his way back up. We are now entering the next sector of Pavé here. This is Mons-en-Pével, sector number 10. 13 riders are together. Portal has gone. Cancellara setting the pace. Now it's Cancellara who is attacking. We have seen Fletcher go, Paul. He got brought back. Now it's the turn of Fabien Cancellara.
Well, Fabien Cancellara has seen the chance here to try and launch a little bit of an acceleration, and it's again put Nicolas Portal, who'd almost got onto the back of group, into difficulty, but he's not going to do it this time. This is a 3-kilometer section of cobblestones that we're looking at now, and Fabien Cancellara will be happy to see that the main field is at 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
The series of attacks we have had, it was started by Fletcher on the previous sector of cobbles. Bonen was superb. He bridged the gap. The rest followed. Portal hesitated, but now we're looking here at a 5-star section of cobblestones, the worst you can get today on the road to Roubaix. Fabien Cancellara, it's not often you see a Swiss rider ride like this in Paris-Roubaix, but Cancellara aiming at the last victor, 1923, Henri Suter, who won in Roubaix. Now there's an attack. It's Fletcher again. This man is superb, and no Spanish riders ever won this race.
Juan Antonio Fletcher, we've seen him win stages in the Tour de France. He was third in this race last year, and now he is really putting the hammer down. But the old man of the breakaway, Peter van Petegem, saw that. He was right up there. He's a very clever rider, Van Petegem. I'm a little bit interested to see the tactics, though, at the moment of Discovery Channel. They are sitting at the back and allowing this race to develop, but they still have 3 riders in the group. They are keeping together, keeping their tactical superiority, but they really need to have a man ride slightly closer to the front.
Yes, because they could get caught out. Look how Bonen is riding. At the moment, he's up for it. He is riding superbly well today, isolated from his team. He has been hit twice now by Fletcher and once by Cancellara. And still he comes back. Nicolas Portal, the man who was in the first break of the day, clawing his way back to the breakaway. The only escaper of the day, still up here with the top names of the sport.
Well, it's a great, courageous ride by this young man, but the gap now, Phil, is starting to appear between him and the rest of this breakaway group, because the hammer and the race is starting to unfold. This section, 1.8 miles, 3 kilometers, with Peter van Petegem now dictating the pace at the front. Hincapie, for the moment, quite prepared to sit at the back, trying to save as much energy as possible. Team Discovery Channel have got the advantage of having 3 men in the group, but just look at the ease of the man in the white jersey with the rainbow bands there, Tom Bonen. He looks so calm and collected. He's responded to every acceleration so far. If these guys want to win the race here this afternoon, they've got to get rid of that man.
What's happened? Well, I don't know what happened there, but he seemed to start to ride no-handed. And then George, yes, it's Hincapie. George went down. I don't know what happened there. He came off the corner. He appeared almost to be riding without his hands on the handlebars, and that was a heavy fall, and it doesn't look at all good. Well, this is an absolute tragedy for Discovery Channel. They've had nothing but injuries this year. They seem to have found their way out with good results as well. But George Hincapie is totally stunned.
I don't know what's happened to him there, Phil. He just seemed to touch the wheel of the rider in front of him. He went down very hard indeed, but it's just he's halfway down the pack. He seems to have his handlebars snapped. His handlebars snapped. They're going to have to try and find a bike for him. And George is stuck at the side of the road, and the car, look at his handlebars. They just snapped off there. He's gone straight over the top. Very hard indeed. That is bad news for George Hincapie. There's the team car up alongside him. Johan Brunel is there. The bike has snapped. That is very, very sad.
It looks to be his extension has snapped off. The bars seemed okay. Well, there's no answer to that. He went down, and it was a terrible shot because he wouldn't have expected to fall. His head hit the road, and George, distress is the word, because he has just seen his best ever chance go out of the window. This was his greatest moment in Paris-Roubaix, I'm sure of that. And now his arch rival, Tom Bonen, is driving the race away from him.
Well, Tom Bonen is at the front of the group now. He's causing serious damage at the back end of this group. Riders are now starting to disappear. Cancellara has seen the opportunity here. He too now has decided this is a long section of cobblestones. The main field is at 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Balan has come across. Peter Van Petegem is there. Juan Antonio Fletcher, Team Discovery Channel, have still got 2 riders, but they haven't got the man they wanted. George Hincapie has gone out after a very tragic mechanical incident.
Well, they've got to get on with the race. They've got to rethink it, and if they're going to win it now, it's with Leif Hoster, because Bonen has seen, to no fault of anybody except it seems the bicycle, he's lost his biggest rival there in Hincapie, and Cancellara drives on now. Look at the way this breakaway is splitting. Hincapie out of it, sitting on the roadside about a kilometre behind them now. This is a move now for the big ones, and this is Cancellara. Tom Bonen drives.
Watch Cancellara come round this corner here. He starts to accelerate, and all of a sudden his foot comes out. There's a little slip. He recovers beautifully to get back into the race, but Tom Bonen has seen this as a very good opportunity to split the race apart, and they've not got rid of Peter Van Petegem because he's there in 3rd place.
And nor the sprinter Alessandro Balan of Lampre, and those 4 trying to get clear of the other 4 now, because dropped his Isel has also gone off the back. Well, what an amazing thing. Inside 50 kilometres from the finish, everything going the way for George Hincapie today, and then a snapping of the extension on his bicycle, no warning at all. Down he goes, head on the floor, and Hincapie appears to be out of Paris-Roubaix. Well, this is such a typical race. You never know what fortune awaits you around the corner.
Well, now it's really putting Team Discovery Channel onto a little bit of the defensive. They've got 2 riders in the group behind. Leif Hoster, I think, had done a lot of work to set this race up for George Hincapie, and now they've got to try and pull themselves back to this leading group of 4. You can see that Tom Bonen is riding very sensibly now. He's reduced his deficit. Now it's just 1 man against 3. Peter Van Petegem looking very clever here. But if Van Petegem wants to win this race, he has to do it on his own. Fabian Cancellara is in great form. He's the man in the black and red jersey there, and Alessandro Balan is the big danger for me.
4 versus 4, and a couple of stragglers now. No news on George Hincapie, whether he's back on his bike or not, because these are the 2 Discovery Channel riders here in the chase group. And this is Leif Hoster, number 13, and Gusev might get back. And the other rider trying to get onto terms here is the former French winner of this race, Frédéric Guédon. They've got a bit of work to do. There's Guédon. Stigman's also trying to get back up to make it 8 leaders.
Well, I think these riders have done a lot of work so far. They're just trying to survive. They're actually starting to move the team cars past. There's the team car of Team Discovery Channel. That will have Johan Brunel in there. I wonder what he's thinking about the situation of the race.
And I wonder if he's got George Hincapie in there, because that was a nasty crash. George very much stunned there on the fall because his handlebar extensions, I guess it was the bolts that keep them on the fork crown, just sheared with the pressure from the cobblestones.
Well, the leading group now is starting to look very solid indeed. This is Tom Bonen's group with Fabian Cancellara, Van Petegem, and of course Alessandro Balan. They've got themselves around about a 5-second advantage over 4 chasers, and those 4 chasers contain 2 riders from Team Discovery Channel. Leif Hoster there in 3rd place in the line, and leading them round the corner, Vladimir Gusev.
These are the 4 leaders then. Bonen, Balan, Van Petegem, Cancellara, Gusev, Host, Fletcher and Eisel are the ones chasing here. So it's Fletcher who's trying to get onto terms. They should get back. Fletcher got caught out there. He'd given so much energy with 2 good attacks and then found himself caught behind.
Well, Weisseman's caught out a little bit here as well now, because he's got with him Stegmans and of course Frédéric Guédon. They're trying to ride themselves back into this race. They are the second group on the road, but they've got in front of them 8 riders trying to organise this race.
42 kilometres, slightly more, still to ride to the finish here. We've still got 9 sectors of cobblestones. This is far from over yet. And the leaders have been thin now, helped a little by the accident to Hincapie, but Boonen saw his chance to split up that breakaway. He has taken it. We are now on Sector 9, 2 stars this, which means it's not quite as hard as the rest, but at the moment, 4 riders trying to push home the advantage after the crash of George Hincapie. Tom Boonen, who hit the front as soon as George went down, quickly joined by Van Petegem, Cancellara and Balan, and trying to come up and about to join by the look of it is Fletcher and a couple of others.
Well, a bit of pressure here. This is Bernard Eisel suffering as well at the back of the race. This has been a very difficult race over the last few kilometres. Poor old George Hincapie going down very hard indeed. Eisel almost making it into contact with this group here, which is being led by Juan Antonio Fletcher, the 2 riders from Discovery Channel. They're just about to make the junction, so we will look again at a leading group of 7 riders strong. But I wonder what tactics they can adopt now on board the Team Discovery Channel car, because you know what, they have lost the #1 man, and I have to say that Leif Hoster, I think, Phil, has done an awful lot of work for George Hincapie and may well not have anything left.
Well, this is the bridge, and welcome back to the 2 Discovery Channel riders here. Looks as though Fletcher's made a huge effort earlier on. He's struggling a little bit now. These 2 are desperate. Well, Vladimir Gusev, the new Russian boy on the squad, is only a youngster. He's going to have to mature pretty quickly now, because the captain is down and out, and it's maybe up to Gusev here to help Hoster try and salvage a victory in Paris Roubaix for the American team.
Well, they're looking over their shoulders now. They've seen the return of that leading group of 3. I don't think they'll get a lot of help from the Discovery Channel boys for the next few kilometres, because they will try and recuperate, and they'll also have to try and figure out what tactic they can adopt. This is the next chasing group on the road: Weisseman, Guédon and of course Stegmans.
Well, these 2 riders may not get back now. They've been in a little bit of trouble at each time they've hit the cobblestones. Tom Boonen won't want them to get back. He wants to thin this breakaway out. He's lost his big man in George Hincapie, and I don't think he would have purposely pushed home an attack. The professional riders don't attack when riders are down, but he will have known something happened, and that stretch of cobblestones was an ideal place to thin down the breakaway, which he's done.
Well, after all, let's not forget it was a 5-star rated section of cobblestones, 3 kilometres in length, and that's why he had to try and split the group. Sad for Hincapie, but that was a dramatic accident. He went down very hard. We still have no news over race radio as to whether he's got back up, but I think after a move like that, psychologically, George is going to be destroyed.
Yeah, because this was the day, surely today could have been the big result for George. He'd read everything correctly. You can't account for mechanical failure like that. That's just the real luck of a bad day out on the bike. These 3 riders may not get back now. We've got 7 riders up front, and Stefan Weisseman here in the pink jersey, who's been riding pretty well. He's looking extremely tired now. We're going back down the road here, probably 2.5 minutes. It looks like we've got Baden Cook here trying to, it is nearly 3 minutes in fact. This is Cookie here driving what would be the 3rd or even the 4th group on the road. Depends on how many individuals are now in between.
Well, this is a large peloton. This is Cookie trying to rip it up, but they're losing serious chunks of time. The leaders, or the winner of Paris Roubaix, is almost certainly going to come from that leading group of 7 riders.
There's Tom Boonen taking on fluid for what remains of today's Paris Roubaix. As riders fall around him, he's still there. Balan looking over his shoulder, seeing if Weisseman is coming back. Not that he's that interested. Gusev, number 15, rides in front of Boonen. Just off our camera is Leif Hoster. Fletcher looks as though he's got back into the rhythm. He's gone through to the front once more. Here comes the Lamprey team car, just to say to Alessandro Balan, this could be your big moment today, because he packs one terrific sprint finish and he's still with the boys at the front.
He's still in contact with those boys at the front, but you know, Team Discovery Channel have got a rider in there who's got just about as good a form as Tom Bonen, Leif Hoster, who was second last week in the Tour of Flanders. As we look there at the TGV, the Train Grand Vitesse, moves along at 300 kilometers an hour. I tell you what, it'll be a very nice smooth ride over the cobbles in that this afternoon.
Well, we're back with the race now at sector number 8 here, and this is a stretch of 1.4 kilometres, a mere 2 stars inside 39 kilometres or 25 miles from the finish. And ever since the fall of George Hincapie, no news, but we don't expect him to be still on the road. We think he is out at Paris Roubaix today. And Tom Boonen has been joined at the front by 3 chasers. Juan Antonio Fletcher's got on, so too as Gusev and Hoster, the 2 riders on Discovery Channel. And this is a most interesting. This is the chaos which lies behind now. Bernard Eisel still trying to get back up there and might, just might.
Well, he needs to ride very sensibly here. He can actually use the cars. The cars will not make a gap between him and the group that he's chasing because they're on this cobblestone section. So if he stays calm and collected, once they come off this cobblestone section, he's actually got a pretty good chance of reintegrating the group and making it back up to 8 men strong. But look at the dust here in Roubaix this afternoon. In years gone by, we've seen an awful lot of dirt and mud because of the rainy week leading up to Paris Roubaix, but this is a completely different kettle of fish.
Yes, and it's not pleasant riding in dust. It gets in your throat, you can't swallow. It gets in your eyes, you can't see. This is Alessandro Ballan at the back too. Watch him. The Lamprey boy won one of the first races of the year in Italy. He was placed 8th in Milan San Remo, and a race not too far away in Belgium over the borders. They call it the Grand Prix E3, named after the Cross Europe motorway E3. He was second in that. He is riding extremely well. 5th in the Tour de fifth in the Tour de Flanders. That's right, just last weekend.
He's a man they're going to have to take an awful lot of notice to. You can see how dangerous these roads are with zigzagging across, trying to find at least a little bit of smooth surface. Well, a lot of big names losing out here this afternoon, and this all started because of the Forest of Arenberg, and the man who's had a lot of bad luck is Thor Hushovd, a pre-race favourite. We thought he was going to come up with the win here this afternoon, but we know that he's had 2 flat tyres, and he may have well had a lot more bad luck.
Well, Thor Hushovd rides on the Crédit Agricole team. He hasn't made the split. He did win Gent-Wevelgem in the week, and I must say his thoughts then, as ours is today, with the 23-year-old young American from Georgia, and that is Sol Raisen, because he had a very serious crash on Tuesday in the Circuit of the South, a race here in France. He landed on his face, he broke his left clavicule and a rib, and since has suffered a cerebral edema in hospital. He is being kept in an induced coma right now. I know his parents have come over from America, and we certainly want them all to know that here at OLN our thoughts are with them too, because certainly we want to see Sol coming round and getting back out on the bike in the months that lie ahead. He's got a tough ride, we know, but he's a tough boy. So we're now looking here at Paris-Roubaix. It is still all chaos in this leading group. Bernard Eisel, you fight to the limit in this race. That's what you do, and Eisel is coming back.
Tough ride here by Bernard Eisel, and that's the important thing about Paris-Roubaix. Never give up, because you never know what is going to happen. And he has come back up now to make this an 8-man leading group. There's a couple of chasers still at 11 seconds, and there's another group at 50 seconds, but the main field are almost 3 minutes in arrears. You can see there, Leif Hoster is doing a very good job moving to the front. He wants a quick word with the team manager. I think he wants to try and figure out what are we going to do now, because he did a lot of work in the first part of this race. I think they were all banking on George Hincapie this afternoon.
Well, they've got to rethink the whole tactics now. And Tom Bonen, and it won't be clear to Tom, of course, what happened to George. He just knows there was a problem behind him. But he knows that he's reduced the odds, or increased his own odds of winning the race now. But there are still a lot of guys here looking pretty good right now, and there's got to be some more attacks. They cannot afford to go with Tom Bonen onto the velodrome in Roubaix, as the velodrome, which is where we commentate from, well, it was empty about an hour and a half ago now. Now it's packed with people and watching a big screen in the centre of the velodrome. Ballan doing the best ride we've ever seen him do in Paris-Roubaix. I'm not even sure whether he's ridden it before, to be absolutely honest, but he is riding well this season. Number 13 at the back is Gusev. Number 15 is Hoster, and I think Gusev will have to try and get Hoster into the thick of the action.
Well, they've still got the advantage, you know, of having 2 riders in this leading group of 8, and that can always play out when we get down towards the end of the race. This is the chase group now, a little bit further back. There's Stegemans with Stefan Weissermann from Switzerland. It's a bit strange to see that Swiss flag because he's a former East German, then a West German, and now he's decided to change his nationality to Swiss because of his marriage to a lady from Switzerland. In there as well, a former winner. You can see Frédéric Guédon riding there in 2nd place.
Well, I'm not sure they're going to cross any gap now. It looks to me as though we've got the 8 front runners here with the arrival of Bernhard Eisel. No Austrian cyclist has ever won Paris Roubaix, and this looks like it's going to be a race of surprises today, and they're going to go right down to the line. And Balan there also riding very well. Well, he's an Italian. The Italians have only won this 11 times in its history of 104 years. The last Italian, by the way, was Andrea Taffi in 1999. He's now retired.
Andrea Taffi loved this bike race, as did Franco Ballerini as well, who won this race on 2 occasions. 3 Belgians in this leading group, and they will be thinking about the possibility of a win here this afternoon. That's Gusev moving across there. Bonin, I think, Phil, will try and reduce the numbers in this group when we get to one of the next section of cobblestones in about 20 or 25 kilometres time. There's a section of cobblestones out of the small town of Sizouin. It's a very difficult section with a slight climb, and that's where we saw Tom Bonin really dominate in the Tour of Flanders. Van Petegem straight through the middle there. Very experienced rider. He'll be very happy with the situation here this afternoon.
Some Cancellara. A lot of people have talked about Fabian Cancellara long before this race began as a man to watch out for. He's been riding extremely well here in the classic races. 6th in the Tour of Flanders, 6th in Ghent-Wevelgem. Looks to me as though he might go a little bit better in Paris-Roubaix, but will he get the win? And will he get the win for Switzerland? No winner from Switzerland since 1923. This is the breakaway of the day now. I don't think anybody else is going to come across. We've got 8 men shaping up the race now.
36 years of age, Peter Van Petegem. He's a very experienced bike rider. This might be one of his last chances of getting himself the victory here this afternoon. But I think, Phil, if it comes down to the sprint, nobody is going to get a wheel around Tom Bonin. They all know that, and that's what I think will be the tactic of everybody in this leading group. They will try and get away before they come down to the velodrome. But Tom Bonin just looks so comfortable. He's covered all the moves when he's needed to, and he's dominated on the cobblestones as well.
Well, there's the face of Tom. He had a rough time in midweek in Ghent-Wevelgem, said he didn't feel at all like it. Tried hard on the first circuit of the Kemmelberg. It wasn't there, so he fell to the back of the race and he rode home. Well, he's had a rest since then, and now he's looking extremely strong again. He's ridden a great race. He is the world champion, but he's riding a world champion season this year with a dozen wins already.
He's been so dominant in the early part of the season. He rode the Tour of Qatar, where he won 4 out of 5 stages and took the overall lead as well. And on top of that, he came up to Paris-Nice, won himself 3 stages and allowed one of his teammates, Pippo Pozzato, to win the Milano-San Remo. But here, he is reigning supreme. He's been on his own since the Forest of Arenberg, and he's controlled any situation that's been thrown at him.
Well, Gusev is going to have to grit his teeth and hang on there. He was trying to turn a heavy gear, but we're now on sector number 7, 0.2 of a kilometre, but don't more. You'll be just a little bit more than just the 0.2. We go off and back on again for another half a kilometre of sector 7. As we're really in the farm tracks of northern France here now, a giant windmill to match the giants of the north of this country. Lost the race for the moment, but down there today in Paris-Roubaix, it is a duel battle that's going on, and sadly, George Hincapie crashing out through no fault of his own.
It was a really dramatic crash. He seemed perfectly set up to attack the race a lot later on. Then all of a sudden, he had his handlebars in his hands. They'd become disconnected from his bike. And once that happens, there's absolutely nothing you can do. And he went down to the ground very hard indeed. Tom Bonin, though, has decided now, I'll just dictate the pace that I want over the cobblestones, because that's the best way to take a race like this. Go to the front and show them who the boss is.
Well, so far for number 1, it's been a trouble-free ride. His only concern has been the riders around him. He's had no problems with his bike, no flat tyres. I remember the great man of this event, Roger de Vlaminck, who won it 4 times. I think he rode it 11, and it was only on the 11th time did he have his first flat tyre. You do need luck in Paris-Roubaix, but at the end of the day, the best man always wins this event.
That's certainly the case, and when you're in good form, you always have good luck. Now let's just have a look at the back here. A little bit tricky coming off those cobblestones. This is Cancellara at the back. But as we get a little bit further away from Templeuve and up towards the small town of Sizouin at around about 25 kilometers to go, there's two very nasty sections of cobblestones. Look at the face there on the man in the red and white jersey of De Vitamont Lotto. That is Peter van Petegem, Phil. He's 36 years of age. He knows what these races are all about. He really wants the win here this afternoon.
I thought he rode superbly last week in the Tour de Flanders. Hincapie beat him in the sprint for third place, but I thought his form was good. And I would be very worried about his presence in this breakaway if I was one of the other riders. So we must watch out for Van Petegem today. He's won this race before. He knows his way into the velodrome. And Juan Antonio Fletcher, who had the brilliant result last year in finishing third in Paris Roubaix. And the best place by a Spanish rider is second, by the way. And that was Miguel Poble a long time ago, about over 50 years ago. I can't believe how time flies.
A long, long time ago, but I think Juan Antonio Fletcher might equal that today, might even go better. That's what he wants to do. He was third last year. If he goes one better, he'll get up to second, but for him, what he's thinking about is actually winning this bike race. I do have to feel a little bit sorry, though, for George Hincapie, because he and his team, Phil, had done absolutely everything right, and to have that chance snatched away from him on the cobblestones at Mont-Saint-Pavel. Little acceleration now coming from Gusev on the front. Just 23 years of age, Gusev, and he's a man who I think could be a star of the future. Here he is certainly enjoying his ride over the cobblestones.
Well, he's going to be a real star. He is a great talent. Discovery Channel have recognised that. But boy, he's flowered today. He snatches a bottle there. His job at the end of the day is going to have to try a cheeky attack, I think, and try and slip away and cause a reaction that might set it up for Leif Hofs to profit from if they catch Gusev. It's got to be something like that as we run towards the finish. Tom Bonan there, neck of his racing jersey unzipped, doesn't look like a man in trouble at all. Cancellara off on his right shoulder, gone now is Lars Mikkelsen, Cancellara's teammate. He's been left behind, still chasing. Crossing over yet again, one of the autoroutes that take you between France and Brussels in Belgium.
Well, they're just going over that small section, that small autoroute there. That will take them now into the outskirts of the town of Sizouin. Then they'll line up to the section of cobblestones, 6 to go. And that is the section at Bourguel. It's a very difficult section. But I think if we see a move coming, it might well be the 2 cobblestones after that, with about 5 cobblestone sections to go. And that is the section at Canfin and Pervel. And it's a very difficult, slightly uphill false flat. And that is where you can split this group. And I think to decide Paris-Roubaix this afternoon, you need to split the group because there still are too many riders here.
I can't imagine 8 men coming into the velodrome together. We're going to have one terrific track sprint if it is. 31 kilometers to go, just over 8 kilometers of actual cobblestone sections left now. But there's some nasty ones hiding in amongst the woods around the area. Gusev looking rather cool, swings through. Bonan, the world champion. A couple of years older than Gusev, but no more than that. Then comes Leif Hoster, twice second in the Tour of Flanders, including last weekend.
Yeah, he really needs to get his racing head back on, because I think in today's race, I should say, he dedicated himself to George Hincapie, but he's got the form to bounce back and maybe create the surprise down towards the end of this race. He's a very good bike rider, in good form at the moment, the winner of the 3 days of La Panne, but I think probably a little bit shaken by that accident when he saw his teammate go down.
No question about it, Paul. I mean, it was not expected, and there are the worst crashes. When they get a mass pile-up, you sort of are ready to roll as you go into the mess of bike riders. But when something breaks, you're down on the floor before you actually know what is happening. They are the worst sort of crash. And as we saw, George's head hit the ground there. Thankfully, it was the ground of the field rather than the cobblestones. But clearly, he was shaken. And Hoster, who's working like that, along with Gusev, to get George the victory, is suddenly left without a leader. And they've got to rethink their tactics.
Back to the drawing board, but you know, that's a good thing about Johan Brunel. He always has a trick up his sleeve, and he may well have come up with one here. The big advantage they've got, Phil, is the fact that there are 2 riders in this group from the team, and they can split the responsibility down towards the end to cover the moves. Peter van Petegem will be thinking about a late move, and if he can get away, he's going to be a difficult man to chase down. But the man who so far has chased every move is the man in the white jersey there with the rainbow bands around it, the world champion Tom Bonan from Belgium, who this year has had a magical start to his season.
And Petercam there. His best finish of recent times in this event, at least, was 5th in 2004. Hasn't appeared in the leaderboard since. And of course, he is the winner of the race, going back just a little bit now, but he's won the race before too. Bowman, puffing and blowing.
Yeah,
winner of the race last year.
Huffing and puffing, thinking, what am I going to do? He's ticking the time away, keeping an eye on all of these guys. He's looking now at everybody in this group, wondering what their legs are feeling like, wondering how they are negotiating this very long, difficult, cold race here this afternoon. He knows that somebody will try and attack down towards the end. So far, he's showed that he's got the acceleration to nail back all of the gaps. When this man, Juan Antonio Fletcher, attacked a little while ago, Tom Boonen came across the gap as if everybody in the race was standing still. This is the time of, this is the town of Sizouin. Van Petegem looking down. Just checking there, make sure everything's okay. The riders pay a lot of attention to their machines on a race like this. This is a real testing bed for bicycles, and unfortunately today, George Hincapie's bike came unstuck.
Yes, now it's getting to the stage of the race now where they're going to have to start rethinking. These are clearly the strongest men of the day. They did split in 4 by 3 by 1 earlier, so clearly they're not all feeling that strong for the initial surge of attacks. And the Bonham will try again, I think, just to see who's paying attention, but I'd still watch out. I think the biggest danger here now is Van Petegem, but I'm not sure he's got the legs to go alone. He won the race in 2003. He's finished 6th in it in 2004.
This is the second group on the road, but they're around about a minute 22 seconds in arrears. There's Wesemann, number 121. Stegmans won't be putting too much of his back into this chase here, because he'll be thinking about the presence of his man Peter Van Petegem in the front, and poor old Wesemann is pretty much isolated. The man with him in 3rd place there as well, Frédéric Guédon, he too won't go too hard in the chase, because he's quite happy to have his team sprinter Bernard Eisel in the leading group of 8 riders. Now this is a move, this is a crafty little move here. This is Gusev, but he's completely covered there by Balan. Balan all over the front of that. Peter Van Petegem up into 3rd place. When they come out of the town here of Sizouin, they will be going to another long section of cobblestones, and this town here is at 26 kilometers to go.
So now we're heading for the next section of cobblestones here, which will take us into zone number 6. There's no change at the front. There are now 7 or 8 riders here. The last to arrive was Bernard Eisel. As we now look at the riders here, Tom Boonen still has his hands full. There are 2 riders from Discovery, but only Leif Hoster, I think, is going to cause concern to Boonen.
Boonen, I think, will wait until we get to that section of cobblestones at Canfort-en-Pévèle. He knows it, and it's a very difficult section. It's a hard enough section to split the group. Bernard Eisel, a man who recently finished 2nd in the 3 days of Le Panne, is looking pretty comfortable. He's the man in the white jersey on the left there. He's had a good start to the season. He's had 3 wins so far this year, and there you can see Fabien Cancellara also looking pretty attentive.
Wait for the stones. Here they come again now. We're now looking at Tom Boonen. He leads them on to Sector 6 now, Siswang de Bourgel. This is a 4-star sector, 27 kilometers, about 16 miles remains now. Boonen is trying to lay down the law as the strongest man in this breakaway of 8. And hanging on, and the man who caused the pain previously is Fletcher.
Fletcher sitting at the back there wearing number 21. It's a long section of cobblestones here. A couple of years ago, a spectator got a little bit too close to the riders and a flag got stuck into the back wheel of a rider from Belgium, and I think on that occasion it was Leif Hoster when he was riding one of his early Paris Roubaix. But this is the best way to defend. Go to the front, dictate the pace, because you are the person who sets the tempo. You're not being you're not being forced to accept the pace making of somebody else.
The Belgian flag on the right, the flag of Flanders with the black line on it on the left. The man in the middle is the champion of Flanders, Tom Boonen, the world champion. He's watched riders fall like poor old George Hincapie and leave him lying on the cobblestones. He's answered the attacks so far of riders of the quality of Fletcher and also of other riders in this breakaway like Van Petegem. But now he's doing what he does best. He's holding them all under control by setting the pace himself.
Well, he loves this race. He loves the Tour of Flanders, and this is going to be rather historic if he can get the victory, Phil, because last year He won Tour of Flanders and Paris Roubaix. This year he's already won the Tour of Flanders, and he's looking now like a man very likely to be the winner here as well. But this time he will win it with the World Champions jersey on his back. And look at the gaps he's starting to open.
And there's trouble at the back right now, because this is Balin who's had a problem, and he was in the group away, and I think that is also Gusev.
Yep, this is how it happened. It was Gusev who went down. He slipped and Balin went right over the top, and look how Fletcher just managed to get underneath that bike. These are very slippery cobblestones. The funny thing about the cobblestones is when they're wet, they're horrendous. When they're dry, they're even just as slippy.
Well, it's the dust that does it, and Gusev was beginning to falter a little bit there. Maybe his wheel just got stuck in the middle of those cobblestones. That's quite a nasty fall for Balin, although he seems perfectly fine, and Fletcher dived for the left. He is an extraordinarily good bike handler for a Spanish cyclist.
Yeah, Fletcher's a great bike rider. Now you can see this is Gusev trying to pull himself back into the race. Very sad. You know, the thing about the cobblestones is the surface of the cobblestones just seems to be so much harder when you go down. Solid granite stones they are, and they do not give anything when you fall onto them.
Well, this will be Fletcher trying to get... No, this is Balin trying to get back now. He's going to pedal back smoothly. Now, that's an indication, Paul. This guy has still got plenty of strength left.
Well, the way he got up, he bounced off the ground and immediately was straight back up onto his bike. A little bit of a scratch, but that's what Paris Roubaix is all about. You know, the stories are here all of the time. And straight to the front is Juan Antonio Fletcher. This man is fantastic.
Yes, he is, and look at the way he's doing it now. I think that was possibly 25 kilometres to go. We've just seen on the side of the road there. This is Leif Hoster. I'm not sure whether Gusev will come back quite so smoothly. He was getting tired. I'm not sure whether that crash was due to fatigue. He's getting a little bit desperate at this stage of the race. The face on the right of Van Petegem. Cancellara in the lead here. They're all just checking each other just to see if there's any hint of a crack in their armour. Eisel's had the ride of his life as he looks over here.
He's had the start of his season to his life too. He's a very good bike rider, very experimented, but you know, he's also got a very good sprint. Look at the face on Peter Van Petegem though, that is a face of concentration. He's thinking about those moves coming up. He knows what he has to do to win this race. To win this race, he's got to win it on his own.
Well, we're looking at the leaders of Paris Roubaix, the 104th edition. It is an absolute cracker. And I don't think the Discovery Channel boys will agree with me today, because after the crash to George Hincapie, we've now got the crash to Gusev, who's gone down with Balin. But Gusev is getting back. He's going to live to fight another section of cobbles.
Well, that's an indication this is serious talent.
So Gusev coming through at 1:45, goes way back to the remnants of the breakaway now. Also, the clouds are here, but I think they'll survive. They won't get wet today.
It should be dry. It should stay dry out on the roads of Paris Roubaix here this afternoon. 23 years of age, that man who's just about to get on the back, the man from Russia, Gusev, a very strong bike rider. He is a man that is being nurtured, being brought up by Johan Brunel as possibly a star for the future. But the team, they must be thinking now, I wonder how George Hincapie is, because he went down very hard on the cobblestones a little while ago, on the cobblestones of Mont-Saint-Pével. Sadly for him, it was a mechanical incident that's taken him out of Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. But the team are back on the defensive. Their man Gusev here, wearing number 13, by the way, unlucky for some, is trying to pull himself back into the race. And the pressure now is coming from Peter Van Petegem.
23.5 kilometres left to ride. We're still on Sector 6. This is the second sector of Sector 6, 6B. 1.1 kilometres, 4 stars this time, as we head now to Vanaheim.
Well, that might be the nail in the coffin of Vladimir Gusev here, who's really suffering, trying to pull himself back. He's concentrating. Look at that face there. He's just looking at the riders in front of him, thinking, how can I close this gap? I'm full on at the moment. Let them just slow down for a fraction, then I can nail it back. There he is. It's not much more than 55 to 75 metres, but it can feel interminable.
He's just got to hope and wait, and the slowing luck. 7 of them are here. They're more concerned with each other now. 23 kilometres inside, 15 miles to go. Bonen goes back up to the front of the group, the world champion. Cancellara follows him. Hoster goes through in third place. Eisel's the boy in white off to the left.
Just looking back, the fact that they've slowed down on the smoother surface road here means that probably Vladimir Gusev will make it back up to this group and increase the numbers again to 8, but he will have had a very hard ride to do it.
Well, Hoster's trying to hold them back here. He's backpedaling. He looked over his shoulder. See, he's looking over his shoulder again. He's just trying to keep this pace until he sees his teammate alive. Fletcher saying, who's he looking at? And he won't want the teammate to arrive.
Well, look at Boonen now. He's starting to look a bit impatient to me, Phil, looking over his shoulder. He wants a bit more effort coming from the other guys in this breakaway. He's not showing any signs of weakness. This is Gusev, and he still hasn't quite made the junction. He's still pushing to get himself onto the tail of that group. 23 years of age, a lot of experience for this young man to ride Paris Roubaix in the leading group, but I think that crash really hurt him.
A huge effort required now just to close down that gap. It's not so far to go to the finish now. We're approaching 20 kilometres left of Paris Roubaix. Still a few sectors of pavé, still some nasty ones that certainly will bite. That's the leading group now. They must be getting concerned too. Just who is the strongest man in this group?
Well, Van Petegem looks good, he looks comfortable, he's got the experience, he knows about this race, but I have to say Tom Boonen now is looking more and more solid in this leading group. I have a feeling when we come to the next section of cobblestones that Confort-en-Pévèle, he may well think about a slight move there, because it's a difficult section of cobblestones, and it's a section of cobblestones where he saw his teammate a couple of years ago, George Hincapie, go down and into the ditch.
Hoster looking pretty cool and collected off on the right. Eisel having the ride of his life here. An Austrian, remembers, never won Paris-Roubaix. He packs a very fast sprint finish. He'll be fancying his chances if it comes down to that. Ballan, another fast sprinter too. He moves into second place. Cancellar, a little flick of the elbow saying, come on, give me a hand at the front here. So Ballan's, it's all down to him now. And the arrival very shortly should be of Vladimir Gusev.
Well, he's actually having a very hard time getting across that gap. There's 7 riders now at the front of Paris-Roubaix. Peter Van Petegem at the pack, Leif Hoster going to the front. He must be now thinking, well, I'm the leader of the team. I've got a very good chance here. After all, he was second in the Tour of Flanders last week to a man by the name of Tom Boonen.
Well, looking at the leading breakaway here, we are approaching 20 kilometres from the finish. There are 5 sectors of pavé to go. Surely the winner of Paris-Roubaix will come from this group. We're looking at the face here of Alessandro Ballan with his injured left arm. He fell as Vladimir Gusev went under his front wheel on the last sector of cobbles, and Gusev, if our camera would swing around, is right behind and making good progress. There he is. He's actually amongst the cars now.
He's inside the convoy of team cars. He'd probably, if he's a good professional, take a little bit of a rest, take his time to get back into this group, but he has to understand and he has to know that very shortly these guys will be lining up to another section of cobblestones.
Not sure what was wrong with Leif Hoster there, waving his arm around, but in fact Ballan has put the attack in here, quickly marked by the Spanish rider Fletcher. Well, standing up and gesticulating was Hoster, and he's been caught at the back because of it.
Well, Hoster wanted the team car to come forward, but sadly the team car was a little bit further back looking after his teammate Gusev, who's just coming into the group, and that's what caught out Hoster. Fletcher on the front now, putting the pressure down, but he needs to actually wait for a moment because we're about 1.5 kilometres from Confort-en-Pévèle.
Well, here he is, Vladimir Gusev. He's just about to slip into the group. There's the man he brought off as well. I think a word between them two now. They're back together again. But have you looked at the faces of these guys, Paul? I don't think there's any of them feeling pretty good right now.
Nobody's feeling superb after being on the bike for around about 6 hours of racing. They're all starting to concentrate. They all wish this race was over. Every one of these riders in this breakaway, Phil, deserves to win. Everybody's taking pace at the front. Everyone shared the work in this group. But, you know, at the end of the day, only one man can cross the line in first place. I'd like to see Juan Antonio Fletcher win because he's been formidable here this afternoon.
And no Spanish riders ever won this race, and he really has thrown it at them today. There was one stage I thought he'd overdone it, and here we go again now. The next sector of pavé, sector number 5, and this is where Sean Kelly once broke his forks.
Well, Sean Kelly knows all about this. This is a very long, difficult section. This is a section where George Hincapie crashed out a couple of years ago. Fletcher taking the move to the front here. That's the best way to dictate. You can see this is a 4-star section of cobblestones, 1.8 kilometres long. Fletcher stamping out the pace on the front here. Tom Boonen, for the moment, on the defensive. At the back of the group, Gusev, he got on just in time.
Well, let's hope he can hang there now, because that's what he's going to have to do inside 20 kilometres to the finish. finish. Every sector of Pavé now, they've got to make it count, and Fletcher's got the lead. And I think Fletcher is feeling it a little bit more than most in this breakaway, and if you are feeling it, the way to control it is to get to the front and try and dictate the pace. Having said that, he can't hold it anymore. Now, I think the man who is possibly going to deliver the goods is Van Peterman. And look at this now, I can't believe it. Where's he finding those legs from?
Well, Gusev has decided I need to go to the front and set the pace here, because he's trying to give a little bit of respite to the man just at the back of the line there. That's Leif Hoster, and if he can do something, he will help his teammate. Van Petegem, like the seasoned professional that he is, riding along the middle there. He's not taking any risks. He doesn't want a flat tire at this stage of the game, and he's allowing Gusev to ride slowly but surely off the front. They need to respond to this, because this is a long section of cobblestones. Look at Tom Boonen just sitting there waiting. He's talking, get out of the way, I'm coming by. This is the tornado.
He shouted there at the Spanish rider to move over. He wanted the wheel of Balan. Well, you see, Gusev is going to be the least marked of this breakaway. They've seen his faults, they've seen he's tired, he's a young boy. And in fact, the first man to reach him is Cancellara. And Cancellara is a different kettle of fish. This is a man who could ride away with it.
Well, Fabian Cancellara saw that as an opportunity. Gusev scrambling to get onto his wheel, but Tom Boonen is being caught out here. He was asking everybody else to lift the pacemaking. Peter Van Petegem is on the front of that group, but the gap now is starting to open a fraction as Fabian Cancellara has done what he said he was going to do. He's done, Phil, they've shut it down.
They've slowed it down. This could be the curtains for them if they allow this to happen. And Gusev, a moment ago behind the race, could find himself in the winning move.
Well, that is unbelievable. That's what Paris Roubaix is about. I've told you so many times. 1 minute you're up, 1 minute you're down. You must never give up in a race like this. It's about courage. This is a real man's race. Vladimir Gusev chased for about 7 kilometers to come back to the group. Launched a little scurry of a move off the front. He's been joined now by Fabian Cancellara. The man caught out is the world champion. He's a prisoner now in this group, Tom Boonen.
Well, this had to happen. The riders had to throw their chances at Boonen. Boonen can't answer everyone. Now, this is the big effort by Fabian Cancellara. He's 25 years of age. He's won 1 race this year, but boy, he is a winner. And he's a very strong rider. Remember him when he won the prologue in the Tour de France in Liège back in 2004. Now, as far as I can remember, his best finish in Paris-Roubaix, I think he was 8th. Last year.
Well, you know, he loves this race. He gave CSC a good victory in Tirreno Adriatico when he won himself the time trial. But as he comes off the cobblestones here, you can see that they're all starting to panic a little bit. Fabian Cancellara here, Phil, has certainly put the bit between his teeth and decided this is the moment to move. They've got a little bit of respite here, but only for about 3 kilometers, because coming up next is the Pavé de l'Arbre. The cobblestones are blue. They are unbelievably slippy, and they are very difficult towards the end because they climb up to the old cafe.
Well, what a strong position to be in. In fact, 2 years ago, Cancellara got 4th in this race, and he's going to want to go better than that. He's got, more importantly now, the gap as he goes on to these last violent sectors of cobblestones. The Carrefour de l'Arbre, that's the one that could well unseat Gusev if he's not careful. He's going to have to hang on here. What a result if this young man goes to the finish.
Well, he's going to have to try and figure out what to do, because Fabian Cancellara could ride time trial all the way to the finish. He was the man who beat Armstrong in the prologue of the Tour de France when it was in Liège, and he got himself the yellow jersey on the first day. Section number 4 to go. This is a very famous section. It's known as the Carrefour de l'Arbre. The first part is known as the Pavé Bleu because they are blue granite, very slippy indeed, as we see these riders getting onto that section.
5 stars, it never ends here. Sector 4, Paris-Roubaix, 17 kilometers to go. Fabian Cancellara, a Swiss rider, has never won this race since 1923. A Russian rider has never won this race. And the 2 of them now try to go clear of the field. And at this stage, Tom Boonen's going to say to the other guys, if you want to win, you better chase.
Well, it's up to them to chase. Boonen is up there into 3rd position, battling a little bit with Juan Antonio Fletcher. He wants to get onto the wheel there of Peter Van Petegem. Balan doing a very good job on the front, lifting the pace. Look at the speed they're going round these corners. If you could actually see what this road looks like. You wouldn't believe the speed that these men are going over it. The dust is there, the crowd is there. This is Paris Roubaix in the finale. Fabien Cancellara has got a company here. He's got Vladimir Gusev of Discovery Channel, who were expecting to see the win this afternoon of George Hincapie. That's not going to happen. Hincapie out with a very nasty mechanical incident. But this is the moment. If Tom Boonen wants to win, Phil, he's got to respond on the Pavé de l'Arbre.
If Tom Boonen wants to win, yes, and if Gusev wants to win, he's just got to sit there and hang, because he's got no reason to work with Cancellara. At the moment, at least, remember, it was Cancellara who went up to the young Russian, who really went to the front to try and just ease the pace down a little bit, because he only just returned after his crash, and he looked the weakest of the breakaway. It just shows you stick to your guns and your fortunes can change dramatically. Now, Peter van Petegem here, he wants to win this race. He knows now he's got to release any reserves he's got left in those legs. Otherwise, Fabien Cancellara and Vladimir Gusev are going to go, and they're going to go big, but that's the gap. The gap is there. Gusev is tired. He's got to try and hold him.
This is a very hard section of cobbles here, Phil. It goes slightly up. Gusev hasn't been able to stay in the wheel, and Cancellara now is getting what he needs. A lone attack now. He's opened up the gap between himself and Vladimir Gusev, and of course Peter van Petegem knows how dangerous this point of the race is. He knows this race like the back of his hand. He's probably the most experienced rider in this leading group, and he will not give up. He can feel the chance. Fletcher is in difficulty. Bernard Eisel has disappeared. The race is splitting up.
Well, on this stretch of pavé in years gone by, the big names of the sport have laid down their final card and gone to victory. You can name them: Johan Museeuw, Henny Kuiper, and other riders who've tried, Eric van der Aarde, and now it looks as though Fabien Cancellara is going to fly the Swiss flag to the finish.
Well, that's going to be a massive piece of history for Swiss cycling, because they've had to wait an awful long time. He's got the gap now of around about 20 seconds over Gusev. All he can do now is get himself into the time trial mode, start to concentrate, start to think about ticking out the pedal, try and remember the finale of this race from previous years.
So we are heading into the last 15 kilometres of Paris-Roubaix. It certainly isn't a done deal yet, but Fabien Cancellara is dictating the race pattern.
Not much of a respite. You take the right-hand bend here, you go over the tarmac surface for about 100 metres or so, then it's off to the left and it's on the cobblestones again, and that is section number 3 to go to the finish. That's the section of cobblestones known as Gruzon. It's 1.1 kilometres in length, and look at this crowd that have turned out to see Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon. Be careful, young man, because it's slippy in those corners. Second man on the road here, Vladimir Gusev. He really is riding up, and you know what? A couple of years ago, a 23-year-old by the name of Tom Boonen rode like this in Paris-Roubaix.
Just looking at the face there of Gusev, I think he's very, very tired now, and he's almost on automatic pilot. While Fabien Cancellara now relying on his basic talent when he became a World Junior Time Trial Champion, which he did twice in the late 90s. And has somebody gone there? Hoster's gone. Tom Bonen's got to react to that one. Leif Hoster attacks.
Well, Leif Hoster must know that his teammate Gusev has been unhitched at the group front, and that's why he's decided, I've got to go for it. He's got the form. He was second in Paris-Roubaix, and he's now got the responsibility of Team Discovery Channel on his shoulders. The race situation is one man leads, Fabien Cancellara, 10 seconds back to this man, Leif Hoster, the second, 10 seconds back to Gusev, 30 seconds to Leif Hoster, and you know what? I think he's just about got the gap.
Well, Boonen, I think, is under pressure. We're looking down from the helicopter now. Cancellara is still clear here, but there has just been this enormous attack by Leif Hoster, and I'm not sure that Boonen has had the answer. Still second on the road is the Russian Discovery Channel rider, their big find there in Gusev. And up ahead in that little group is Hoster, and the world champion is having to handle everybody. And now Fletcher's going for him.
Well, Peter van Petegem has seen the move here. He's come across to Leif Hoster, but this is the first time we've really seen Tom Boonen in a little bit of bother. And I think just in front of him, Juan Antonio Fletcher has seen the danger, and he too now is trying to nail them back. Ballan also is trying to pull it all back together here, but the race is splitting up. Boonen, for the first time this year, Phil, is having a hard time.
These are professional cyclists at the height of their career, doing what they do best, and they're all reaching the limits of their ability. The one that can suffer just a second or two longer could decide the day here. Now Cancellara is best shape just now. He's up the road, the 25-year-old. These are his legs. And he's finished 6th in the Tour de Flanders this year. He was 6th in Ghent-Wevelgem. He don't want to finish 6th in Paris Roubaix. He wants to become the first Swiss rider to win it since Henri Suter in 1923.
That was an awful long time ago. It was an awful long wait for the Swiss. But you know what? This man may well be getting it here this afternoon. Boonen in difficulty here, the world champion. Wears #1, but he won't give up. He's a strong bike rider. He is very courageous indeed. He wants the race. He wants to win as the world champion, and he wants to win in style. But for the moment, it's not looking good for Boonen because he's a long way down on Fabian Cancellara. Leif Hoster now has joined his teammate Vladimir Gusev, and they've got Van Petegem in a discovery sandwich.
Well, they've got to put this attack home now while they've got Boonen off the back. Then they're going to have to concern themselves with Van Petegem. But for the moment, at least, the three of them have got to work together. Otherwise, they won't catch Fabian Cancellara. He hit them well, he hit them hard.
Well, Balan has gone as well. Balan is just in front of these two riders, and he's trying to get across the gap. He could see that everybody's losing steam now as we head down to the next part of the road. They're going to go through the small town of Chéron, and then they've got about 4 kilometers to the last section of cobblestones, which are not really very difficult because there's a good piece of tarmac down to either side of it, and you can get a bit of respite, but it's dangerous as you flick from left to right. We saw Henny Kuiper come unstuck there a couple of years ago. Cancellara now, Phil, has to concentrate, think, and just get himself into that zone where you just ride and don't think about anybody else chasing you.
So now it'll be the hardest time trial of his career if he's going to win at Paris-Roubaix, because Fabian Cancellara, the bronze medalist in the World Time Trial Championship last year, is now racing for first place in Paris-Roubaix. That's the constitution of the three chasers, Gusev, Hoster and Van Petegem. And that's 2-1, so the Discovery boys, it's in their favour.
Well, Race Radio is giving me a time check of 10 seconds, but looking up from those riders, I couldn't see Fabian Cancellara. This is a phenomenal race here, Phil, because everybody is just scrambling, trying to make contact with the rider in front. You've got Fabian Cancellara chased by 3 riders, Gusev, Hoster and Van Petegem. About 10 seconds further back, you've still got Balan. Then at 10 seconds further back, you've got Boonen and Fletcher, all scrambling, all just basically surviving down towards the end of this race.
Well, we're charging through the streets, which are not very far away from the finish in Roubaix now, but we've still got cobblestones to come. And one by one, they've delivered blows to Tom Boonen. He hasn't been able to answer every attack, and this is the result when you don't have a team to help. You're going to take all the blows on the body yourself. He looked across there at Alessandro Balan and Juan Antonio Fletcher here. These riders, I think, are done for today.
Well, you look at those faces now. Those faces tell the story of what this bike race is all about. It's a tough race. It really is a question of survival down towards the end. But when you're in the lead like Fabian Cancellara, you get that little bit of ounce of extra energy coming from the motivation of knowing I'm on my own, I'm in with a chance. And look at the gap, 31 seconds, but that's 31 seconds back to the group containing Tom Boonen. Halfway across that gap, you've got 2 riders from Discovery Channel, and all they want to do is make the junction here.
But can they do it? I'm not so sure they've got the power. I think Cancellara is the fittest of them all now. He's a great individual time trial rider against the clock. He's won junior world titles. He got a bronze in the senior event. He knows how to ride alone, a race of truth against the watch. He's being chased by 3 very tired men.
Well, they put a lot of work in those tired men early on to try and set the race up for George Hincapie, especially Leif Hoster and Vladimir Gusev. This is the next group on the road. They seem to be recovering. It's a very difficult part of the race here as well, because the road, as you can see, moves left and right, and you don't know where the man is that you're chasing. Once they come out of this small town here of Le Marais, then they know they've got a little bit of open land, and they'll get a chance to see the motorbikes, the cars that are following the riders in front of them, and then they can guess and estimate how much energy they need to put in to try and close back down this race.
Well, he won't have time to think of anything, Fabian Cancellara. Now he's made his move. He's just going to go. It's going to be the longest few kilometers of his life. He's nosing away. 32 seconds to the 2 Discovery riders and Van Petegem. Then almost a minute back to Tom Boonen. The barrier's down. Well, the rules say you've got to stop, but they haven't bothered with that. They've gone straight over at 10 Ks to go.
Well, at 10 Ks to go, they didn't think about that. There was somebody there checking it. There's a referee there. The lights are flashing. They're stopping Tom Bonen, Juan Antonio Fletcher, and there is the train that's gone through. There's absolutely no way that these guys are going to come through now. The race is over for these three. The race now is going to be down to just 4 men.
Well, when the rules state that if the crossing comes down, you have to stop, you lose the real time. There's no way around it at 10 kilometers to go, so that's cost them about 30 seconds.
Well, that train went through very fast indeed, but for these men now, next time they get a time check, Phil, it's going to be around about the 1 minute and 30 seconds, but their morale must be broken with that incident. It has happened before in Paris Roubaix, but it's not seen it for a couple of years.
It's going to take the spirit out of the chase, surely now. Frankly, I don't think it made any difference. I think these had already lost the race today, beaten by an attacking race that they hit him one-on-one all of the time until he could not answer them all. And Bonen's now been consigned to a chasing group of 3 with Fletcher and Balan. But they've still got that extra. It's reflecting in the time gap now. They've gone out to 1 minute and 12 seconds.
Well, it's 40 seconds back to the chasing group of 3 riders, Vladimir Gusev, Leif Hoster and Peter van Petegem, but they are not at all doing anything to dent this man's advantage. Look at his face. Every now and again he puts his head down. That makes him just a little bit more aerodynamic. He's a great individual time trialist. He won't be worried at all about riding on his own, and he's going to give Team CSC, Phil, their biggest win of this season.
He's around about 8 kilometers from the finish in the stadium. There's a massive crowd now watching on a huge screen as he races towards us here in Roubaix. No Swiss rider's ever been in this powerful position since the great Henri Souter, also won, by the way, the Tour of Flanders, but not in the same year. And Cancellara now, there he goes under the last, nearly the last, the second sector of Pavé at Hem. But the next sector is nothing. It's down the street outside the stadium. Just got to be careful here.
You have to be very careful here. Whenever I come to this section of cobblestones, I always remember Henny Kuiper on his own in the lead. He was on his way to victory when all of a sudden he switched across from one side of the cobbles to the others, and the back wheel popped off. He had to wait for the mechanic to come up alongside. He was absolutely panicking because he only had about a 30-40 second advantage, which is what Cancellara has got right now. If he has a mechanical incident, this whole race will come back together. But we don't want any more mechanical incidents. We've had too many so far.
Well, Discovery Channel took 2 out of the 3 places in the Tour of Flanders a week ago. And Van Petegem was the man who was pushed into 4th place then. He'll have a little bit of a say in the sprint for 2nd place, I'm sure of that, but I really do think now that those 3 are racing for 2nd place. This man is firing and firing as hard as you can believe. And Fabian Cancellara is living through the greatest moment of his career.
Well, he's got to be careful though, Phil, because these are rough cobbles, this final real section at Hem. After this, there's only 1 section left, and it's really pretty much an ornamental section of cobblestones, and that's at 1.5 kilometers to go. But look at the way he's bouncing here. He's waiting for these cobbles to finish, and once he gets out, he'll have to just get his head around this. He's got around about a 45-second advantage over the chasers, who really seem to be disappearing, and Tom Bonen's group is a long way further back now.
And that face is one of agony, yes, but it's one in control of the situation. It is all coming out today for Fabian Cancellara. 4th in Paris-Roubaix 2 years ago. He slipped back to only 8th last time out, but now it could be the big one, the biggest win of his life. He's won 25 times in his career. I think he'd throw them all away for this one, because this is the greatest single-day race of them all, and today has been one of the greatest races we've seen for a long time.
It has been a brilliant race. It all started, as it very often does, with the Forest of Arenberg, bringing 15 riders, the big names of the sport, right to the very front of this bike race. Now we can see Tom Bonen trying to pull himself back. He won't give up. He's a brave bike rider, the world champion. You earn those bands as world champion. You wear them for a year, and so far he's shown them off to great perfection throughout the whole of this season, but today he's been caught out. He lost his teammates. This looks like Gusev moving over to the left-hand side. Van Petegem, not bad for a 36-year-old. He has shown them how to ride the cobbles this afternoon, but none of them can do anything to stop the march of the Swiss man on the front of this race, Fabian Cancellara.
And there he is, but I'd watch out, those 3 riding into the headwind just there, because they don't look to be firing too well right now, and they might find Tom Bonen and Fletcher and Balan catching him up. It's showdown time, just under 7 kilometers to go. Fabian Cancellara continues to live his dream.
Well, he's living a dream. Superb dream for Fabian Cancellara here as he comes up. Team manager comes up alongside him, gives him a bit of advice, lets him know he's got 45 seconds. But you're right, those three riders seem to be losing gas, and Tom Bonen is only 30 seconds behind him, and that would be one of the big comebacks of the afternoon if he's able to catch them.
Well, this will be his 6th year as a professional bike rider, Fabian Cancellara. He's won some good races around the circuits. He's never won a classic race. He's won a stage of the Tour de France with the prologue. He finished 10th in the Olympic Games in the time trial. That's been his great ability, so he knew that once he got away on his own, he could adapt that ability and bring him home at the greatest classic of them all. And because no Swiss man's won it since 1923, I think they might even know him back home by the time this day is done.
They certainly will know him, because this is one of the great classics of the world to win, Paris Roubaix. They call it La Reine des Classiques, the queen of the classics, because every bike rider who is good at one-day racing wants to win this event. Fabian Cancellara, now look at his face. He knows he's got a very good chance at pulling this off. It's still only 45 seconds, though. He's in the streets of the town of Hem, which is around about 6 kilometers to go to the finish. Once he goes through this town, he's got a nasty little false flat, but once he comes to the top of there, it's downhill all the way to the finish line.
And he'll know as he approaches Roubaix, they send you into the centre of the road, which is a specially laid section of cobblestones, just to remind you what race you are riding. And then you come into the stadium, you do a lap and a half of the stadium, and the pain finally rolls to a halt. And it looks to me as though Cancellara now has just got to keep his rhythm. This is Gusev, Horst and Van Petegem. They're going to start working out how they're going to outwit Van Petegem for second place. Van Petegem is a very good sprinter. I'm not sure how much strength Gusev has left, but even so, at worst, he's racing to 4th place, which is amazing.
It really is amazing when you bear in mind how much work those riders put in for George Hincapie in the first part of this race. This man has still got good legs. He's still ticking those legs over, looking comfortable. Now he comes to this difficult part of the road. Now he's going to take one left-hand bend and start to climb up just a fraction, but that climb out of Hem for him is going to feel like an absolute mountain at this stage of the game. That grimace almost looks like a smile, as he knows this is a little piece of history for him, and of course for Swiss cycling. Once he gets to the top, Phil, it's a nice cruise down to the finish.
Well, the crowds here on the outskirts of Roubaix now are cheering home a rider from the Danish setup, CSC, managed by the former Tour de France winner, Bjarne Riis. This is going to be a big day for him as well. Bjarne Riis never won Paris-Roubaix, as now Fabian Cancellara presses on and thinks only of the long straight to the stadium and the right turn into it. And there's trouble on the course. It's isolate. Oh no, this is Guédon. No, it isn't. Yes, it is Guédon who's got a front wheel puncture. Well, when the going gets rough, it gets even rougher here.
Well, that's bad luck for a former winner there, Frédéric Guédon, but that's about 2 minutes back in the race. This is where the race is here. This is the man who is looking to take the victory to Switzerland. Fabian Cancellara, 51 seconds advantage, 1 minute 23 seconds back to Tom Bonen. Bonen may yet pull himself back into this race for a podium position.
We're looking at Fabian Cancellara now, his face distorted with pain here, because he knows with every pedal rev he is inching closer to the stadium in Roubaix, the end of 268 kilometers of riding today, and it's going to be a happy day for him now. As time runs out for the rest, this has been a great race. Every rider's thrown everything at one another, and this man appears to have come out best of the bunch. It's been a tough day for Discovery Channel 2. George Hincapie down and out of the race today with an extension on his handlebars, snapping on the cobblestones at Mons-en-Pelève. And then down goes Gusev of Discovery Channel. He gets up, catches up, he goes into the attack. This man leaves him behind, and Gusev still in the race for second place with Leif Hoster. What an amazing race this has been. There's the gaps now. He's nosed it out inside 4 kilometers to go. 51 seconds. He can't be caught.
Well, he shouldn't be caught. He's getting to the top of this big false flat just outside of the town of Roubaix. That's what he's aiming for. He's aiming for that velodrome there, the velodrome which has hosted the finish of this Paris-Roubaix for so many years. And what a movement for him to come into that stadium in a short moment's time, because the crowd will go absolutely and utterly ballistic. He's 3 kilometers to go to the finish. He's got almost a minute advantage. It's a long ride home for the man from Switzerland.
The big legs of Fabian Cancellara then is carrying him now to victory in Paris Roubaix, just under 4 kilometres. In fact, we've seen the 3 kilometre sign. He's almost a minute ahead of the 3 chasers, which are the 2 Discovery riders, Leif Hoster and Vladimir Gusev and Peter Van Petegem. And there is Van Petegem, a former winner who's outnumbered here 2-1. It's not too much point in talking now. You've got to get on with it, because these boys are not going to carry Van Petegem surely to a sprint finish.
Well, just keep riding. I think they're just hoping to survive. There's about 30 seconds between them and the group containing Tom Bonen. But for these men, when you just look at the way they're pedaling, they look like broken men. They know now that they're not going to win Paris-Roubaix this afternoon. They know they can't close down that final gap to the man from Switzerland who is absolutely flying at the front of this bike race. Fabian Cancellara is writing a little piece of history this afternoon. Tom Bonen, well, the weight of being world champion has finally fell onto his shoulders, but we can't take away what a brilliant start he's had to his season.
Only one Swiss rider has ever won Paris-Roubaix, and that was in 1923. Some have tried, all have failed until today. Now it's going to change. Now they're going to have to start attacking. This is what they're trying to do, one-on-one, to get rid of Van Petegem. He's having none of it. He just looks over his shoulder, gesticulates there to Leif Hoster as we swing back up to the leader. Very shortly in the long straight, he'll go to the centre of the road and find the cobblestones for the final time. The end of more than 30 miles of cobblestones, over 52 kilometres of them today. It's taken a long time to break this race. Remember, it was shaped ironically by Tom Bonen when 15 riders went clear in the forest, and none were teammates of Bonen, and that in effect signed his own loser's warrant today. There we go. You wouldn't know it was a dual carriageway, but it is normally. Cars don't come down this stretch of the road normally. Today they all will, as Paris-Roubaix heads for the stadium. There's 3/10 of a kilometre to go. No Swiss rider has been in this situation since Henri Souter in 1923. 1 kilometre to go to the line now. That'll include a lap and a half of the stadium. What a feeling this must be for Fabian Cancellara. It'll be his 26th win of his career, his 2nd of this year. His last big win was the prologue when he beat Lance Armstrong in the prologue of the Tour de France down in Liège in Belgium back in 2004. These are the crowd outside the Velo Club de Roubaix. That's the clubhouse of the organising club of this great stadium. All but a couple of years, the race has always finished here. The crowd are on their feet now. You can probably hear them as he circles the velodrome. 1923, it was Henri Souter did this. Now it is Fabian Cancellara. The bell, and still nobody else in the stadium as Cancellara goes alone past the bell and rides a lap of honour here at the 104th running of Paris-Roubaix. Once he gets round the back straight, he can freewheel. They can't lap him. That's definitely out of the question, as Cancellara now can enjoy the moment. He's about to go past the stadium entry. Nobody has come in. He will finish before anybody else enters. Now's a moment of pleasure. Gone is the pain of a 6.5-hour day. The cobblestones of the hell of the north, they suddenly have become his friends. He's adapted to Paris-Roubaix, he's conquered the Queen, and he's won the event. The Swiss cyclist, the first winner from Switzerland since 1923. He can't believe it, but boy, does he deserve it. Fabian Cancellara wins Paris-Roubaix. And look at that average speed today, 42.24 kilometres an hour for Cancellara. In miles, that's over 26 miles an hour. The other 3, he goes in for the scrum now. The other 3 you can't see, I can tell you, are on the stadium. There they are. And this is now the hard-working young Russian here, Vladimir Gusev, hoping that Leif Hoster will get something out of this for Discovery Channel. They've got 3rd and 4th, but they want 2nd at least. Poor George Hincapie. He looks so good today, to no fault of his own on the cobblestones. They jumped up and bit him and snapped his extension, and down and out he went. Then it was left to these 2 teammates here, there to help him, trying to salvage a big result for Discovery. Well, they've got a big result. It's a question of whether they can outwit Peter Van Petegem, who has won this race before and is a good, useful rider on the velodrome too. He takes them high onto the track. That'll test them. As they now come around, the other 3 are on. You'll see them pass through underneath our picture, I think, as these boys start the sprint. They're going to force Van Petegem to dive for the inside. There he goes. Have they got the strength to take him? I don't think so. As he winds it up, what did he look over his shoulder for? Because he's going to allow Hoster in, and that's what you don't do. As Hoster takes second, Van Petegem third, Gusev will be fourth. That's an extremely good run. So, second in Flanders, second in Roubaix for Leif Hoster. Discovery Channel, dare I say, but I'm sure Lance Armstrong is watching. They don't seem to miss you yet, Lance. They're riding pretty well this year. But there is Cancellara as we now see the next stage of the race. This will be the race for 5th place, and Tom Bonen, he's taking on Balin, but he's still got the proudness to win as a world champion. 5th for Bonen, Balin will come 6th. There's not much better he could have done today. They were all against him. He had no help from anybody. And Antonio Fletcher, who rode such a brilliant race, finishes 7th in the end. The total chaos in the middle on the grass here in the velodrome. It's a total scrum down there. They could qualify for the French rugby team, I think, just now. That is Fabien Cancellara. They're trying to make some room for him to breathe, I think.
That was a very tough decision out there for Team Discovery Channel. You had to actually change team tactics after George Hincapie's crash.
We didn't really have to change tactics. It was only, yeah. How can I say it? It was very, for us, it was not ideal because George was with me, one of the two leaders. So, and we lost one, but okay. Gusev did more than a great job. First he crashed, then he came back and immediately went. So, okay, it's very bad for George, but okay, that's racing.
But do you think you paid as well a little bit for the amount of work you did in the early part of the race? Because you seem to be doing a lot of work to protect Hincapie.
Wow, a lot of work. I told George after the forest I was not so good as last week, and but okay, the rest I did on willpower and because I know the race. But okay, I was good. If you're second in Paris Roubaix, you're good. But the super legs of last week were not there.
Second in Paris Roubaix, still not too bad.
It's nice, very nice. Okay.
Yeah, Fabien, it's been a very long time since Switzerland has won this race. We got to know you in the Tour de France when you won the prologue, but now this must be a very sweet moment for you and the team.
Yeah, I think after 83 years, I think it's the last winner of the Paris Roubaix from the Switzerland, and I think today we do the great work. I think with the full team, with the full staff. Big thanks on everybody that helped me and to help the team for do the race. And I'm so happy. And
I spoke to your team manager, and he actually wanted you to attack a little bit later, but he said you were just too impatient to get the race over.
Yeah, you have to do the race. That's come because I see a lot of time that a lot of rider was not 100%. Or see the mouth a lot of time open, and this is for me a signal that a lot of rider is tired, and this was the moment to give full gas and to do a small time trial, and I come alone in this big velodrome, in this big race.
How did it feel when you actually finally came in through the gate and came onto the velodrome and the crowd were all behind you?
Just only in the last lap, I was more relaxed because I see what's happened in the last year when I come in the velodrome, and I happened the last round to take the time to have more air for feel the big emotion.
Lars, the other day you told me you were getting a little bit too old for this, but you were pretty good this afternoon.
Yeah, this is a race that I really admire, and it's in my heart, and it's like I said before, or you hate this race or you love it, and I'm among the ones who loves it.
Nice for your teammate to get the win, but you have a lot to do with that because you did a lot of work for him on the early section of cobblestones.
Yeah, it's true. Especially going out of Arnberg, being 15 riders, and must say, having isolated Tom Bonen, I had to work a lot to make sure that yeah, this breakaway was the initial start of what would be the eventual success. So
if you can't win yourself, it's nice for a teammate to go across the line in first place.
Yeah, exactly. It's fantastic for Fabian. He's a young rider. He's very strong and he has the abilities of many things. But this race is one of his best things. Yeah.
Everybody said before the start of today that Tom Boonen was unbeatable, but you seem to come up with a recipe to put him into difficulty.
I left the hotel, the Park Hotel in Kortrijk, on Saturday morning. I said, have you got enough rooms for us all to come back to and enough champagne in-house? And he said, I do. I said, we'll see you on Sunday night.
You knew so much that Fabian Cancellara was going to beat Tom Boonen?
You know, you say things out loud and sometimes it comes back and hits you in the face like a door, but I don't know, I just had a great feeling about it. And I said it to the PR officer before the start. I said, we're going to be ready for it. I think he's going to do it. It's just, Fabian just radiated so much energy and so much belief in himself. And it was my job this week to try and rally the guys to be there for him and that he was going to do it. And I think he's done it in pretty good fashion.
The only way to do it really was to go out on a brave solo effort like that to try and put him into difficulty and everybody else.
Yeah, well, that's what we talked about. We said we cannot wait for them to do it. That's what everybody seemed to do last week in Flanders, and I said this week we have to try and do it. I said we're strong enough. We're as strong as what any other team is here, and the boys were doing what they had to do, and then they did it on Arenberg, and then they did it just after. They stopped Quick Step from coming back, and then Fabian was just in a class of his own. As far in the team, at the end there, I mean, I wanted him to wait until Arenberg and then go full gas there, but he got too impatient, decided to go by himself. But you know, he's a great time trialist. This guy can move, and so when he got 10-15 seconds, it's going to be really hard for them getting back.
Bjarne Riis must be pretty happy tonight.
He called me on the phone there, and I said, he goes, "Oh, verdomme, he's a sterk manneke." I said, yeah, mate, it was good. I think Bjarne's sorry that he couldn't be here now, but it's been a very collective effort. Everybody's worked very, very hard. I mean, Paris Roubaix is a one-day bike race, but it's taken months of preparation for all the bikes, the material, all the sponsors to have all the material we need, and I mean, it's just been fantastic. And I mean, it's a big unloading after this, and I think for Fabian, it's a dream come true. No worries. Thanks very much.
Win, mate.
Thank you.
Derek, pretty bad luck there for George Hincapie. Can you tell us exactly what happened?
He crashed the first time already long before the first couple section, and he was afraid that he has a broken hand, and he has to take some painkillers during the race, like every hour or every 1.5 hour, to continue. And I think something must have been wrong on his bike, and that's why he crashed the second time. And then was the race over. It's a pity because I think we never got a bigger chance when you have 3 guys in a breakaway and 3 strong guys. You see, we finished 2nd and 4th now. And can you imagine how it could be with George still there?
It looked as if his handlebars actually snapped during the race, and he went down very hard.
Yeah.
Ont adressé leurs félicitations aux différents lauréats d'une course qui aurait été captivante. Donc de bout en bout avec, rappelons-le, donc 47 km couverts dans les 2 premières heures de course qui nous donnent donc une moyenne de 47 km/h dès le départ. C'est allé très vite. Et puis il y avait la volonté donc de Fabian Cancellara d'aller chercher donc la victoire dans l'épreuve du jour, alors que les commissaires de
Discussion going on there. They're going to disqualify him for going through the railway crossing. That's the discussion there. Jean-Marie Leblanc there is talking to the referees. The rule states that when a railway line goes down, you have to stop and you're not allowed to go through. It looks as if they're going to go through with the disqualification.
Well, as we look here at final results, there's a big surprise because that situation at the level crossing where 3 riders rode through the closed gates, they have disqualified Leif Hoste, Peter van Petegem and Vladimir Gusev from 2nd, 3rd and 4th. So this is how the result looks. A win for Fabian Cancellara at 1 minute and 51 seconds. Tom Boonen comes up in 2nd place. Alessandro Balan of Lampre is 3rd. Juan Antonio Fletcher of Spain and Rabobank is in 4th. Then comes Bernard Eisel and Stefan Wesserman and Frederick Gaydon. Unfortunately, George Hincapie, as we know, he crashed and he didn't finish the race.
One moment it seemed as if everything was going right. The next minute it was all wrong.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's Paris Roubaix. We were. I mean, we knew that the team was really in great shape, and we expected George and Leif and Vladimir to be our best guys, and they were there with 14 riders. Bonen isolated. What else can you dream? And then things start to go wrong. And first George had a bad crash, so that was really. I mean, he was our best guy. He was our fastest guy. So he crashed very hard. He was out of the race.
Can you tell us exactly what happened to George? Because it looked as if his handlebars snapped.
Well, I think I don't know what happened. I saw the bike afterwards. But all I know is that George had a crash in the first part of the race before the cobblestones, after 50 kilometers, and his handlebars must have been already damaged then. And then it's something you don't see. It's under the handlebar tape, and after so many sections, I think it just snapped, and that was it. But that's part of Paris Roubaix.
When everything as well seemed to have picked itself back up, all of a sudden, your man who finished second, Leif Hoste, gets disqualified by the referees. Were you expecting that blow?
Not at all. Not at all. It was a big surprise. I mean, I know that. I mean, when there's a train and the rule says that when the red is light, you have to stop. You cannot go. But I think the rules are there for interpretation. It's just an incident, and it's too bad for us. Everything looked great, and at the end, everything fell apart.
Fight another day.
We'll fight another day.
So the concrete velodrome here in Roubaix has revealed many more stories today. What a remarkable race this was. It certainly was full of action. A lot of disappointment, of course. The loss of George Hincapie, I think, took a lot away from the race. But on the other hand, I don't suppose Fabian Cancellara would agree with me. You have to feel a little bit sorry for the three riders who were disqualified. But the rules are the rules. And at the end of the day, safety is the first thing one must think about. I hope you enjoyed this coverage of what was the 104th Paris Roubaix. Paul Sherwin can now get his breath back. We'll see you all again next time. Goodbye.